Every fan of pop culture has dreamed of the concept of isekai, being transported to a magical world and living out epic adventures. But long before this craze took over modern anime, there was a series that defined many childhoods on broadcast TV and introduced us to feudal Japan in a truly unique way. I'm talking, of course, about Inuyasha. At first glance, it seems like a classic quest to gather the shards of the Shikon Jewel and defeat the terrifying Naraku. But looking at it today, you realize this anime is much more than sword fights and bizarre monsters. In fact, Inuyasha is basically a Mexican soap opera in period costume. We have a conflicted protagonist stuck in a toxic love triangle with his undead ex-girlfriend, an older brother with a superiority complex, and a villain whose main motivation is essentially pure envy and jealousy. It's this chaotic blend of romance, comedy, and bloody battles that makes the series unforgettable to this day. So today on the channel, we're going to relive the entire saga of the time-traveling schoolgirl and the most stubborn half-demon in anime history. We open in feudal Japan with Inuyasha, a half-demon on a Mission Impossible-style heist to steal the Shikon Jewel, the Jewel of Four Souls. He thinks he's home free, but the priestess Kikyo, with Hawkeye-level precision, pins him to a sacred tree with an arrow, sealing him away for 50 years. Cut to 1996 Tokyo. We meet Kagome, a teenager who just wanted to enjoy her birthday but ends up in a Stranger Things nightmare. A giant centipede demon drags her into an ancient well, and she pops out right in the middle of the Sengoku period. The local villagers think she's a spy or a demon, but Elder Kaede notices Kagome is the spitting image of the late Kikyo. The centipede returns, hungrier than Pac-Man, hunting for the Shikon Jewel which, surprise, has been hidden inside Kagome's body this whole time. In a moment of desperation, Kagome pulls the arrow from Inuyasha's chest. The anti-hero wakes up with a major no-crothy attitude, shreds the monster with his claws, and makes it clear he's no hero. He wants the jewel for himself and couldn't care less about anyone else. Inuyasha chases Kagome through the forest for the jewel, but Elder Kaede solves the problem with a magical necklace. Kagome discovers that all she has to do is shout, "Sit, boy," and the necklace slams the half-demon into the dirt, turning the tough guy into an obedient pup like Beethoven. While they bicker and Inuyasha complains that Kagome is nothing compared to his ex, a crow demon seizes the mom and steals the jewel. A wild aerial chase ensues. Kagome hitches a ride on Inuyasha's back, trying to take down the crow with a bow and arrow while being roasted for her terrible aim. In a stroke of genius, she uses a severed piece of the demon as a homing guide. The shot is a bullseye, too much of one. She hits the jewel, and it shatters like the Death Star, scattering hundreds of shards across the world. Inuyasha is stunned. The mission to protect one object just became the biggest scavenger hunt in history. Kagome tries to bathe in a freezing lake, complaining about the lack of modern luxuries, while Inuyasha keeps watch, creating that awkward teen rom-com vibe. They keep fighting like cats and dogs until a new threat emerges. Yura of the Hair, a villainess who manipulates invisible strands. She's like Samara from The Ring, but using hair to control villagers like murderous puppets. In the chaos, Yura steals Kagome's only jewel shard. Kagome tries to fight back, but ends up falling into the well during her escape. This time the portal works, and she is teleported back to the comfort of air conditioning in modern Tokyo. While Kagome celebrates being home with a hot bath, Inuyasha is left alone in the past, surrounded by zombie villagers and forced to protect Kaede, proving this team has some serious chemistry issues. Back in modern times, Kagome tries to explain the madness she's lived through, but her mom acts like it's just a rebellious phase, and her grandpa tries to seal the well with what look like expired discount coupons. Obviously, it doesn't work. The piece ends when Inuyasha climbs out of the well and invades the dining room. The family takes it surprisingly well, with Kagome's mom squeezing his dog ears thinking it's high-tier cosplay, but the mood shifts when they realize the villain hasn't given up. Yura has sent her hair strands through time. In a rare moment of chivalry, or just pragmatism, Inuyasha lends his red kimono to Kagome. The garment is made of fire rat fur and acts as impenetrable armor. Back in feudal Japan, the fight against Yura resumes. She humiliates Inuyasha, mocking his split ends, proving that even villains care about aesthetics. Kagome tries to help with her bow, but her aim is still garbage. Kagome finds her secret. The villain is immortal, because she isn't human. Kagome shatters a red skull and discovers Yura was just a comb the whole time. A comb that came to life, like something out of Beauty and the Beast, but homicidal.
Yura was a comb?
Sure.
With the threat neutralized, Inuyasha finally calls Kagome by her name, a sweet moment he immediately ruins by acting like a jerk and calling her useless. Enter Sesshomaru, Inuyasha's older brother. Picture a guy who's elegant, powerful, and has a massive superiority complex. He's looking for their father's grave and carries around a nagging servant named Jakin, who looks like a toad that escaped the Muppets. Sesshomaru has zero patience and dispatches extras with poison whips without breaking a sweat. Meanwhile, Inuyasha is acting like a brat and refuses to let Kagome heal him, forcing her to use the sit command repeatedly to keep him still. Miyoga the flea appears to explain the complicated family tree. Their father was a legendary great dog demon, but Inuyasha's mother was human, which explains the family drama. Sesshomaru uses this intel to set a cruel trap. A floating carriage appears with a woman who looks exactly like Inuyasha's late mother being attacked. Driven by guilt and emotion, Inuyasha rushes to save her, falling right into his brother's trap. He wakes up in an idyllic vision with this supposed mother. Kagome tries to warn him that something is off. The woman's face has no reflection in the water, but she ends up paralyzed, watching Inuyasha be emotionally manipulated by a cheap illusion. Things are grim. The fake mother tries to absorb Inuyasha into her body in a full-blown body horror vibe. Fortunately, Kagome breaks free from the paralysis thanks to Miyoga, beats up Jakin, and snaps Inuyasha out of it by literally throwing the truth in his face via a water reflection. Sesshomaru is done with games. He reaches toward Inuyasha's face and pulls a black pearl from his brother's right eye. Turns out their father's tomb wasn't in a cave, but hidden inside Inuyasha's eye this whole time. Bizarre, but practical. They use the pearl to open a portal and end up inside the skeletal ribcage of their giant father. There they find Tetsaiga, a legendary sword stuck in a stone, Excalibur style. Sesshomaru tries to take it, but the sword rejects him with an electric barrier. Inuyasha tries, can't even budge the rusty blade. A massive brawl breaks out. Sesshomaru is about to turn his brother into mincemeat when a panicked Kagome grabs the sword's hilt for support and pulls it out effortlessly. While the two powerhouse demons failed miserably, the girl from the future draws the legendary blade like she's taking a toy out of a box, leaving everyone looking like fools. The struggle for the legendary sword continues. Sesshomaru cannot accept that a human girl could wield Tetsaiga when he couldn't, so he decides to settle it by dousing her in lethal poison. Inuyasha snaps, remembering all the bullying he endured as a half-demon child, a very tragic drama movie vibe. He attacks his brother in a rage, breaking his armor but doing no real damage. To everyone's surprise, Kagome emerges unscathed because the sword protected her. Fed up, Sesshomaru reveals his true form, a giant demonic hound, looking like a final boss from Resident Evil. The battle becomes completely lopsided, and Inuyasha is about to become dog food. Kagome screams at him to believe in the sword. Just as all seems lost, Tetsaiga pulses, transforms into a giant fang, and in a move worthy of Luke Skywalker, Inuyasha severs his brother's left arm. Sesshomaru retreats in defeat, but when the dust settles, Inuyasha tries to act tough again, saying he doesn't care about Kagome. She isn't having it. She drops a sit and sends the hero face first into the water, proving who really runs this duo. Inuyasha and Miyoga are spying on Kagome at a lake, but things get weird when a monkey steals her clothes. They chase it and run into Nobunaga. Kagome is hyped, thinking he's the legendary historical warrior, but the guy is a total disaster, clumsier than Mr. Bean, a complete letdown for a history fan. The group discovers the local lord is acting strange and investigates the castle. The atmosphere is heavy. They find out the lord has been possessed by a giant toad demon that's sucking the souls out of young women to survive. The catch: killing the toad would kill the lord too. Inuyasha wants to go in guns blazing, but Kagome has a better plan. Using modern science, she improvises a flamethrower using hairspray and fire, forcing the toad out of the host's body. Inuyasha finishes the monster, saving the day.
Die, stinking toad!
In the end, Nobunaga remains a buffoon, falling off cliffs and proving that not every famous name carries glory. Kagome introduces feudal Japan to the miracle of cup noodles. While they discuss food and space travel, Shippo appears, a magical little fox demon who steals the Shikon shards. The kid tries to pull a fast one on them, but eventually reveals his tragic backstory. His father was turned into a fur coat by the Thunder Brothers. Speaking of villains, we meet the duo Hiten and Monten. Monten, the younger brother, has serious self-esteem issues because because he's bald, and he's frantically searching for a magical hair growth cure. He ends up kidnapping Kagome, thinking she'd make a good ingredient for his potion, or a pet. To avoid becoming soup, Kagome improvises some fanfiction. She claims she's Inuyasha's girlfriend, and that he'll bring all the jewel shards as ransom. Shippo runs to tell Inuyasha, who pretends not to care but heads out to save her anyway. When he arrives at the villain's base, he's confused by the girlfriend story, but joins the fight against the Electric Brothers to protect his traveling partner. The episode starts with Mon-10 living every shampoo commercial's dream. Long hair and girls everywhere. Too bad it's just a dream. And reality hits hard, literally. The brawl against the Thunder Brothers continues, and the bald one tries to attack, but Shippo has a rare moment of usefulness using his illusion tricks. The kid turns into a Kagome clone to distract the villain, but the plan goes sideways into general chaos. Things get dark when Hiten wounds Inuyasha and puts everyone in check. In a moment of desperation and questionable aim, the half-demon hurls the Tetsaiga and skewers Mon-10. End of the line for the younger brother. But Hiten, instead of grieving, decides to have a snack. He devours his own brother to absorb his power. The buffed-up villain destroys everything, and it looks like Kagome and Shippo are toast. Thinking his crush and the fox are dead, Inuyasha goes full John Wick berserk mode. He charges in with pure hate and slices Hiten in half.
I was defeated. This half-demon, he defeated both of us.
But wait, no one died. Shippo used his foxfire to shield the group. When Inuyasha realizes they're safe, he has an emotional outburst before quickly pivoting back to tsundere mode, pretending he doesn't care. Now, the little fox is officially part of the squad. Kagome decides that fighting demons is easy. Passing math is the real challenge. She leaves Inuyasha talking to himself, uses the sick command to bury the poor guy under a rock, and jumps into the well to go back to Tokyo. Priorities, right? At home, life is normal. Her grandpa is making up bizarre excuses for her school absences, and her friends are trying to set her up with Hojo, a guy who seems nice but is way too obsessed with health tips. But Kagome made a rookie mistake. She brought jewel shards back to the modern era. This awakens a cursed no mask that was rotting in storage. The mask goes full slasher movie, attacking her grandpa and possessing bodies across the city to find the shards. It's basically a low-budget Friday the 13th in the middle of Tokyo. Her younger brother Sota tries to get help but fails miserably until Inuyasha appears, leaping out of the well like a Marvel superhero. The half-demon tracks Kagome by the scent of blood, creepy but useful, and arrives just in time. He shreds the mask in the middle of the city, saving Sota, who instantly becomes his brother-in-law's #1 fan. Kagome goes home, but the lesson is learned. Don't bring magical souvenirs home. Back to the routine, Kagome continues to dodge Hojo's medicinal gifts while hiding her double life. But peace is short-lived. She and her brother find a The Grudge-style ghost girl, terrorizing a building and sabotaging the recovery of her own brother, who is in a coma. The vibe shifts from action anime to Ghostbusters real quick. Inuyasha, who is now hanging out in the modern era like it's no big deal, joins the investigation. They discover a demon called the Soul Piper, a sort of underworld Pied Piper, is luring the girl's soul away. If the monster's eyes fully open, she goes straight to hell. No pressure, right? Kagome has to act fast, entering a spiritual projection to resolve the girl's trauma. She died in a fire thinking her mother hated her. After some supernatural tough love therapy, the girl realizes she was loved, asks for forgiveness, and manages to move on before the demon takes her.
I love your summer kimono. You look adorable.
Thanks. My mommy made it just for me. I'd better be going now. Bye!
Inuyasha grumbles and complains that it was risky, but deep down, we know he enjoyed playing the hero in the modern world again. Kagome is still balancing her double life and, in the modern era, agrees to a date with Hojo, the overly persistent health guy. But duty calls, and she returns to feudal Japan, where the group meets Nazuna, a girl who hates demons with a passion because giant spiders killed her parents. The group takes her to a supposedly safe temple, but Inuyasha starts acting weird. The reason? It's the new moon. Here we discover our protagonist's Achilles heel. During this phase, he loses all his powers and becomes a normal human. Black hair, no dog ears. It's basically the reverse of a werewolf. He tried to hide it because of serious trust issues and abandonment trauma. The temple, of course, was a trap. The head monk is the leader of the spider demons. Inuyasha, now vulnerable and unable to transform Tetsaiga, gets beaten and poisoned. Kagome takes charge, protects human Inuyasha, and they share a super romantic yet sad moment with him resting in her lap, finally admitting she smells good, something he always denied before. They hide, but the monster breaks down the door. It looks like the end, but the sun rises at the literal last second. With the daylight, Inuyasha instantly regains his demon form, like Popeye with spinach, and massacres the spiders in seconds.
Don't be so sure about that.
He saves the day and restores Nazuna's faith in some demons. Peace is brief because a macabre witch named Urasue decides to rob Kikyo's grave. She takes the bones and some soil in a total act of profanation. Inuyasha catches the scent and loses it, but here's where it gets awkward. He starts projecting his dead ex-girlfriend onto Kagome. In a moment of mental confusion and toxic longing, Inuyasha tries to kiss Kagome, thinking she's Kikyo. Kagome shuts it down immediately, but the "you only like me because I look like her" vibe hangs heavy in the air. Meanwhile, Urasue is cooking the bones in a demonic kiln to create a clay body, Frankenstein style, hoping to resurrect the priestess. The problem? The body is ready, but it needs a battery, the soul. And guess where Kikyo's soul is? Exactly. Reincarnated in Kagome. The group reaches the witch's lair, fighting off clay soldiers that look like the terracotta army from The Mummy 3. In the chaos, Urasue kidnaps Kagome, planning to use the girl as a forced donor to complete the necromancy ritual. Urasue's bizarre plan works. She dips Kagome into a magical herbal soup, and with an emotional push from Inuyasha screaming his ex's name, the soul is ripped out of Kagome and enters Kikyo's clay body. The priestess wakes up, but she didn't come back with peace and love. The first thing she does is kill Urasue with a spiritual blast. Gratitude clearly isn't her strong suit. Now we have a spite-filled zombie Kikyo. She attacks Inuyasha, and the most dangerous couples argument in history begins. We learn the tragic truth. 50 years ago, someone disguised themselves as Inuyasha to attack Kikyo, and as Kikyo to attack Inuyasha. It was a fatal catfish move to make them hate each other. But zombie Kikyo isn't listening to explanations and tries to drag Inuyasha to hell in a suicide pact. Kagome wakes up and, seeing the disaster, starts pulling the soul back into her own body. It's a spiritual tug-of-war. Most of the soul returns to Kagome, but Kikyo manages to flee, keeping a fragment of the soul powered purely by grudge and hatred. Inuyasha tries to save her from falling off a cliff, but she rejects him and vanishes into the mist, leaving our half-demon devastated and his heart more shattered than the sacred orb itself.
My spirit cannot rest in peace until I see you dead!
Don't do this! Huh? Kikyo!
The mood is heavy because Inuyasha is moping like a heartbroken teenager after the Zombie X reunion. While he questions his existence, we are introduced to Miroku. This guy dresses like a monk but acts like a professional con artist on a Wolf of Wall Street level. He hits up a mansion, scams a rich lord, exorcises a demon, and takes the house treasure as payment. Things get weird when this monk catches Kagome bathing in a hot spring. He acts like a total creep, but quickly notices the Shikon shard she carries. Miroku doesn't waste time. He kidnaps Kagome and her bike, and bolts. When Inuyasha catches up, a fight breaks out. That's when Miroku reveals his bizarre secret. His right hand has a portable black hole called the Wind Tunnel that sucks in everything like a hungry Kirby. Kagome realizes he doesn't want to hurt innocents and stops the fight. Miroku explains the hand is a hereditary curse placed by Naraku, and what a coincidence. Naraku is the same shapeshifter who pulled the fatal catfish on Inuyasha and Kikyo 50 years ago. With a common enemy, Miroku joins the team, but not before grabbing Kagome's hand and asking of her to bear his child, leaving Inuyasha fuming with jealousy. Now that the smooth-talking monk is on the team, tension is high. Inuyasha doesn't trust Miroku one bit and makes it clear he's not sharing the shards. They find a trail of blood and fresh ink that leads to a mad painter. The guy has a jewel shard and magical ink that brings drawings to life, like a macabre version of Harold and the Purple Crayon. Miroku tries to play the hero at a local mansion to protect a princess, and shoot his shot with her, obviously. But the painter sends an army of ink demons to attack. The smell is so strong, it knocks out Inuyasha's sensitive nose. Miroku tries to use his manual vacuum cleaner, the Wind Tunnel, but swallowing ink demons gives him a nasty case of indigestion. In the climax, the painter tries to absorb his own ink to get buffed, but the plan backfires, and he melts into a puddle. Kagome purifies the tainted shard, and after seeing Miroku almost die to protect the group, Inuyasha lowers his guard and officially accepts the monk into the squad. Sesshomaru is back and he's still salty about losing his arm in the last fight. That's when Naraku appears wearing a baboon pelt, a questionable fashion choice, and offers an irresistible deal, a human arm with a Shikon shard embedded in it. It's like a cheat code that allows Sesshomaru to hold the Tetsaiga, the sword that rejected him before. As a bonus, Naraku hands over a nest of venomous insects. The older brother attacks the group, and with his new Winter Soldier style arm, he steals the Tetsaiga from Inuyasha. Even worse, he uses the sword better than its owner, unleashing a devastating power. When Miroku tries to use the wind tunnel to save the day, Naraku's venomous insects attack. If he sucks them in, he dies of poison. Naraku thought of everything to neutralize the monk. The situation looks like game over, with Inuyasha cornered and unarmed. But the MVP of the round is Kagome. She fires a perfect arrow that hits the Tetsaiga, undoing the sword's transformation and forcing Seishomaru to retreat. Miroku is impressed, realizing the girl truly possesses Kikyo's spiritual power. The tension remains high, and Miroku decides to interrogate Jock in bad cop style. The little toad spills the beams. This is all the work of Naraku, the same mysterious villain who cursed the monk's family. Meanwhile, Inuyasha realizes the trick. His brother is using a human arm to bypass the sword's no demon security system. But even without the sword, Seishomaru is too overpowered and beats the protagonist senseless. Kagome tries to help by firing arrows, but the villain deflects the attack and she's knocked unconscious. Seeing his crush hurt is exactly the trigger Inuyasha needed. He goes berserk, ignores the pain, and manages to rip the borrowed arm right off his brother, reclaiming his giant sword. Seeing his tactical advantage gone, Seishomaru makes a strategic retreat, tossing the arm to Naraku's insects to feast on. After the dust settles, a rare moment of vulnerability happens. Inuyasha realizes Naraku is targeting him, and that Kagome is in danger just by being near him. He gives her a surprise hug, a miracle by his tough guy standards, and admits he was terrified she would die. But the cuteness is short-lived. In a move of extreme overprotectiveness, he steals her jewel shards and shoves her down the well, sending her back to the modern era for her own safety, whether she likes it or not.
I was afraid.
Determined to keep the girl safe at any cost, Inuyasha blocks the well with a giant tree, closing the portal like a border lockdown. Miroku and Shippo think it's a low blow, but the half-demon is firm on hunting Naraku alone. Elder Kaede then drops the bomb about the villain's bizarre origin. It all started with a bandit named Onigumo, who had a sick obsession with Kikyo and let a horde of demons devour his body to gain power. It was a grotesque Faustian bargain that gave birth to Naraku, while Kagome is stuck in the present trying to live a normal student life and dodging boring dates with Hojo. Things get intense in the feudal era. A wolf demon named Royakan shows up looking for a fight, but this time he's buffed with Shikon shards, courtesy of Naraku, who is playing chess with everyone's lives. Since Inuyasha is still broken from the fight with his brother, Miroku and Kaede decide to lock him in a hut protected by magical seals, essentially putting a hyperactive kid in timeout. But Naraku isn't playing around and upgrades the wolf into a giant. Our grumpy protagonist manages to break out of timeout to fight, but it's clear that without Kagome there for moral support, he's at a massive disadvantage. Kagome completely ignores the logic of space-time and claws her way back through the Bone Eater's well until she returns to the feudal era. Her timing is perfect, as Inuyasha was getting brutally beaten by a giant wolf demon. The moment she arrives, our protagonist gets that classic shonen hero power-up just by seeing his beloved. He defeats Royakan without breaking a sweat, removing the jewel shards controlling the beast. The dynamic duo is reunited and things heat up, but with rage toward the true enemy. Finally, the master manipulator emerges from the shadows. Naraku appears and reveals the plot twist that explains the entire series. 50 years ago, he shape-shifted into both Inuyasha and Kikyo, causing them to hate and kill each other in a tragic misunderstanding. It was a scheme worthy of a soap opera villain, or Mysterio from Spider-Man. The guy orchestrated all this chaos simply because his former human self was consumed by jealousy and envy for the couple. Inuyasha doesn't pull any punches and charges in with the Tetsaiga, tearing off Naraku's baboon pelt disguise. The attack reveals a spider-shaped scar on the villain's back, the signature mark of the former bandit Onigumo. Naraku escapes in a cloud of miasma, like Batman vanishing with a smoke bomb. But now the team knows exactly who to hunt and the reason behind all the hate. War has been officially declared. The team continues the hunt, and the gossip is flying. Miroku confirms that the spider scar on Naraku's back is indeed the mark of the bandit Onigumo, proving the villain has a filthy human past. However, the focus shifts when the group arrives at a haunted mansion. Miroku, always looking for an angle, pretends to be a professional ghostbuster to impress the owner and hit on the local princess. The mood sours when giant eel-like demons start stealing souls left and right. Meanwhile, Kikyo is living a TV drama-style double life. By day, she's the village's kind healer, treating children and winning everyone's trust. But a monk named Seikai senses something is wrong and tries to exorcise her with a sacred scroll. Bad idea. Kikyo, having zero patience, reverses the spell and deletes the monk in the blink of an eye. The dark truth comes to light. Kikyo needs to absorb the souls of dead women to keep her clay body functioning. A little girl named Sayo witnesses the horror and is left traumatized, telling Inuyasha that the kind priestess is actually a soul-sucking demon. The half-demon, who clearly isn't over his ex, drops everything and runs after her, leaving the rest of the team staring at his dust. Inuyasha finds Kikyo in the forest, but the reunion is far from romantic, at least not in a healthy way. The undead priestess uses magic to bind Kagome to a tree, making her invisible and paralyzed, forcing her to watch everything from a front row seat. Kikyo then reveals her toxic, gone girl level plan. She doesn't just want to get back together, she wants to drag Inuyasha to hell so they can be together in death for eternity. It's a Romeo and Juliet vibe, but much more macabre. Overwhelmed by guilt and emotion, Inuyasha nearly accepts this fatal destiny and begins to be sucked into the underworld. That's when Kagome, despite being trapped, screams some hard truths at him, reminding him he has a mission and needs to stay alive to get revenge on Naraku. Her voice snaps him out of the trance, and Kikyo, realizing she's lost her grip on his mind, leaves in despair.
Never forget.
After this supernatural relationship drama, Inuyasha tries to explain himself to Kagome. The problem? His emotional intelligence is sub-zero. He has the audacity to ask Miroku and Shippo if he could just stay with both girls at the same time. The answer comes fast. Kagome hears everything and drops a sit, so aggressive it buries Inuyasha in the dirt, proving that polyamory is definitely not on the table in this show. We switch gears to meet Sango, the most badass demon slayer to ever appear, wielding a giant boomerang that would make Captain America jealous. She comes from a secret village of professional demon hunters where everything seems fine, until Naraku decides to ruin someone else's life. He hires Sango's family for a job at a castle, but it's all a cruel trap. Sango's younger brother Kohaku is possessed by a demon spiderweb and turns into a sort of feudal winter soldier, massacring his own father and comrades in cold blood and gravely wounding his sister. It's a Game of Thrones Red Wedding level tragedy. Meanwhile, Naraku uses the absence of the village's best warriors to completely wipe out the demon slayer's home. When Inuyasha and his team arrive at the village, they find only destruction and help bury the dead. The problem is that Naraku, master manipulator, tricks Sango into believing Inuyasha was the one who destroyed her home. The survivor rises from her shallow grave fueled by pure hatred, swearing revenge against the protagonist in a legendary battle based on a massive piece of fake news. Tensions remain high as Naraku guides the wounded Sango toward a direct confrontation. She is physically shattered but driven by pure spite, falling for Naraku's manipulation like it's a pyramid scheme. Inuyasha's group arrives at a blocked cave near the village, and when they try to enter, they are blindsided by Sango's giant boomerang, which nearly decapitates everyone. She still believes the fake news that Inuyasha razed her village and goes all out. The half-demon tries to explain, but Sango isn't listening. When Naraku appears in person, Kagome notices a jewel shard in his back. Sango, blinded by rage, actually protects the villain and attacks Inuyasha again, but our hero proves he's the good guy by saving her from Naraku's poisonous miasma, even after she stabs him in the arm. At this point, Naraku, acting like a classic Bond villain who loves to monologue, admits he orchestrated everything, from her brother's death to the village's destruction. Her hatred shifts targets. Inuyasha cuts off Naraku's head, but the body keeps fighting and regenerating. They realize they are fighting a wooden puppet controlled from a distance, like a Dr. Doom Doombot. They destroy the marionette and recover the shard, but the real Naraku is far away, safe in another castle.
This castle and this body hide my true identity.
As Sango recovers from her physical wounds and emotional trauma, Miroku drops the philosophy that the best cure for a broken heart is cold, hard revenge. Sango decides to take the gang for a history lesson inside a cave protected by a magical barrier. Inside lies the legendary Midoriko, the creator of the Shikon Jewel, petrified in eternal combat with a stone demon, looking like a macabre museum statue. Sango explains that the human soul is made of courage, friendship, wisdom, and love, basically the elements of Captain Planet. Midoriko, exhausted from fighting armies alone, fused her soul with the monsters, creating the jewel. The problem starts when Inuyasha begins mocking the priestess and bragging. The cave literally kicks him out with a blast of light. Apparently, the place has a very strict spiritual bouncer. At night, Kilala and Miyoga flee enter the cave, safe. The proximity of the jewel shards causes the demon fossils to wake up night at the museum style, but the horror version. Inuyasha and Miroku rush in to save the little guys. It's implied that Kilala was Midoriko's loyal companion in the past, like Chewbacca to Han Solo. With the help of the priestess's spirit, Miroku reseals the monsters, and the group leaves with a lot more respect for the two-tailed cat. The group stumbles upon a lakeside village suffering from floods and the demands of a very unfriendly water god. The local solution? Sacrifice, a classic barbaric custom. However, the village head is a House of Cards level hypocrite. He demands others give up their children while hiding his own heir in a safe and sending a surrogate child to die. The headman's real son, tired of this nonsense, hires Inuyasha to kill the water god in exchange for some pots and silk. The group invades the temple in the middle of the lake, discovering that the terrifying guards are just fish under an optical illusion. The god is actually an imposter, a usurper snake demon who stole the trident and the position from the true water goddess, who has been shrunk and sealed away. The fight gets messy because Inuyasha in the water is about as graceful as a cat in a bathtub, and the trident gives the villain control over the weather. While Inuyasha takes a beating and nearly drowns, Sango and Miroku free the real goddess. With divine help controlling the waters, Inuyasha manages to destroy the giant snake and recover the trident.
Here you go.
The day is saved, the goddess returns to power, and Miroku ends the episode trying to extort the village head, proving that even monks have bills to pay. Miroku proves once again that his moral compass points directly toward any skirt that passes by. During a hunt, he abandons the team to follow a mysterious woman, like a dumb extra in a horror movie ignoring all the red flags. The woman is, of course, a mantis demon, and the monk ends up wounding the hand that carries the wind tunnel. With the curse of the hand worsening, Miroku realizes he might be swallowed by his own power, just like his father. He slips away to find his mentor, Mushin, hoping for a fix. The problem is that Naraku, always the evil chess master, had already possessed the mentor with a demon worm charmer. It's a trap worthy of Wile E. Coyote. Miroku is drugged and nearly murdered, but Inuyasha and the gang smell trouble, literally, by following poisonous insects. At the temple, things get grim. Miroku, thinking he's finished, decides to play the martyr and use the wind tunnel to suck in the demons, even if it costs him his life. But Inuyasha arrives with a flying kick, stopping the sacrifice with an aggressively motivational speech. He won't let his friend die while he's around. It's a total bromance moment. Inuyasha obliterates the monsters with the Tetsaiga. The mentor is saved and repairs the monk's hand. The emotional vibe doesn't last long though. As soon as he wakes up, Miroku grabs Sango and gets a bucket slammed into his face. Some things never change. Kagome makes a quick trip to the modern world to grab her school books because even time travelers have to deal with final exams. But peace is short-lived. Back in feudal Japan, Naraku decides to stop sending generic goons and plays dirty. He resurrects Kohaku, Sango's dead brother, using a jewel shard. After a classic anime scene involving hot springs and questionable spying, the group finds a decimated village full of explosive traps, basically a medieval Vietnam minefield.
Don't move an inch. Traps are set everywhere.
Sango chases the culprit and comes face to face with her zombie little brother. The shock is so great she can't even react. Naraku exploits the family trauma and makes an indecent proposal. If Sango steals Inuyasha's Tetsaiga, he'll return her brother. Back at camp, the mood is heavy. Inuyasha, trying to help in his clumsy way, says he's willing to stop Kohaku if necessary. Sango stays quiet, but her mind is racing. Torn between loyalty to her new friends and the chance to save her brother, she makes the worst decision possible. In the dead of night, she takes the protagonist's sword and decides to follow the villain's plan, falling for Naraku's pitch like someone clicking on a Nigerian prince email scam. Sango arrives at Naraku's castle with the stolen Tetsaiga, ready to make the trade, but Naraku is more treacherous than Scar from The Lion King. He reveals he's wiped Kohaku's memory and orders the boy to kill his own sister. It's a cruel psychological game, forcing Sango to fight the person she loves most. The fight is painful to watch. Sango refuses to hurt her brother, takes a brutal beating, and ends up cornered by poisonous miasma. In the crucial moment, instead of fighting back, she places her protective mask on Kohaku's face, choosing to die to save him. This Luke Skywalker refusing to fight Darth Vader moment actually purifies the shard in the boy's back. That's when the cavalry arrives. Kagome, absolutely livid at the manipulation, channels her inner Kikyo and fires a spiritual arrow that looks like a heat-seeking missile. The shot doesn't just clear the poison from the air, it tears a chunk out of Naraku. The villain is shocked, realizing his ex's reincarnation transformation is more dangerous than she looks. Cowardly as ever, he flees, taking Kohaku with him. The castle was an illusion and vanishes. In the end, Sango, riddled with guilt for betraying the group, tries to leave, but the gang gives her the fast and furious "We're family" speech. They forgive the slip-up, reaffirm their bond, and promise to help rescue her brother, solidifying the team against their common enemy. Needing an antidote to cure Kilala and help Sango recover, Inuyasha and Kagome head to a medicinal herb farm. There they meet Jinenji, a giant half-demon who looks like the Hulk but has the gentle soul of Lenny from Of Mice and Men. The poor guy is constantly bullied by the villagers, who act like the classic angry mob from a Frankenstein movie, ready to lynch the monster for no reason. His human mother looks more like the witch from Snow White and is fiercely protective, making it clear their lives have been anything but easy. Of course, the real danger isn't the gentle giant, but a real demon that shows up with its offspring wanting to snack on the villagers. While Inuyasha handles the minions, Jinenji has to overcome his trauma to protect the people who hate him. With a motivational nudge from Kagome, he channels his inner strength and obliterates the main monster. In the end, the villagers realize they were wrong and apologize. On the way home, we see a rare side of Inuyasha. He totally identifies with Jinenji's loneliness, remembering that growing up as a half-demon is a nightmare, creating a moment of genuine connection with Kagome. Kikyo continues her saga as a mystical nurse, but falls into a trap set by Naraku, who has disguised himself as a local lord. Meanwhile, Inuyasha's team investigates a mountain shrouded in toxic miasma. Miroku, always thinking of the paycheck, takes the exorcism job, but they've bitten off more than they can chew. They discover a cave where a literal demon battle royale is taking place, hundreds of them locked in, killing each other until only one remains. A dark Highlander vibe. The winner would gain the power of all the others and serve as a new body for Naraku. Inuyasha jumps into the fray to stop the winning monster from escaping, but things get complicated. Kikyo shows up and instead of helping, messes everything up. She fires an arrow that breaks the cave's seal, preventing Inuyasha from merging with the monster but handing the creature to Naraku on a silver platter to be absorbed. The villain gets a tuned-up new body and kidnaps Kikyo, leaving Inuyasha fuming and Kagome confused about whose side the zombie ex-girlfriend is actually on. The atmosphere gets heavy with mind games worthy of Batman's Scarecrow. Naraku subjects the gang to cruel illusions. Inuyasha relives the day he was betrayed, in a distorted version, while Kagome is forced to watch a torturous vision of her boyfriend choosing Kikyo. It's teen drama mixed with a psychological horror film. Kikyo, for her part, acts like the queen bee from Mean Girls, stealing Kagome's jewel shards and humiliating her, but curiously saves her rival from certain death before dropping her into a hole. When Inuyasha wakes from the illusion, the confrontation with his ex is tense. She basically tells him he'll never be able to kill her, and leaves. The twist comes at the end. Kikyo goes to Naraku's castle and hands over all the stolen shards. It looks like betrayal, but it's a risky move of 4D chess. Her plan is to let the villain complete the jewel so that she can then blast him and the jewel straight to hell with a single blow. She's playing the long game fueled by pure hate and a suicidal strategy. The family blacksmith arrives, causing a total scene. Totosai.
What's going on? Inuyasha!
Who the heck are you?
My name is Totosai.
An eccentric old man riding a three-eyed cow appears to judge whether or not Inuyasha is worthy of the Tetsaiga. The problem is, the old man has zero faith in the half-demon, mostly because Inuyasha has turned the legendary sword into a dull piece of scrap metal that can barely cut butter. Meanwhile, things between our main couple sour completely. Inuyasha tries to make excuses for Kikyo stealing Kagome's shards, giving her the classic "it's not what it looks like" talk. Kagome, obviously, isn't buying his sugarcoating for the undead ex-girlfriend, and a thick layer of relationship drama settles over the group. Sesshomaru, who has no time for romantic drama, shows up trying to force the blacksmith to forge a new sword for him. A Game of Thrones-style family feud breaks out, but with more fur and claws. Totosai reveals their father's big plot twist. Inuyasha got the sword that kills, Tetsaiga, while Sesshomaru inherited the Tenseiga, a sword that can't cut anything but can resurrect the dead. The big brother is livid over this useless inheritance, and decides he's taking the younger brother brother's sword by force. It's a brutal fight, and Inuyasha has to prove he's more than just a kid with a big club. The brotherly brawl continues, and Sesshomaru cheats by using a dragon's claw to nullify the Tetsaiga. Inuyasha is taking more of a beating than a Marvel movie villain, but in the heat of the moment, he finally sees the flow of the battle. He spots the clash of demonic energies, creating a rift in the air. This is the famous wind scar. He aims for the rift and unleashes a devastating blast that would have wiped his brother off the map if the Tenseiga hadn't triggered an automatic force field to save its owner. After the fight, we see a brand new side of the handsome villain. Sesshomaru is wounded in the forest when he meets Rin, a mute orphan girl who tries to feed him. He plays the lone wolf who needs no one routine, but when the girl is killed by wild wolves attacking the village, his conscience actually kicks in. In a moment worthy of the Mandalorian, the cold demon decides to test his useless sword. He uses the Tenseiga, sees the pale emissaries of the underworld, and brings the girl back to life. Now, the deadliest warrior in Japan has a human child following him around. Meanwhile, Inuyasha and the crew find themselves surrounded by a wolf pack, but the half-demon dispatches the beasts faster than express delivery. Out of nowhere, the pack's leader appears, a wolf demon named Koga, who's absolutely livid because his pets were killed. Kagome quickly notices the guy is souped up. He has 3 Shikon jewel shards embedded in his body, granting him insane speed. The fight breaks out, and Koga dominates the evasive game, mocking Inuyasha as a mutt while effortlessly dodging every strike. Inuyasha tries to resort to the wind scar, but the wolf's instincts are razor sharp. Sensing the pressure of the demonic energy, Koga strategically retreats before he can be turned into mincemeat. After the skirmish, Miroku tries to offer some friendly advice about not relying on the jewel to become a full demon, reminding him of the tragedies it causes. Inuyasha, however, just gets irritated and heads into the forest at night to practice his signature move, but Koga hasn't given up yet. Realizing Kagome acts as a jewel GPS, he hatches a plan. The next day, on a narrow cliffside trail, the wolves attack again to distract Sango and Miroku. It's the perfect opening. Koga appears out of thin air, snatches Kagome, and boldly claims she's now his woman. The guy literally runs straight up the vertical cliff face, defying gravity. Kagome, with the patience of a saint, ends up helping the wolf escape some demon birds, more out of survival than romance. When Inuyasha arrives, fuming with jealousy, he sees the wrong thing and thinks Kagome is falling for her kidnapper. Koga, never missing a chance to poke the bear, calls Inuyasha a mutt and tells him Kagome deserves a real alpha male. After saving the day, the relationship drama explodes. Inuyasha, insecure and with a bruised ego, accuses Kagome of enjoying the stinky wolf's advances.
Good to you. Are you nuts? Don't tell me you get off on that kind of thing. You were kidnapped and almost killed.
The argument reaches nuclear levels of male immaturity, and Kagome does what any sensible person would do. She tells Inuyasha to get lost, packs her bags, and heads back to the modern era, leaving the pouting dog talking to himself. Kagome returns to the modern world furious over Inuyasha's ridiculous jealousy, leaving the half-demon at an emotional crossroads. The gang pressures him to apologize, but his pride is more impenetrable than the vault at Fort Knox. Miroku warns them not to keep watching the Bone Eater's well, but he himself can't resist and stays there with popcorn in hand, watching the drama like a bad reality show episode. Inuyasha even tries to go to the future twice, but luck isn't on his side, and he returns empty-handed. While Kagome vents to her school friends in a total Mean Girls vibe, she cools off and decides to head back to the feudal era. As soon as she steps through, Inuyasha apologizes immediately. Sounds like a Disney movie, right? Wrong. The genius is apologizing because he broke her alarm clock when he went to visit her empty house, not knowing how to turn off the infernal noise. Kagome's rage returns at full force, and she prepares her infamous Syth command. But Shippo, Sango, and Miroku jump in to prevent the manslaughter, revealing they were spying from the bushes. Inuyasha gets pissed about the lack of privacy and starts chasing the gossips. In the end, Granny Kayerde drops some truth. Despite the chaos and the protagonist's limited brain power, he's just happy the girl came home. Shippo, in a questionable career move, makes drawings of the couple's fight and shows them to the entire village, leaving Kagome dying of embarrassment. Meanwhile, the big wolf Koga gets an alliance offer from another tribe to grab shards from a castle. He refuses, not out of ethics, but because he's obsessed with killing Inuyasha before anything else. Even so, his wolves go ahead, thinking they're in for a good deal. In the forest, Inuyasha's crew is busy hunting a demon bear. Our protagonist says he'd rather be hunting Koga, but before he can finish the bear, Naraku's annoying insects show up and steal the jewel shard. They follow the trail to a castle where we meet Kagura, Naraku's new executive of evil. She's a sorceress who controls the wind, and she's already exterminated Koga's wolves, leaving the scene specifically staged to frame Inuyasha. A manipulated survivor hands Koga a fake powered-up shard and tells him to run. When Koga arrives and sees the carnage, Kagura uses her winds to drench Inuyasha in the blood of the corpses, creating the perfect fake news scenario. Koga, driven by hate and ignoring all logic, swallows the lie and attacks Inuyasha with everything he's got. He's pumped up by the sinister red shard and won't listen to any explanations that the whole thing is an obvious trap set by Naraku. Thanks to Kagura's stage managing, Koga charges at Inuyasha with the fury of an uncontrollable Hulk. A fake Shikon shard grants him absurd strength, allowing him to break Inuyasha's arm and land a punch that craters the ground. Koga thinks he's settled the score and avenged his brothers, but then the true villain steps out of the shadows, applauding the performance. Kagura reveals she was the one who slaughtered his pack, and that the shard in Koga's arm is pure paralyzing venom. The wolf demon freezes instantly, trapped by his own arrogance. When Kagura tries to finish off a helpless Koga with her wind blades, Kagome intervenes with backup from Shippo and Kilala. Inuyasha, despite being battered and having a useless arm, stands up to fight. The catch? Kagura controls the wind, making Inuyasha's wind scar completely ineffective. Kagome tries to snipe the villainess, but her sacred arrow only grazes the demonic winds. Inuyasha spots an opening and commands Kagome to shoot at him, or rather, just past him, to dissipate Kagura's air barrier. The risky gamble pays off, the wind vanishes, and Inuyasha unleashes his full power, forcing the sorceress to flee on a giant feather. After the fight, Kagome purifies Koga's arm, and he leaves swearing double vengeance. Back at the lair, we learn Kagura hates Naraku, but can't betray him. The villain literally holds her heart in his hand, keeping her on a very short leash. A cheap romance vibe takes over when we meet Koharu, a Miroku fangirl who wants to move in with him. It's basically an episode of The Bachelor, with the girl throwing herself at him while Sango seethes in the corner, dropping barbs that would make a gossip girl writer proud. However, the monk, in a rare display of responsibility, sends the girl away for her own safety. He was right to do so because Naraku has sent reinforcements. Enter Kana, Kagura's sister. She's an albino girl giving off serious Samara from the Ring vibes, carrying a mirror capable of sucking out souls. Poor Koharu is the first victim, and shortly after, Kana turns the villagers into the Walking Dead zombies to attack Inuyasha and Miroku, who are forced to hold back to avoid hurting innocents. Things get ugly when Sango tries to attack with her giant boomerang, but Kana uses the mirror to reflect the blow. Kana, the avatar of the Void, takes advantage of the chaos and starts vacuuming up Kagome's soul like a Dyson on max power. Meanwhile, Kagura appears outside to mock Inuyasha's mercy and keep him busy, ensuring he can't save his modern-day girlfriend. The situation goes from bad to worse when Inuyasha, frustrated and wounded, decides to use the wind scar against Kagura. The problem? Kana steps in and uses her mirror like an Uno reverse card, reflecting the attack with interest directly into the half-demon's face. With Inuyasha down, Naraku appears via hologram, Emperor Palpatine style, to gloat. He drops the bombshell of the century. Kikyo handed him the jewel shards of her own free will. This destroys Inuyasha's mental state faster than any physical attack. Miroku tries to use the wind tunnel, but it's checkmate. If he does, he'll suck in the souls of the villagers and Kagome that are trapped in the mirror. Kagome herself saves the day. Even as her soul is being drained, she has too much soul for the mirror to handle. She fires an arrowgat, fueled by her willpower, ignores the magical reflection, and shatters Kana's mirror, freeing everyone. Naraku retreats with his tail between his legs, but the emotional damage is done. Inuyasha is hurt, and the seeds of doubt regarding Kikyo's betrayal have been successfully planted. While the group tries to recover, Inuyasha ignores all sense of self-preservation when he spots Kikyo's soul collectors. He chases after his undead ex despite being physically trashed, leaving a furious Kagome and a confused Shippo behind. The encounter is tense. Kikyo confirms she gave the jewel to Naraku as part of a 4D chess move move to eliminate him for good. Kagura tries to spy and attack, but Kikyo is so powerful she sends the villainess running with a single arrow. When Inuyasha returns, the atmosphere with Kagome is colder than his ex's heart, but there's no time for a relationship talk because Goshinki, a new incarnation of Naraku, emerges. This purple saber-toothed demon can read minds, predicting Inuyasha's every move, like an evil Professor X. The fight is a massacre. Goshinki humiliates the group and in a shocking moment bites and snaps the Tetsaiga in half. Without the sword to seal his blood, Inuyasha loses control and enters full berserk mode. His eyes turn red, claws grow, and he shreds Goshinki without mercy, acting like a wild animal. He nearly attacks his friends, but Kagome, brave as ever, hugs the monster and uses the Syth command to bring the dog boy back to his senses, leaving him staring at the shards of his broken sword. Sesshomaru arrives at the crime scene, playing feudal CSI, and finds the severed head of the mind-reading demon. Instead of being disgusted, he decides it would make a great sword and places an order with an exiled mad blacksmith named Kaijinbo. Meanwhile, Inuyasha is moping because Tetsaiga is broken. Totosai appears and says it can be fixed, but the price is high. Inuyasha must provide the raw material. The blacksmith yanks out one of the protagonist's fangs with brute force and zero anesthesia, a scene straight out of a dentist's nightmare. To make matters worse, the new moon arrives. Inuyasha loses his powers and turns into a normal, black-haired human. A secret Shippo accidentally lets slip. Sango is shocked to see this decaf version of her teammate, but Mioroku explains it's the half-demon's moment of weakness. The timing couldn't be worse. Kaijinbo forges the cursed sword Tokijin and is possessed by its evil energy, Lord of the Rings style, but more violent.
Yes. It's done. A magnificent demon sword.
He hunts down the group, even killing poor Jakin on the way, whom Sesshomaru resurrects with total boredom. Powerless and swordless, Inuyasha is a sitting duck, and the gang has to scramble to survive until sunrise. The sun rises and Inuyasha returns to its classic form, but there's a catch. The repaired Tetsaiga now weighs a ton. Meanwhile, the possessed blacksmith Kaijinbo can't handle the pressure of the Tokijin and literally explodes because his body was too weak for that much power. Kagura, who is dying to betray Naraku, tips Sesshomaru off about the sword's location and even tries to flirt with him. Sesshomaru arrives, ignores all warnings, and picks up Tokijin like it's a toy, proving he's the man. He decides to field test the new blade on his little brother. It's a one-sided beatdown. Inuyasha can barely lift his heavy sword, let alone fight. When he's cornered and drops Tetsaiga, his monster side takes over again. Classic Hulk out. Totosai realizes things are going south and creates a firewall to break up the family feud. Kagome uses the Syth command to reboot Inuyasha's system before he does something stupid, and they flee, leaving Sesshomaru intrigued by this savage transformation. Koga returns, looking for Naraku, but only finds a puppet. The real villain releases two new abominations, Jiromaru, who looks like Hannibal Lecter in a muzzle, and Kagoromaru. The grossest detail, Kagoromaru lives inside the other's stomach, a clear and grotesque nod to Alien. Inuyasha arrives to help, but is still struggling to swing his heavy sword. Koga, despite his injuries, has to team up with the dog boy. They hate each other, but they have to work together. The smaller creature is fast and hides underground, so Sango uses poison to flush him out. Hardcore pest control. Once the monsters are finally in their sights, Inuyasha lands a wind scar and pulverizes the duo. But the victory is short-lived. Koga complains he was almost hit by the blast, and Inuyasha, dying of jealousy over Koga's interaction with Kagome, starts another childish argument. Fed up with the drama, Kagome sits him again and decides to go home, leaving the hero looking like a fool. Things have finally reached a breaking point at Kaede's hut. After the fight with the demon brothers, Inuyasha and Kagome get into a classic teenage relationship spat. The reason? Inuyasha's toxic jealousy over Koga. The argument escalates fast, keeping up with the Kardashians, feudal edition, and Kagome, tired of being mistreated, heads back to the modern era, leaving the half-yokai huffing and Shippo trying and failing to talk sense into him. Meanwhile, Naraku continues his obsessive pursuit of Kikyo like a 90s slasher movie stalker. He unleashes a giant soul collector on her. The undead ex tries to defend herself, but she runs out of arrows and finds herself cornered on a cliff. That's when our favorite trash bag boyfriend springs into action. Inuyasha catches the scent of trouble, finds a wounded Kikyo, and goes into hero mode, slicing the giant monster with Tetsaiga. The problem is what happens next. In a tense moment, Inuyasha completely forgets about Kagome, embraces Kikyo, and promises to protect her from Naraku at any cost. And guess who returned to the past at that exact moment and saw the whole thing from behind the bushes? says, "Kagome." Inuyasha even notices her and stares back like he was caught red-handed, while she runs away heartbroken. The vibe is bleaker than a breakup set to a Taylor Swift playlist. Kagome goes home determined to move on, while in the past, Inuyasha is in a deep depression, accepting that his destiny is to die alongside Kikyo. He's so resigned that Miroku comments he's looking like a Buddha, but his friends aren't having it. Miroku, Sango, and Shippo give Inuyasha a reality check, basically calling him an idiot for wanting to ditch a living girl for one made of clay and bones. In the modern era, Kagome's mom plays therapist and gives her that golden advice about following her heart. Kagome realizes that despite everything, she can't hate Kikyo and still loves the dog boy. She swallows her pride and returns through the well. The reunion is tense, but honest. Inuyasha tries to play the martyr, saying he owes his life to Kikyo, but Kagome drops the truth. She knows she can't compete with his past, but she wants to be by his side in the present. It's a mature resolution, like the end of The Notebook, where they accept the relationship is messy, but choose to stay together anyway. In the end, she takes his hand, and they move forward with their status updated to, "It's complicated, but we're in this together." Switching gears from romantic drama to Winter Soldier-style family drama, the group finds the graves of the Demon Slayers, which leaves Sango shaken. But the real shock comes when they discover Kohaku is not only alive, but living a peaceful life with an elderly couple in the forest, totally amnesiac and just chopping wood. Sango rushes to the reunion, and it's a sweet sibling moment, until Inuyasha, with his suspicious dog instincts, warns that this smells like a Naraku setup. And as usual, he's right. It's Admiral Akbar screaming, "It's a trap." Kagura appears with a demon army, and chaos ensues. In the confusion, Kohaku flees, and Kagome chases after him. The problem? The kid's assassin switch is flipped. Naraku, pulling the strings like a sadistic DM, gives the order. When Kagome and Kohaku hide in a cave to escape, the boy's eyes change. He enters a trance and prepares to kill Kagome in cold blood. The episode ends on a suspense thriller cliffhanger. The person you're trying to save has become the monster. Sango is in full John Wick mode defending her brother, but things fall apart when Kagome screams from the other side. While Inuyasha and Miroku deal with Kagura and her disposable minions, the real drama unfolds in the woods. Kohaku is fighting his own mental programming. The kid hesitates and cries as Naraku barks orders in his head via demonic Bluetooth. When Sango arrives, she sees a classic horror movie scene, her brother with his weapon raised and her wounded friend. The boy flees, and the misunderstanding is set. Miroku, using his high IQ, deduces that Kohaku was bait and the real target was always Kagome. The monk opens his wind tunnel, buying time for Inuyasha to chase after the girls. In the forest, the atmosphere is heavy. Sango decides she can't live like this anymore and makes the ultimate drastic choice, to kill Kohaku and then herself to end the curse. It's heavy Shakespearean tragedy vibes. Just as she's about to deliver the final blow, Inuyasha swoops in and blocks the attack. He gives it to her straight. The kid hesitated because he's still human, so killing him would be doing exactly what the villain wants. Kohaku flees with Kagura, and Naraku, being the world's worst boss, wipes the boy's memory again. At least the team knows there's still hope for him. Sesshomaru visits an ancient demonic tree for some necessary exposition. We find out Inuyasha is basically a time bomb. Without the Tetsaiga, his demon blood takes over, turning him into a brainless killing machine. Their father knew this, and left the sword as a safety lock. Cut to Inuyasha and the gang, who run into bandits and a beefy demon named Gaten Maru. The beast traps Inuyasha and Miroku in a venomous cocoon, leaving Tetsaiga outside. The sword's biometric security prevents the villain from using it, but that doesn't help those trapped inside. The situation becomes critical. The poison is taking its toll, and without the sword to keep him in check, Inuyasha begins to transform. His eyes turn red, his claws grow, and the vibe shifts from shonen anime hero to horror movie monster. Kagome and Sango try to help from the outside, but the clock is ticking, and Inuyasha's inner Hulk is itching to come out and play. The bandits think they've won the day, but they've made the classic generic villain mistake. They pissed off the protagonist. Inuyasha rips through the venomous cocoon, but it's not the Inuyasha we know. His demon blood is at the wheel, and he's in full berserk mode. He shreds Gaten Maru like wet paper, and then turns on the humans. The worst part, he's laughing while he does it. Kagome tries the talk no jutsu to calm him down, but the monster is deaf to reason. Sesshomaru appears to settle the score. Rarely has the big brother been so useful. Inuyasha attacks blindly, but Sesshomaru dodges with elven elegance, proving that brute force without a a brain is useless. He knocks Inuyasha out, saving everyone, and drops a cold truth. There's no point in killing his brother while he doesn't even know who he is. When he wakes up, Inuyasha is traumatized. He compulsively washes his hands in the river, Lady Macbeth style, trying to scrub away the scent of blood and the guilt of having enjoyed the slaughter. Kagome senses his fear of becoming a full villain and gives him much needed moral support, promising she won't let him lose himself to the dark side. Naruku decides to visit Inuyasha's father's graveyard of bad memories and does the unthinkable. He melts the seal holding Ryokotse. Imagine waking up a Godzilla that was forced into a decades-long map and has skin tougher than vibranium. The beast wakes up seeing red and ready to wreck everything. Inuyasha arrives on the scene full of confidence, trying to use Tetsaiga, only to find out the hard way that the sword is too heavy and his strikes don't even tickle the dragon's hide. Ryokotse, who loves some trash talk, mocks our half-demon while swatting away his attacks like a pro baseball player hitting a slow pitch. Things get real when the dragon disarms Inuyasha with a brutal blow. The sword flies off, leaving Inuyasha vulnerable and bleeding out. And then, our biggest fear happens. Without the sword to hold back the tide, his demonic blood takes over. His eyes turn red, his consciousness fades, and he goes into that uncontrollable berserk mode right in front of Kagome and the rest of the crew who just arrived to see the world burn. The battle is raging, and Inuyasha, now in full-on demon mode, ignores the Tetsaiga and goes at the dragon with his bare claws. Totosai is in a panic. If Inuyasha wins this way, he'll never master the sword. But then comes a Luke Skywalker use the Force moment. Inuyasha hears Kagome's voice, fights his killer instincts, and crawls toward his blade. When he finally grips the Tetsaiga, he gets an RPG-style level up. The sword becomes weightless, an extension of his own arm. He returns to normal and realizes he can now fire the wind scar at will. But Ryukotse is a tough nut to crack and prepares a massive ball of demonic energy. It's all or nothing. Inuyasha charges the blast. He doesn't just block it, he finds the rupture point and unleashes the backlash wave. It's the ultimate Uno reverse. He takes the dragon's own energy, adds it to his own, and sends it back as a massive cyclone that shreds the monster. An epic win. Of course, he immediately starts acting like he owns the place, forcing Kagome to drop a classic sick to bring him back to Earth. Taking a break from the heavy hitters, the plot focuses on a side quest for Shippo. The little fox saves a girl named Satsuki from some bullies.
Get off him!
You scoundrels!
And naturally goes soft for her. She carries a jewel her brother gave her before going to war, swearing he'd return. The problem? The jewel is fake, just quartz, and her brother is sadly already a casualty of war. Shippo tries to impress the girl and almost steals Kagome's real shards to give to her, but he's caught in the act. Things get worse when a lizard demon appears, posing as the girl's dead brother to manipulate her. Shippo tries to beat a hero, using his illusions and fox magic, but the lizard is way out of his league. Inuyasha arrives to save the day, but he plays the ultimate wingman. He defeats the monster but makes it look like Shippo landed the finishing blow, so he doesn't lose face in front of his crush. In the end, the girl accepts the truth about her brother and moves on, leaving Shippo with his first heartbreak and the look of someone who aged 5 years in a single day. Miroku decides to play the Good Samaritan for a lady on the road, and, surprise surprise, gets robbed. But the monk learns nothing and soon hears rumors of a demon in a nearby village that kidnaps men. The catch? They say the demon is a beautiful woman. Miroku's creep radar pings instantly, and he decides to investigate alone, trying to act like a lone hero. Sango, who wasn't born yesterday, sees right through him and follows, leaving Inuyasha and Kagome on babysitting duty. The duo enters a magical barrier that leads straight to a mysterious princess's castle. Miroku is welcomed with luxury, while Sango finds the rest of the village men turned into human raisins, drained of life energy. The exterminator bursts into the main hall just as the monk is about to kiss the princess and screams to snap him out of it. The princess reveals her true form, a giant coyote demon. The fight begins, and the beast has a dirty trick, invisibility. Miroku, who wasn't actually hypnotized, he was just enjoying the moment, uses his sacred scrolls to help Sango track the monster. Sango lands a critical hit with her giant boomerang, but her weapon ends up badly cracked in the process. In the end, the soul of the real princess is freed and thanks Miroku before ascending. Sango is visibly biting her tongue with jealousy. Miroku, sensing the mood, thanks thanks Sango for her concern in a rare, sweet moment, which he immediately ruins just because he can. The result is a slap that probably hurt more than the demon fight. Kagome has a nightmare about acing a test, which makes her realize she needs to get back to the present to actually study. Taking the opportunity, Sango decides to travel to fix her broken boomerang, and the group temporarily splits up. Inuyasha, Kagome, Miroku, and Shippo continue their journey and stumble upon a bizarre mist and fruit with human faces. Yes, it's as disturbing as it sounds. They discover a mad sage named Tokujin is growing these fruits using humans as fertilizer. To make matters worse, the group's timing is terrible. It's the night of the new moon, the monthly moment when Inuyasha loses his powers and becomes a black-haired human. Inuyasha tries to stand up to the villain, but Tokujin has a magical gourd that works like a Pokeball for people, and our hero gets sucked inside. Kagome, Miroku, and Shippo try to help, but end up shrunk and trapped in a miniature village. Inside the gourd, Inuyasha starts melting in magical stomach acid and tries to summon Tetsaiga like Thor calling his hammer. The sword comes, but human Inuyasha doesn't have the strength to tank Tokujin, who transforms into a stone monster. The episode ends with everyone at a disadvantage. Inuyasha knocked out, the friends reduced to action figure size, and Kagome thinking this is all a math-induced fever dream. The situation is critical. Tokujin, the villain with an evil gardener complex, keeps human Inuyasha captive and starts messing with his head, claiming he ate Kagome. This triggers the half-demon's fury, proving he's much more dangerous when his girl is in trouble. Fortunately, the pocket versions of Miroku and Shippo manage to help Inuyasha break free. They find Kagome, who wasn't eaten, but is being marinated in a bowl of sake, naked. Inuyasha arrives in gentleman mode, offering her his red robe, in a classic anime scene where the embarrassment is deadlier than the threat of death, and they try to escape. An old sage, who became plant food, explains that Tokujin was corrupted by a demonic tree. Kagome receives an improvised magical bow from the old sage and hits the villain, but the tree decides to absorb Tokujin and turn into a kaiju-level giant monster. Inuyasha and Tokujin fall off a cliff, and all seems lost until the sun rises. Inuyasha regains his demonic powers with the dawn and unleashes a wind scar that turns the tree into sawdust. At the bottom of the cliff, the friends fear Inuyasha was turned into a pancake. Kagome is already in morning tears, but Inuyasha appears alive and well, mocking their concern. Kagome's grief turns to rage in 2 seconds, and she ends the drama by dropping that classic sit to humble the stubborn dog boy. Kagome returns from the present day loaded with snacks, but the mood turns sour when everyone realizes Sango is missing. Miroku, plagued by a guilty conscience, fears his wandering hands finally pushed the demon slayer to ghost the group for good. In reality, Sango is back at the Slayer village performing maintenance on her giant boomerang. There, she encounters two ninja sisters, Serena and Suzuna, who beg for a Cobra Kai-style apprenticeship. Sango hesitates but eventually teaches them the basics. However, as night falls, the girls reveal their true colors. They don't want to be heroes, they want to be thieves. They loot the village's weapon cache. When Sango confronts them, they give her some twisted logic about how their late father told them to live strongly, which they interpreted as steal everything in sight. The problem is that the demon bones they stole act like a GPS for monsters. Predictably, demons swarm the area, and the sisters, who have zero combat skills, nearly become dinner. Sango arrives to save the day, and explains that their father likely wanted them to be happy, not criminals, correcting their translation error. Miroku and the rest of the crew arrive just in time to help with the cleanup. In the end, Miroku claims he had a psychic premonition of danger, playing the part of the concerned sensitive, but he ruins the romantic moment by trying to grab Sango again, earning himself a well-deserved slap. Enter Tsubaki, a dark priestess who strikes a bargain with Naruku in exchange for the Shikon jewel. Her goal? Eternal youth, because apparently, Botox doesn't exist in the feudal era. Meanwhile, in the present, the biggest threat to Kagome is a failing grade in math. She decides to head back to the past, but the moment she steps out of the Bone Eater's well, she's bitten by an invisible snake, basically a computer virus that infects her system instantly. The snake was one of Tsubaki's spells. The villainess contaminates the jewel shards Kagome is carrying, turning them them black and forcing them down the girl's throat. Now, Tsubaki has remote control over Kagome's body via blood voodoo. Naraku, watching the whole thing play out like a Big Brother livestream, wants to see the world burn and forces Kagome to relive Kikyo's trauma, killing Inuyasha. Miroku and Sango head out to hunt the witch, leaving Inuyasha to look after Kagome, who is burning up with fever. The atmosphere reaches the entity-level horror as Kagome fights against her own body. Tsubaki forces her hand, and Kagome aims her bow at Inuyasha. Stubborn as a mule, he refuses to run. The curse overcomes her resistance, and the arrow is fired with lethal intent. Kagome's arrow narrowly misses Inuyasha, who continues to stand his ground, proving his love is practically bulletproof. But the real savior is Kikyo. The undead ex-girlfriend crashes Tsubaki's hideout with major original mean girl energy, destroys Naraku's puppet, and breaks the villain's concentration. This releases Kagome from the trance. We get a flashback worthy of a soap opera. 50 years ago, Tsubaki tried to curse Kikyo out of pure envy over her beauty and power, but Kikyo ricocheted the spell right back into her rival's face, leaving a nasty scar. Back in the present, Kikyo confronts Tsubaki and lays down the law. Do what you want with Kagome, but if you touch Inuyasha, I'll kill you. Talk about marking your territory. Kagome and Inuyasha reach the villain's base. Now recovered, Kagome fires a purifying arrow that shatters Tsubaki's magical barrier like glass. Cornered, the villainess goes for broke and summons a giant demon that emerges from her own eye. To make matters worse, she uses her connection to Kagome as leverage. If Inuyasha draws the Tetsaiga, Kagome dies instantly. Our half-demon is going to have to fight with one hand tied behind his back if he wants to save his girl. Things are looking grim for Inuyasha. He's fighting Tsubaki's demon with one hand tied behind his back, unable to use the Tetsaiga without putting Kagome's life at risk, while he holds his own with his Iron Reaper Soul Stealer. The villainess decides to play dirty on a psychological level. She traps Kagome's mind in an illusion that would make the writers of The Matrix proud. In this alternate reality, Kagome is living a normal American high school life with no memory of the feudal era. But, like a weird episode of The Twilight Zone, things start to glitch. Her cat turns into Kilala. She sees her feudal friends on the street, and everything feels off. The peak of the psychological horror is a Kikyo lookalike who tries to convince Kagome that she is a nobody and should just give up. It's essentially a supernatural gaslighting session. But our protagonist is no fool. Kagome rejects the false identity, screams her true name, and wakes from the trance. Then comes the most satisfying scene of the arc. Just as Kikyo did 50 years ago, Kagome reflects Tsubaki's spell back at her. The curse breaks, the snake demon dies, and Tsubaki retreats with her tail between her legs. The episode ends with a sweet moment where Inuyasha apologizes for putting her through that, but Kagome reaffirms she's there by choice, solidifying the ship. Tsubaki doesn't know when to quit. After her defeat, she flees to an ancient shrine and runs into two rookie priestesses, Botan and Momiji. The villainess goes full catfish, pretending to be a respectable mentor fleeing from a terrible demon, who happens to be Inuyasha. The girls, as naive as the mean girls before Regina George, buy it all and promise to protect her. While Tsubaki takes the opportunity to break the seal on a forbidden tower to release a monster, the intern exorcists intercept Inuyasha's group. They use a bizarre paper charm spell that creates giant chibi-style clones of Inuyasha and Kagome. The fight turns into a slapstick comedy, with the gang having to punch giant bobble-headed versions of themselves.
Iron Reaper Soul Stealer!
Naturally, Miroku can't help himself. Instead of fighting seriously, he tries to hit on the girls mid-combat, channeling his inner Barney Stinson until Sango drags him away by the ear. After a lot of Scooby-Doo style confusion, the group manages to prove they aren't the villains, but the damage is done. Tsubaki, ignoring all safety warnings, releases a 1,000-year-old ogre trapped in the tower, all while Kagura watches from the sidelines, just waiting for the right moment to steal the spotlight and the jewel. It's boss battle time. Tsubaki decides that long-range magic is for the weak and fuses with the ogre she just released, turning into a giant monster straight out of an episode of Power Rangers. She's gone full megalomaniac, screaming about eternal youth and unlimited power while firing lightning bolts in every direction. The interns, Botan and Momiji, finally realize they backed the wrong horse and watch in horror. Inuyasha goes on the attack, but the monster's hide is too tough for a standard blade. Tsubaki tries to absorb Inuyasha, thinking she's already won, but she forgot he has a cheat code. The backlash wave. In a classic Uno reverse move, Inuyasha takes all her demonic energy and sends it back with interest. The explosion is massive. Tsubaki reverts to her human form, defeated and powerless. Before she can try anything else, one of Naraku's insects appears, snatches the jewel shard from her eye, and leaves the villainess to literally turn to dust. She was used and discarded by the boss. The priestesses apologize for the mess, and everything ends well, but not before we see the original Kikyo watching from the shadows, maintaining her life coach from hell posture before vanishing into the woods. The gang starts the episode by taking down a giant centipede, showing that it's just another Tuesday in feudal Japan. After the battle, a villager invites them for dinner. Miroku, acting like a woman sommelier, refuses until he hears there are young ladies in the village. The man changes his mind faster than a politician in an election year. At dinner, the vibe shifts into a dating reality show. Sango is biting her tongue with jealousy watching Miroku flirt, but karma strikes fast. An elderly woman decides the monk is her perfect match. Sango, of course, loves seeing Miroku suffer in the clutches of the thirsty granny. As night falls, things get creepy, insidious style, when Miroku is attacked in his room. But it's not a ghost, it's a possessed Sango, laying a beatdown on him. Inuyasha has to intervene, and Sango wakes up with no memory of the event. The mystery continues until they discover the culprit, a flea named Shoga. It turns out our old friend Miyoga is a runaway groom, runaway bride style. Shoga is possessing everyone just to drag Miyoga to the altar. Inuyasha tries to help but ends up possessed himself, chasing the fugitive flea. In the end, there's a forced insect wedding, but Miyoga manages a last-minute escape, proving that commitment just isn't his thing, while Rin makes cute wishes on a shooting star about staying with Seishomaru forever. The mood is heavy at Naraku's castle. Kagura notices her boss's magical barrier has dropped and decides it's time for a revolution. On the other side, Inuyasha is dealing with his monthly problem. It's the night of the new moon, which means he turns into a normal human and loses his powers, much like Superman near kryptonite. To make matters worse, Koga shows up with his wolf pack. The speedster wolf immediately starts flirting with Kagome, which has Inuyasha fuming, but he can't do anything because he's about to go full human. Kagura crashes the party, determined to steal the jewel shards from Koga's legs. She unleashes an army of skeletons and traps Koga in a tornado, ripping the shards from his legs. Inuyasha, now fully human and vulnerable, tries to bluff his way out, but the situation is dire. Kagura, noticing Naraku is MIA, decides to make a power play. She takes the stolen shards and goes to Seishomaru. The pitch is simple. She gives him the power-up, and he kills Naraku. Basically, she wants to outsource her boss's assassination to gain her freedom. Seishomaru hears Kagura's proposal and responds with his signature icy contempt. "I do not need your help." The guy is so badass he turns down a free power-up. Furious, Kagura heads back to the battlefield to take her anger out on Koga, who is taking more of a beating than a Marvel movie henchman. Human Inuyasha tries to help, but it's tough without a transformed Tetsaiga. Their luck changes as the sun begins to rise. As soon as the first ray of light hits, Inuyasha reverts to his half-demon form, draws the wind scar, and lets loose. He nearly finishes Kagura, but she manages to escape, returning the shards to Koga in the process. The problem? During the chaos, Kagura saw Inuyasha in his human form. Now she knows his secret. Back at the castle, Kagura discovers Naraku is the ultimate big brother. He saw everything through Kama's mirror. He reveals that he is also half-human and loses his powers during the new moon, but he threatens to reabsorb Kagura if she tries to betray him again. In a mental game of poker, Kagura decides not to tell Naraku that Inuyasha shares this human weakness, keeping that information as an ace in the hole for later. Shippo receives a mysterious letter via arrow, medieval snail mail, challenging him to a duel against the last survivor of the Thunder Brothers. The whole gang tags along, expecting an epic battle, but they arrive to find a complete farce. The terrible Soten is literally a cranky child who draws her evil plans with crayons. Meanwhile, her pet dragon Koryu separates the group and sets up some Home Alone-style traps on a $0 budget. Inuyasha, who has the patience of an erupting volcano, gets annoyed with the dragon's slowness and starts punching the cloud it rides on. Bad move. The creature turns into a storm and starts raining lightning on their heads. Meanwhile, Shippo's deadly battle turns into a drawing contest and a mushroom throwing fight. It's basically a recess brawl over lunch money. In the end, when Inuyasha and the others arrive ready for a fight, Kagome finds the enemy so cute she goes in for a hug. Then comes the plot twist. Soten is actually a girl. Shippo, trying to act mature, gives her his crayons as a peace offering. The episode ends with her drawing Shippo like he's a shoujo manga hero, wrapping up the most random filler day of their lives.
With this experience, I had grown even more mature.
While Kagome is in the modern world listening to her friends talk smack about her toxic boyfriend at Waknald's, Naraku is back in feudal Japan doing some internal spring cleaning. He literally rips a piece of flesh from his own body and tosses it into an abyss. This scrap becomes a faceless monster, straight out of a slasher flick, that starts killing bandits to steal their faces, face-off style, trying to find one that fits. The creature, suffering from total amnesia, runs into a monk named Muso, steals his face and name, and starts a reign of terror. Inuyasha catches Naraku's scent and goes to investigate, only to find that Muso is like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. You cut off an arm, another grows back, neither Sango nor Inuyasha can put him down. Things get personal when Kagome returns to the feudal era. As soon as Muso lays eyes on her, a glitch hits his empty mind. He confuses Kagome with Kikyo and decides she's the missing piece of his life's puzzle. The maniac ignores all attacks, bulldozes through the team, and kidnaps Kagome, screaming that she's the woman he's been looking for all along. Inuyasha manages to rescue Kagome from Muso's clutches, but the villain is persistent and regenerates faster than Wolverine. They discover the monster is heading straight for the cave where it all began, Onigumo's old hideout. There, Kaede drops the truth bomb. Muso is the incarnation of Onigumo, the human who served as Naraku's base. The man's memories come flooding back, revealing he only sold his soul to demons because he was obsessed with Kikyo. Essentially, Naraku tried to do a heart detox and expel his human side to stop feeling weakness. Meanwhile, a tense encounter unfolds between the original Naraku and Kikyo. He tries to play the supreme villain and strangles her to prove he's over his human half, but his body freezes at the moment of truth. Onigumo's heart firewall is still active inside him, preventing the killing blow. Frustrated by his inability to kill his ex, he retreats. Back in the main fight, Muso transforms his body into a bizarre scorpion. Inuyasha fires wind scar after wind scar, but the enemy has an infinite health cheat. Kagura watches from the sidelines, realizing Muso is a wild card that even the Raku can't fully control. Inuyasha is going to have to get creative, because just cutting this immortal piece of gum into bits isn't working. The fight against Muso becomes a Dark Souls level test of patience, because the guy regenerates faster than the T-1000. Inuyasha spams the wind scar, but the villain just snaps his pieces back together like he's made of Lego. Moroku, using his clinical eye, notices the weak point, a spider mark on his back, essentially the core where the pieces reunite. Just as Inuyasha aims for the kill shot, Kagura crashes the party and deflects the blow. But wait, the real plot twist is coming. Naraku comes out of hiding. He decides he's played enough and begins to reabsorb Muso in a scene reminiscent of Cell absorbing the androids in Dragon Ball Z. Muso tries to resist and even stabs Naraku, but the villain doesn't flinch and swallows his human half back down, admitting he needs Onigumo's heart to keep his body stable. The biggest shock comes next. Naraku reveals he has hacked the half-demon system. Unlike Inuyasha, who is forced to lose his powers on the new moon, Naraku chooses when he wants to be weak and uses that time to reconstruct and buff himself. To prove it, he raises a new barrier that tanks the wind scar without a scratch and leaves, laughing in everyone's faces. With the wind scar useless against Naraku's new defense, Inuyasha runs to Totosai demanding a sword upgrade. There he meets Bunza, a lynx demon who looks like a teenage Puss in Boots and also wants to learn how to break barriers. The old blacksmith, as crafty as ever, puts them both to work preparing a bath. Total Karate Kid vibes. Except unlike Mr. Miyagi, Totosai is just lazy and isn't actually teaching them how to wax on, wax off. The practical lesson turns into a rescue mission. Bunza's father tried to take on a giant praying mantis named Nanafushi and failed miserably. Inuyasha helps the cat tribe and manages to break the bug's barrier through sheer brute force, sending the monster to the afterlife. In the end, Inuyasha leaves furious because he thinks he just wasted time being Totosai's housekeeper, but the old man drops a crucial bit of info for Miyoga to pass on. For the Tetsaiga to cut Naraku's barrier, it must absorb the blood of a specific demon. Basically, the training was a lie, but the quest tutorial has been unlocked. Miyoga finally spills the beans. To make the Tetsaiga turn red and cut through barriers, Inuyasha must defeat the guardian of the Bat Tribe. It sounds simple, like a side quest in an RPG, but things get complicated. The guardian is Shiori, a little girl who is also a half-demon just like Inuyasha. The girl's story is tragic. She was handed over by her late father and human mother to her demon grandfather in a desperate attempt to keep peace between the species. The problem is, the bats are backstabbers and continue to attack humans despite the deal. Inuyasha falls into a heavy crisis of conscience. He sees himself and the girl as both suffer prejudice for being neither fully human nor fully demon. He refuses to kill a child just for a power-up. The situation worsens when Shiori's grandfather, essentially the bat version of Emperor Palpatine, decides the girl's mother is a distraction and resolves to kill everyone in the village to ensure his granddaughter becomes a loyal weapon for him alone. Now Inuyasha and the crew have to save the day without breaking the protagonist's moral code. The situation at Shiori's barrier spirals out of control. The grandfather bat plays dirty and admits he killed his own son, Shiori's father, because the man wanted peace. Basically, the old man is the definition of a toxic relative you avoid at Christmas. Hearing this, Shiori goes rogue, kicks her grandfather out of the protective field, and leaves him vulnerable. Inuyasha doesn't waste a second and sends the villain to bat hell. Now comes the bureaucratic part of the mission. To upgrade the Tetsaiga, Myoga says Inuyasha must kill Shiori and destroy the barrier with her blood. But our favorite half-demon has too much trauma to hurt a child who shares his struggles. He refuses on the spot, preferring to find another demon somewhere else. However, Shiori offers an alternative solution: break the blood coral crystal, the source of her family's power. When Inuyasha goes to destroy the orb, the grandfather's evil spirit returns from the beyond, like a horror movie villain that refuses to die and tries to attack her. At that moment, we get a Lion King moment as the spirit of Shiori's father appears to protect his wife and daughter. With the barrier weakened by the good ghost, Inuyasha uses the Tetsaiga to destroy the grandfather's soul once and for all. The crystal shatters, the sword absorbs the energy, and finally unlocks the legendary skin, the red Tetsaiga, now capable of slicing through magical barriers. Sesshomaru visits the site where his father fought the dragon Ryukotse, doing some quiet investigation like someone who trusts no one. Meanwhile, in the modern world, Inuyasha gets tired of waiting and goes to fetch Kagome. We get a sitcom moment with him having dinner with the Higurashi family and playing with the cat, looking completely out of place. But the piece is short-lived. Back in the feudal era, the group discovers a gang of panther demons is invading the area. It's literally dogs versus cats, but with mystical powers. They are hunting for Shikan jewel shards and have an ancient grudge against Inuyasha's family. Sesshomaru is quickly challenged by one of the leaders, who seems to hold a lethal vendetta against the elder brother. In the middle of the chaos, Kagome gets kidnapped because apparently being Lord Sesshomaru's ward puts a giant bullseye on your back. Koga, the wolf who never misses a chance to show off, joins the chase. When they find the panther's hideout, they run into a magical barrier. It's the perfect moment for Inuyasha to test his new toy. He draws the red Tetsaiga to try and brute force a path through and save the girl. The red Tetsaiga works like a charm, and Inuyasha cuts through the barrier like butter, allowing the gang to storm the enemy territory. However, the inside is a labyrinth, and Kagome is already locked away in the villain's VIP prison. Sesshomaru also arrives on the scene, striking a pose of superiority and telling Inuyasha to beat it. The reason for the family tension comes to light with a history lesson from Myoga. It turns out that 50 years ago, there was a great demon world war. The Great Dog General, their father, versus the Panther King. Sesshomaru carries a lethal hatred for his brother because during that war, Inuyasha didn't show up to help on the front lines. The reason? He was busy being pinned to a tree by Kikyo's arrow. Basically, Sesshomaru had to tank the war alone while his little brother was napping, and he's never gotten over it. While we process this family drama, chaos reigns. Koga and his crew get completely lost. The wolf's GPS is broken, and Miroku and Sango end up captured and tossed into the same cell as Kagome. The Panther's plan is a classic RPG villain trope: sacrifice everyone to resurrect their master. Now Inuyasha, Sesshomaru, and Koga must attack the castle gates simultaneously in a forced, grumpy alliance to stop the ritual.
Where have you got Kagome?
The battle at the castle turns into a full-blown royal rumble. While Inuyasha struggles with Shunnen's illusions, Sesshomaru enters OP Big Brother mode, neutralizing the fire and ice from the other Panther sisters with annoying ease. He doesn't even break a sweat. But the games end when the Panther King is finally resurrected using the Shikan jewel shards, betraying his own family in a plot twist worthy of Game of Thrones. The villain decides his subordinates are nothing more than rechargeable batteries and absorbs their energy to go full beast mode. This forces versus the unthinkable, an alliance between Inuyasha and Sesshomaru. It's like watching Thor and Loki fighting side by side in the MCU. Plenty of ego, zero chemistry, but extremely effective. No attack seems to work until Jaken spills the beans. The Panther King is bloated with stolen souls. That's when Sesshomaru shines. Literally. He draws Tenseiga, not to kill, but to heal the villain, ripping out the absorbed souls, and, as a bonus, resurrecting the panther who had died. Without the soul buff, the Panther King becomes a sitting duck. Inuyasha seizes the opening and unleashes a wind scar to finish the job. In the end, the Panther sisters realize this prehistoric war isn't worth it and decide to retire. The day ends with Sesshomaru walking off with Rin, maintaining his posture of someone who only helped because he felt like it, not because he actually cares. Moving from war to a romantic comedy, the group crosses paths with a local lord who looks like he stepped straight out of a Disney movie. The guy doesn't just hire Sango to kill a demon bear, he proposes to her, revealing he's had a crush on her for 6 years. It's the perfect scenario to make Miroku, our resident womanizing monk, feel completely awkward. However, instead of fighting for the girl, Miroku tries to play the tragic hero from a Mexican soap opera, claiming Sango deserves to be happy far away from battles and Naraku's curse. This infuriates our demon slayer. She wanted him to be jealous, not to push her towards someone else. The result? Sango takes all her rage out on the poor demon bear, pummeling it with a violence that would make the Hulk proud. Miroku ends up saving her at the last second, taking a wound in the process, which serves to break the ice. The Lord, realizing he's the odd man out in this messy love story, accepts defeat with class. The episode closes with the classic umbrella moment, where the two share a space in the rain. The vibe is sweet until Miroku decides to ruin it by g***ing Sango, earning himself the usual resounding slap. Some habits never change. Jaken decides he needs to prove his worth and hatches a plan worthy of Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the Roadrunner. Steal the Tenseiga from Inuyasha to protect Sesshomaru. What follows is a sequence of hilarious blunders where he tries everything from smoke demons to disguising himself as a sword sharpener. Inuyasha's group doesn't suspect a thing, thinking it's just a normal day of luck and bad omens, including a rock-paper-scissors match where Miroku loses every single round. The most ridiculous moment is when Jaken creates a fake hot spring to distract the gang. The plan almost works, and he even gets his hands on the sword, but Rin's loyalty ruins it all. The girl goes back to find Jaken, thinking he's in danger, and in the confusion, the Tenseiga returns to its rightful owner. No one understands what happened. They don't even realize the green imp was behind it, assuming he's just some random crazy guy. While Jaken laments yet another humiliating failure in a watermelon patch, looking like Plankton failing to steal the Krabby Patty formula, the tone shifts drastically from slapstick comedy to suspense. Kagura appears out of nowhere, grabs Rin and flies away. What was a joke becomes a serious kidnapping, and now Jaken has a much bigger problem than stealing a sword, explaining to Sesshomaru that they lost the girl. Naraku decides it's time to lure Sesshomaru to his castle, using Rin as bait. The highborn yokai bites the bait hard, but completely ignores Naraku's mind games, tearing through the villain's puppets and entering the barrier like he has VIP backstage passes. Meanwhile, Rin wakes up trapped in a room with Kohaku, and the vibe is more awkward than a silent, crowded elevator. The boy acts like a bugged NPC, ignoring everything she says. Sesshomaru finally finds Naraku, who looks like a rejected science fair project made of spare monster parts, Frankenstein style. The fight begins, and Sesshomaru hacks the villain to pieces, but Naraku regenerates faster than Wolverine. It becomes clear it's a trap. He wants to absorb Sesshomaru to upgrade his own system. Outside, Inuyasha arrives with the subtlety of the Kool-Aid Man. He uses the red Tenseiga to shatter Naraku's impenetrable barrier like cheap glass. This sends the villain into a panic, as he didn't account for that much brute force. To buy time, he sends Kagura to intercept Inuyasha. However, Kagura adopts a quiet quitting strategy. She fights with zero effort, secretly rooting for Inuyasha to break into the castle and take down her boss so she can finally have her freedom. The situation at the castle turns into total chaos. Naraku tries to swallow Sesshomaru with his massive demonic flesh, looking like a deleted scene from The Thing. Inuyasha flies in and fires off a wind scar, thinking he's too late, but Sesshomaru, with his usual arrogance, rips the cocoon open from the inside, revealing he used the villain's own trap as a shield. Now we have Inuyasha and Sesshomaru versus Naraku. It would be an Avenger-style dream team if the two brothers didn't stop every 5 seconds to argue. Even while bickering, they beat down Naraku until the villain realizes he stands no chance in a 2-on-1 and pulls a Houdini, vanishing into a cloud of miasma. Before disappearing, he plays his final card. Rin is alone with Kohaku and in grave danger. In the forest, Naraku activates Kohaku's Winter Soldier mode, ordering him to execute Rin. The boy hesitates, but attacks. Sesshomaru arrives at the last second. The tension is high. Inuyasha thinks his brother is going to kill Kohaku without mercy. Sesshomaru grabs the boy by the neck, stares into that empty Windows blue screen of death gaze, and realizes the boy wants to die. Defying all expectations, Sesshomaru lets the kid go and leaves with Rin, proving that even a heart of ice can melt. After so much tension and near-death experiences, the series pulls a hard U-turn and becomes a teen sitcom. Naraku has vanished, so Kagome realizes she has a bigger enemy to face, a math test in the modern world. She heads home in a panic, and Inuyasha, impatient as ever, follows her. The episode turns into a low-budget superhero movie. Inuyasha, trying to bring Kagome her lunch, ends up playing Spider-Man across Tokyo. He knocks out muggers, saves kids from fires, and makes the local news, all while complaining about modern clothes. At home, Kagome's study routine goes down the drain. Inuyasha is the embodiment of distraction, poking at everything. The comedic highlight is when Kagome's mom serves spicy curry. The half-demon, thinking he's a tough guy, tackles the dish like he's on an episode of Hot Ones, but ends up with his mouth on fire, much to Kagome's delight. At the end of the night, after a lot of mess and awkward baths with her little brother, Inuyasha passes out on the bedroom floor. Kagome, instead of studying, watches him sleep, realizing that despite being an ogre, he tries really hard to protect her. It's the ultimate lo-fi girl moment before they head back to the feudal era. A wolf girl named Ayame bursts onto the scene from a whirlwind with a massive attitude, ready to call out Koga. Her mission is simple: take him back north to unify the tribes, and while they're at it, marry her. Basically, she wants to turn Koga's life into an episode of The Bachelor, but without the no option. Koga, who is the lifelong president of the Kagome fan club, bails immediately, lying that he's already engaged to our time traveler. He bolts faster than Sonic, leaving the redhead in the dust. While Inuyasha and the gang are playing CSI looking for Naraku, we discover Ayame's obsession comes from a classic flashback. Koga saved her from some killer birds in the past, and to calm the child down, promised to marry her when she grew up.
And when it gets to be too hard, don't you worry. One day I'll make you my wife, Ayame.
It was the kind of empty promise you make to get a kid to stop crying, but Ayame took it way too seriously. Koga reaches the ruins of Naraku's castle looking for clues, but instead of answers, he finds a bizarre monster that looks like Cousin It from the Addams Family after a cycle of steroids. It's literally a giant clump of hair with sharp teeth. Ayame shows up to protect Koga's lackeys, Ginta and Hakaku, who remain as useless as ever. When Koga finally runs into Inuyasha's group, the usual pleasantries follow, petty insults and an alpha male dispute over Kagome's attention. But the hair monster arrives to kill the mood. Inuyasha, having no patience for this demonic barber, grabs the beast and tosses it like a ragdoll. Koga uses the confusion to save Kagome, pulling her aside. Ayame sees the scene and loses it, attacking out of pure jealousy. Koga swears he doesn't remember the promise, but Kagome takes the wolf girl's side and gives him a piece of her mind for playing with the girl's feelings. The love triangle just became a very messy square. Ayame tries to make her case, explaining that the north is in chaos and the elders demand Koga return to unify the tribes, sort of like the Jon Snow of the canine world. But Koga doesn't care about politics or arranged marriages. He's 100% focused on revenge against Naraku. He rejects Ayame, telling her she has free will, but his motivational speech is cut short by the return of the hair monster, which still looks like a hungry, poorly made wig project. The creature attacks, trapping everyone with its hair tentacles. Inuyasha arrives, supposedly to save the day, but ends up stuck in the same hair clump as his rival. Incredibly, instead of worrying about being eaten, Inuyasha and Koga start arguing about who's the better protector for Kagome. Talk about priorities. Meanwhile, Ayame, who isn't stupid, notices the chemistry between Kagome and Inuyasha and realizes the fight for the wolf's heart might be easier than she thought. The monster reveals it was discarded by Naraku and wants the Shikon jewel shards to become whole. It swallows Koga and Ayame whole in a scene reminiscent of the ending of the first Men in Black, but the digestion is interrupted. Koga uses his leg strength to blow the beast apart from the inside, making it rain monster chunks everywhere. As they say their goodbyes, Koga tries to flirt with Kagome again but gets shut down. She demands he honor his promise to Ayame. Pressed, he finally admits he remembers the childhood proposal, but pretends it's only vague. Ayame agrees to wait and leaves, swearing she won't give up on him. Once alone, Koga reveals the real reason for the cold shoulder. He thinks he's going to die fighting Naraku and doesn't want to leave a widow behind. The day ends with Inuyasha having another jealousy fit, proving he's more insecure than a teenager at prom. The gang is on the road and stumbles upon a bizarre scene, an old lady throwing hands with a weasel demon. Inuyasha, playing the hero, slices the beast in half, but gratitude is nowhere to be found. The old woman is more confused than Dory in Finding Nemo and starts attacking her own savior with magic powder, thinking he's the monster. Miroku has to hold Inuyasha back so he doesn't retaliate against the senior citizen. Once the dust settles, the lady explains she's a retired exorcist, basically a third-age ghostbuster, and invites the group to a job in a nearby town infested with demons and, of course, plenty of cash. Inuyasha wants to focus on Naraku, but Miroku, channeling his inner Wolf of Wall Street, only sees dollar signs and convinces everyone to go. Upon arrival, the vibe is heavy, total Silent Hill energy. The sensitive members of the group, including Kagome, feel sick from the bad energy, but the old lady feels nothing. To make matters worse, the town's lord lives in isolation and people are dying mysteriously. Then enters the lord's daughter, a beautiful princess. Miroku immediately smooths his hair, ready to make a move, but the flirting is interrupted by a giant floating head attacking the castle. Inuyasha tries a physical attack but fails because the head is a pure illusion. Miroku solves it with a supercharged sutra, evaporating the beast, but peace is short-lived, while the old lady uses Inuyasha as a punching bag for her training. The princess calls the monk for a private consultation. He goes in all smug, thinking he's hit the jackpot but falls into a classic trap. She leads him to a basement filled with the bones of former exorcists and reveals the plot twist. Her father is just a puppet. The real demon, Jennifer's body style, is her. Miroku stands paralyzed, realizing too late that this date was actually a death sentence, while the rest of the group is busy fighting the possessed father upstairs. The Monster of the Week struggle continues, and the situation is more convoluted than an M. Night Shyamalan finale. The local lord is possessed and fighting Inuyasha, but we soon realize he's just a decoy. The real threat is a demon head that has taken the form of a deceased princess, choosing Miroku as its 100th victim to complete its resurrection. Basically, she wants to have an all-you-can-eat buffet on the monk's spiritual energy. Sango, in true Ghostbusters fashion, tries to use purifying salt, but things get ugly. The villainess reveals she spent years hiding in a hole because she was terrified of Naraku. Now that the big boss has vanished, she figured it was safe to come out and cause some terror. It's a classic power vacuum. The tyrant leaves, and the opportunistic minions move in. Inuyasha has no patience for this evil bureaucracy. He fires a wind scar, but the creature is resilient. The solution comes from Miroku, who decides to stop messing around and uses his wind tunnel to suck the demoness in once and for all. In the end, the old exorcist team thinks they'll be flooded with work now, but Inuyasha, with the self-confidence of a high school quarterback, guarantees these low-level demons are no threat and that the focus remains on hunting Naraku. While the main crew shelters from the rain in a setting straight out of The Walking Dead, the focus shifts to Kikyo, who finds an old bandit named Rasetsu on his deathbed. Here we get a heavy flashback that explains the origin of all the series' misery. We learn it was this man who turned Onigumo into a human BBQ decades ago, which eventually led to the birth of Naraku. It's basically the prequel no one asked for, but that connects all the dots. They are attacked by another demon discarded by Naraku, but Kikyo handles it with a single arrow, proving her aim is still better than Legolas. Before dying, Rasetsu asks her to take a lock of his hair to Mount Hakure, a sacred place where even villains find peace. Jot that name down, it's going to be important. Back in the present and the rain, we have a team rom-com moment. Kagome catches a cold, and Inuyasha, in a rare moment of chivalry, lends her his kimono. They have a sweet dialogue where he says no one would speak ill of her, and the two huddle together, blushing, pretending to sleep. The rest of the group watches from the sidelines, shipping them hard, because it's obvious the spark is real. We drop the romantic drama and fall straight into a slapstick comedy like something out of Looney Tunes. 3 magical monkey sprites, looking for their missing master, glue Inuyasha's hand to a giant boulder. And it's not just a rock, it's a massive stone he has to drag around like a punishment from Greek mythology. Inuyasha's biggest fear isn't the weight, it's the shame. He gets paranoid imagining Sesshomaru or Koga showing up and seeing him in this ridiculous situation. It would be the end of his bad boy reputation. The gang even tries to imagine how he'd fight using the stone, like a Wish.com version of Thor's hammer. But it's just pure humiliation. The search for the sacred object to free the monkey god leads to a hilarious revelation. The villagers were using the divine relic as a weight to make pickles. Yes, pickles. Miroku purifies the stone, the monkey god is freed, and Inuyasha finally loses the dead weight. The god gives a vague hint about the direction of a malignant aura he felt, but the episode ends with the monkey sprites throwing acorns and mooning Inuyasha, literally.
You little monkeys!
Ha! Scared ya! Mooned ya, Shippo! Yeah!
After a night's rest, the team is ready for combat, but Kagome is down for the count. Inuyasha, with the emotional intelligence of a brick, wants to keep moving anyway and throws a tantrum because he has to wait. He stomps off, leaving the rest of the group to handle it. Miroku sees the perfect opportunity. He offers Kagome a piggyback ride, but he's already prepping his quagmire hands. Sango catches the malice instantly, and the perverted monk's plan goes south, so they decide to send Kagome home to recover. Back in the modern world, her friends visit the sick girl, but Hojo steals the show. This kid is the king of the friend zone and president of the fan club, bringing bags of gifts and charms as if he could buy her love. Meanwhile, in the feudal era, Inuyasha is taking his frustration out on random demons and fishing to pass the time, but boredom and guilt hit hard. He can't stand the distance and decides to check on Kagome. Sota welcomes his canine brother-in-law, and Inuyasha brings a special medicine from the past that looks horrific and would never pass FDA approval. Despite the suspicious juice, his intentions are good. The half-demon lets his guard down, takes tender care of her, and even flips through a photo album while she sleeps. A rare boyfriend material moment. The problem is the next day, Kagome wakes up in a panic, super late for an exam. With no time for buses or taxis, Inuyasha becomes the fastest Uber in Tokyo. He puts the girl on his back and goes parkouring across buildings, Spider-Man style, to ensure she gets to school on time. Back in the modern world, the vibe is very slice of life. Inuyasha and Kagome leave the supermarket looking like a couple leaving a Walmart on a Sunday, until Kagome's little brother, Sota, appears acting super suspicious. The kid is stalking a classmate named Hitomi, hiding behind flower pots like a cartoon spy. Sota is in that awkward phase of puberty where talking to girls is scarier than facing Naraku. Desperate, he asks Inuyasha for dating advice. Yes, Inuyasha, the guy with the emotional depth of a rock who solves everything by yelling. The half-demon tries to teach the kid to be an alpha male, suggesting he use lethal moves to impress the girl. Imagine Sota pulling an Iron Reaver Soul Stealer at recess to win over his crush. The situation gets even more ridiculous when they rehearse the confession, and Kagome catches her brother proposing to Inuyasha.
Love you. I love you! Am I interrupting?
After many failed attempts and bizarre outfits, including dressing Sota up like Detective Conan, Inuyasha loses his patience, gives an ultimatum, and kicks the boy out of the house. The tough love method actually works. Sota confesses, the girl accepts, and Inuyasha turns beet red watching the scene, proving that deep down, he's a sucker for a cheesy teen romance. We return to the feudal era and discover that Kilala isn't a limited edition. There's another cat named Kuroro who looks exactly like her. Cue the Spider-Man pointing meme. The problem is that Kuroro was kicked out of her village by a supposed spiritualist named Tesso, who convinced the villagers, who have their usual negative IQ, that two-tailed cats bring bad luck. When the locals see Kilala, they immediately get aggressive, thinking she's Kuroro. The spiritualist, Tesso, is actually a rat demon who rigged the whole thing so his rodent buddies could pillage the place. It's basically an episode of Tom and Jerry, but with magic powers and dumb humans. Inuyasha tries to pummel the rat, but the creature has infinite regeneration hacks and even tanks a windscar. While Shippo tries to play the hero to impress a local girl and ends up trapped in a cave, Miroku notices the boss's trick. The Tesso they're fighting is just an illusion, while the real one is camping behind a rock, controlling everything via demonic Wi-Fi. Inuyasha finds the hiding spot, lands a windscar on the right target, and wipes out the rat infestation. At the end, Shippo tries to act like a ladies' man and gets the classic sit command from Kagome to bring him back to Earth. Kikyo is doing her favorite hobby, walking alone at night looking depressed. She meets a girl named Enju, who is basically a zombie made of clay and bones, just like her. Apparently, the witch Urasue was playing necromancer before she died and created an entire army of terracotta soldiers. Meanwhile, castles are being razed by this army of clay dolls led by Kawaramaru, a zombie general who thinks he's the Napoleon of the underworld. He's Enju's brother and wants to conquer the world because apparently, being dead is boring and he needs a hobby. Inuyasha's group finds the runaway Enju, and of course, Miroku takes the chance to hit on the living dead, using philosophical talk about Buddha to try and score a date. The guy doesn't even spare those who've already kicked the bucket. The stakes rise when Kawaramaru appears with his toxic army full of miasma. The fight is tedious because the soldiers regenerate, so Inuyasha decides he has no patience for strategy. When the villain summons a giant demon from hell, Inuyasha draws Tatsaiga and unleashes a wind scar so powerful it vaporizes the demon, the villain, the army, and the miasma in one shot. Enju is left free to live her afterlife doing pottery in peace, proving that occupational therapy is better than world domination. Things are getting very weird for Miroku. In one village, he's treated like royalty, surrounded by women and money. But cut to the next scene, and the real monk is being kicked out of establishments as if he had the bubonic plague. The charge? He sold sutras that turned into dried leaves. It's a classic bait and switch, or rather, a tanuki for monk switch. We discover there's an imposter in the area, Hachi, that tanuki who can transform into anything. The creature is posing as Miroku to score free meals and make a few bucks, basically committing feudal identity theft. After a mess where the imposter is hired to exorcise a weasel, the original Miroku shows up to save the day and his reputation, which wasn't great to begin with. They settle the score with the weasel demon, but the real bombshell comes at the end. Hachi reveals that while he was undercover, women were throwing themselves at him. The secret? Indifference. He says that pretending not to care drives them wild. Miroku, instead of giving him a moral lecture, pulls out a notebook to take tips from the raccoon dog, completely forgetting that Sango is right behind him with that Kill Bill murderous aura. The monk has to bolt, proving that the fear of a woman's wrath is universal. The peace of the countryside ends abruptly when Kagome's jewel GPS starts beeping. The group rushes to investigate and saves a scholar named Izumo, who is being hunted by a random monster. Inuyasha slices the enemy without breaking a sweat, and, plot twist, a fully intact Shikon jewel drops from the beast. The half-demon thinks he just beat the game, but as soon as he touches the stone, it turns to dust. It's basically a jewel bought off Wish or AliExpress. Looks legit in the picture, but it's a total scam in person.
What's happening?
Oh, Inuyasha shattered the jewel in his hand.
You fool. The sacred jewel doesn't shatter.
Izumo, who apparently knows a thing or two about these fakes, leads the gang to a village that's more deserted than a ghost town in a Western movie. They only find a traumatized little kid, straight out of an NPC quest, who explains that a water demon named Orochidayu kidnapped everyone. And speak of the devil, the villain shows up with an army of minions, promising fake jewels as payment for their dirty work. Combat breaks out, and Miroku tries to end it quickly using his wind tunnel, but he feels an agonizing pain right after sucking in 2 enemies, as if he'd just eaten some sketchy gas station sushi. While the rest of the group mops the floor with the lesser demons, Orochidayu flashes another complete jewel to lure them into a forest trap. They enter a bizarre cave where the boy's parents and the rest of the villagers are preserved inside giant toad eggs, in a gross-out scene that puts the Alien franchise to shame. But there's no time to process the horror. A colossal bull demon appears, pulling a raging Hulk, and destroys the cliff they're standing on. The ground gives way, and the whole team falls down the slope in peak Wile E. Coyote fashion. Kagome has been kidnapped again. At this point, she probably has a hostage loyalty card, Princess Peach style. The culprit this time is Izumo, the scholar who has a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde secret. Human by day, buff Minotaur by night. Just like Inuyasha, he wants to stop being a half-demon, but his plan is pretty macabre. He wants to create an artificial Shikon jewel by slow cooking the souls of our heroes. According to him, Inuyasha represents courage, Miroku represents wisdom, Sango represents love, and Shippo, well, Shippo is friendship, which is basically the consolation prize. Izumo releases his lackeys, a toad and a monkey, to capture everyone, but Inuyasha arrives handing out wind scars like flyers on a street corner. In a fit of greed-fueled desperation, Izumo swallows some toxic fake jewels to power up and try to finish Inuyasha.
He swallowed them.
but as the sun rises, he reverts to his human form and his body can't handle the poison. He dies tragically in Kagome's arms, regretting his choices and proving that taking shortcuts with magical steroids never ends well, not even in the feudal era. Seishomaru's group is in their usual pleasant mood, deadly silence. Rin goes off to forage for food and gets ambushed by Naraku's insects disguised as monsters. Lord Seishomaru flies in to save his ward in seconds, and Jakin, in a rare moment of usefulness, burns the rest of the bugs. The problem is, the green goblin ends up stung and poisoned. To save the grumpy imp's life, Rin needs a fruit that only grows at the top of a cliff. She asks Jinenji for directions. Remember him? The friendly Shrek who lives with his mom, and sets off on a solo mission. Midway through, Inuyasha bumps into Seishomaru, and of course, they start fighting out of pure sport and misunderstanding, until Kagome points Seishomaru toward Naraku, so he'll just leave. On the mountain, Rin almost falls to her death, but Seishomaru catches her midair and puts her back on the trail in peak, tough dad who pretends he doesn't care style. She gets the medicine, cheers Jakin, and the little toad wakes up with no idea he owes the girl his life, complaining as usual. Ingratitude reigns, but at least the squad is back together. Kilala goes MIA, and the campsite vibes turn into an episode of CSI Feudal Forest. While Sango spirals, Inuyasha shows the emotional sensitivity of a potato, suggesting the cat is just in heat. Shippo, however, takes on the role of detective and psychological torturer, forcing everyone to admit their guilt, and the list of crimes against animals is long. Inuyasha used the poor thing as target practice for his wind scar, giving the cat premature balding. Miroku, typical Miroku, used her cuteness as bait to flirt with village girls.
Travel companion, wouldn't you say?
She's so cute.
Cute, but she's no comparison to you ladies.
You flatter us, Monk.
And Kagome promised treats but left the kitty stranded at the well while she enjoyed the modern-era air conditioning. Sango drowns in guilt, thinking she treats her partner like nothing more than an overnight air taxi. Things get worse when a low-budget King Kong monkey demon shows up holding Kilala's scarf and bragging about eating some bones. Grief turns Sango into a killing machine and she takes down the giant primate through the sheer power of hate. Plot twist, Kilala is alive and well, appearing out of nowhere. She was just running a delivery service for Miyoga, carrying a sharpening stone for Inuyasha. The best part, Shippo knew the whole time and forgot to mention it because he was sleepy. The episode ends with Inuyasha hunting the fox in a Tom and Jerry style chase, while Kagome just watches, deciding the kid actually deserves the punishment this time. The episode opens with Kikyo falling for a supernatural fishing scam. A demon disguised as a child lures her into a living cave. Meanwhile, at the camp, we get some classic sitcom drama. Kagome prepares a special lunch, Inuyasha complains it's too sweet, and she hits him with Syth 6 times in a row before storming off to clear her head. During her rage walk, Kagome finds the cave and enters, finding Kikyo on her last legs. The place is basically a gourmet demon stomach that only eats priestesses. Thus begins the most awkward co-op mission ever, the current girlfriend saving the ex. While Inuyasha pretends he's not worried outside, the two women have to join forces inside. Kikyo, with her spiritual battery at 1%, tells her rival to run, but Kagome refuses. With a combined arrow and some jewel fragments, they blow the monster up from the inside out. On the way out, the moment of truth arrives. Kikyo asks why she was saved. Kagome admits it's because a certain someone would be devastated if the ex died. Kikyo smiles and drops a hint that she knows Kagome loves him too. Back with Inuyasha, who was playing it cool in the woods, Kagome marches up and hooks her arm into his, leaving the half-demon speechless and redder than his own robe. Koga's henchmen, Ginta and Hakaku, run into Seishomaru's crew by the river and realize Inuyasha's older brother radiates final boss energy. They rush to warn their leader, but Koga is too busy being annoying in that love triangle, eating potato chips Kagome brought and triggering Inuyasha on purpose. The two lackeys go into DEFCON 1 panic mode, trying at all costs to prevent Koga from crossing paths with Seishomaru, fearing a Godzilla vs. Kong scenario where they'll just be collateral damage. But Destiny loves awkward encounters, and the meeting happens anyway. The air gets heavier than a crowded elevator, with Seishomaru telling everyone to get out of his way with his usual grace. Before a brawl can start, random monsters attack. Seishomaru evaporates one that tried to steal jewels, and Koga, in a surprising act of heroism, saves little Rin from a giant centipede.
No humans for you, worm!
Everyone expects World War III, but the two alphas lock eyes, realize fighting now would be a waste of time, and go their separate ways. In the end, Koga proves he's a chill boss and shares the chips with his boys, swearing he'll get Naraku one day, while his hypemen continue to suffer from tachycardia. The group is trekking through a forest that looks like a horror movie set, dead and gloomy, when they're suddenly attacked by a swarm of moths. Inuyasha starts swatting them away, but the ringleader soon appears. Garamaru, a moth demon who brings back bad memories of another villain Inuyasha once deleted from existence while in berserk mode. Without wasting time on monologues, Garamaru fires blue energy spheres into everyone's chests and traps them, except Inuyasha, in giant cocoons. It's basically the human battery scene from The Matrix, but in the woods. Inuyasha tries to cut them open, but the material is unbreakable. He decides to go for the source instead. Garamaru turns into a colossal moth, but he lasts shorter than ice cream in the summer. Inuyasha takes him out in seconds, thinking that'll solve everything. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Killing the boss didn't open the cells. Back at the cocoons, Inuyasha can't tear them, while inside, the vibe turns into a Nightmare on Elm Street scenario. Everyone relives their worst fears. Sango sees her brother killing her friends, Miroku dreams he sucked his whole team into his wind tunnel, and Shippo relives the trauma of losing his father. Kagome has a bizarre vision of Naraku invading her modern-day school, like a team slasher flick. While Inuyasha freaks out on the outside trying to save the team, inside the collective hallucination, everyone starts dreaming that he's coming to the rescue. This mental connection acts like the kick from Inception, giving them the strength to tear the cocoons from the inside and wake up from this forced slumber. Miroku decides to play lone detective when he hears rumors about a snow woman terrorizing a village. The monk bumps into the creature in the middle of a blizzard, and naturally follows the lady to her house. Inside, it's the classic illusion. She pretends to care for several children who are actually snowmen, frozen if it were a psychological horror. The rest of the gang tries to catch up, but a regenerative snow demon blocks their path. Things look grim for Miroku, who was under a spell, until Inuyasha decides to make a grand entrance. He gets tossed and crashes through the roof of the hideout just like the Kool-Aid Man, breaking the spell via property damage. With his head clear, Miroku goes on the offensive, only to find out the woman was just a snow body possessed by a soul. The spirit ends up merging with the main demon to become a final boss. The team has to combo their skills: medicinal herbs, Kagome's sacred arrow to light the fire, and finally, Inuyasha's wind scar.
My chance. Wait, wait. Ah!
The monster melts, and the girl's soul finally rests, revealing she only wanted to protect war orphans before being corrupted. A sad ending, but at least nobody turned into a popsicle. The mood gets heavy when Kohaku appears collecting jewel shards near a destroyed shrine. Meanwhile, Ayame, the wolf girl we met before, is on a mission straight out of Temple Run. She notices all the forest demons are fleeing in a panic from something much worse. The wolves discover an ogre is devouring everything in sight, like a buff, hungry Pac-Man. Ayame tries to hold the line and protect the tribal elder while waiting for Koga, but the situation is critical. They get surrounded, and we get a heroic sacrifice from a background wolf to buy time. Koga flies in to save the day, but it's too late for his friend. He realizes the new enemy smells like a graveyard, and decides to hunt this phantom down personally. The stakes escalate when the ogre, named Kyokatsu, appears. The guy is massive, looking like he stepped right out of Attack on Titan, and he wants to eat Koga to steal his jewel shards. It's a David versus Goliath fight. Kyokatsu is huge and uses a wrecking ball, but Koga is way faster. The wolf humbles the giant, spinning his head around exorcist style and ripping the shard from his forehead. But before Koga can grab the loot, Naraku's insects steal the shard and bail. To close on a cliffhanger, we're introduced to Jikatsu, a new villain who's less worried about the war and more interested in whether Inuyasha is hot. Priorities, right? The group is on the road and hears peasant gossip about desecrated tombs and the dead coming back to life. Basically, The Walking Dead zombie apocalypse has hit the feudal era. Kilala catches Kohaku's scent and carries Sango to a family reunion that is, as usual, a disaster. The kid is totally brainwashed, tries to kill his sister, and Sango is stuck in a "I won't fight you" loop. The family drama is interrupted by a cloud of toxic gas, courtesy of Mukatsu, a new hooded villain who loves chemical warfare. Elsewhere, a squad of samurai runs into an eccentric figure blocking the path, Jikatsu. Surprise! The soldiers have firearms. They pump him full of lead, thinking this is the Matrix, but the guy doesn't even flinch. He's already dead after all. Curiously, he examines his wound and then draws a bizarre sword that bends and stretches, slicing through the entire army in seconds. Inuyasha arrives, guided by the scent of blood, and finds Jikatsu staring curiously down the barrel of one of the guns. When he sees the protagonist, the villain isn't scared. He's thrilled, thinking Inuyasha and Miroku are total hotties. But the flirting ends when Kagome warns that he has a jewel shard embedded in his neck. The fight begins, and Jikatsu's sword is a nightmare. It moves like a snake and attacks from impossible angles. He's winning the 1v1 until Sango arrives as backup. Jikatsu, making it clear he hates being interrupted by women, slashes her arm in a fit of rage. Inuyasha takes advantage of the opening and lands a right hook that sends the zombie flying. The group makes a classic horror movie mistake, splitting up. While Inuyasha chases Jikatsu, who is having the time of his life and treating the fight like a bad date, the rest of the team is left vulnerable. That's when Mukatsu shows up. Mukatsu attacks Kagome, Sango, and Miroku with a paralyzing gas. The villain has a major creeper vibe, deciding he's going to force Kagome to marry him right then and there. A twisted, toxic version of Beauty and the Beast. He knocks everyone out. It all seems lost when Kagome, despite trying to fight back, is strangled by the villain, who felt offended that she didn't want to be his bride. The guy is the definition of insult rage. But the tables turn when the series MVP arrives, Sashoma Ru. He appears out of nowhere, completely ignores the poison gas like it's a light breeze, and stares down Mukatsu. The villain tries to attack, but Sashoma Ru has no patience for small talk and dispatches the enemy in a single strike. When Inuyasha finally arrives, the party is over. Sashoma Ru gives him that look of superiority, says he only killed the guy because he wouldn't say where Naraku was, and leaves, making it clear who the stronger brother is. Inuyasha is pissed for being late, but at least Kagome had the antidote in her backpack. Inuyasha's crew is in bad shape. After Mukatsu's chemical attack, the half-demon has to play ambulance and carry Sango, Miroku, and Kagome to safety, but their escape is cut short when giant saws start flying out of the forest, giving off major Saw vibes. Inuyasha hides the gang in a cave and goes for a counterattack, but falls for a distraction. Enter Jinkatsu, a human tank that looks like a transformer gone wrong. Kilava tries to hold him off, but the villain starts shelling the refuge with heavy artillery, forcing Shippo to evacuate the wounded. Meanwhile, we catch a glimpse of Renkatsu, another member of this evil boy band called the Band of Seven, burying some priests he just finished off. Back in the action, Ginkatsu uses steel cables and saws to block Inuyasha's strikes. However, Inuyasha is smarter. He takes the high ground, drops a wind scar from above, and makes the ground collapse. The scene cuts to a temple where Shippo sought shelter. Kagome wakes up groggy and sees a monk tending to them, but notices a familiar glow in the guy's throat, a jewel shard. Too weak to yell, "It's a trap," she can only watch as the monk, who is actually Renkatsu in disguise, lights some sleeping incense and drugs everyone all over again. Inuyasha arrives at the temple believing his friends are safe, but finds Renkatsu putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. The villain, disguised as a monk, tries to bait out info about Naraku while playing the innocent saint, but the peace is short-lived. Miyoga, the flea who always flees when things get real, warns that danger is back. Ginkatsu rises from the earth like a B-movie zombie, proving he's harder to kill than the Terminator. The battle turns into an unfair 2v1 when Renkatsu gets tired of the theater and joins the fray, revealing he locked Sango, Miroku, and Kagome in the temple and set the whole place on fire. It's the classic villain plan: distract the hero while the hostages turn into barbecue. Meanwhile, in a random corner of the map, Koga is trading blows with Jikatsu, but sensing Kagome is in danger, he bails on the fight and leaves the mercenary hanging to go save his girl. Back at the main chaos, Inuyasha is cornered by chains and fire. Ginkatsu pulls a giant drill out of his stomach, but Inuyasha improvises like MacGyver. He intentionally drops the Tetsaiga, so the tension of the chains flings the sword back to jam the enemy's gears. With the cyborg immobilized, Inuyasha slices through the scrap metal without mercy, but the victory is bitter. While Naraku's wasps collect the wreckage and Renkatsu escapes with the shards he stole, Inuyasha enters the burning temple. Shippo, who tried to protect the group with a tiny shield, is in tears and drops the bombshell. The poison and smoke were too much, and everyone has stopped breathing. The mood has officially hit rock bottom, and the team is on the ground looking like slasher movie extras after the toxic attack. Inuyasha goes into full panic mode, blaming himself and giving Shippo that men don't cry talk while trying to hold it together, as Kohaku watches and cries without knowing why. Soshomaru briefly appears just to rub salt in the wound and mock his brother, or maybe it was just a guilt-induced hallucination, who knows. But plot twist, Kagome wakes up and murmurs that she can't breathe. It turns out Miyoga, the cowardly flea and round MVP, sucked the poison out of everyone before it became fatal. The process involves him making a bizarre cocktail in his own stomach and then spitting the antidote back for them to drink. Basically, they took a shot of flea vomit to survive. It's fear factor levels of gross, but it worked. The relief is so great that Inuyasha breaks his own rule and cries, but quickly reverts to tough guy mode and punches Shippo for noticing the tears. Koga arrives ready for a fight, thinking Kagome was dead. He starts laying into Inuyasha, calling him irresponsible, and everyone expects a brawl. But Inuyasha surprises everyone and agrees with the wolf, admitting it was his fault. The vibe gets so weird that Koga doesn't even know how to react and just leaves. Meanwhile, far away, Kikyo meets a doctor named Suikatsu. The guy is a saint who cares for orphans and is terrified of blood, yet he carries a jewel shard. Something is very wrong with this good Dr. House. Inuyasha has blood in his eyes, looking like John Wick vowing revenge against every member of the Band of Seven. But when the group arrives where Kikyo is and finds this Suikatsu guy, confusion reigns. Inuyasha's nose immediately picks up the corpse scent typical of the villains, but the doctor acts like Mother Teresa, even being protected by the village children who form a human shield around him. Nobody believes this pacifist could be dangerous. The peace is short-lived because the rest of the evil gang attacks the village. The doctor tries to help, but freezes as soon as he sees a wound, paralyzed by fear. Jakatsu, who loves chaos and has no patience for psychological drama, decides to test the theory and cuts the doctor. The effect is instantaneous. The smell of blood works like a Hulk transformation, but for evil. Dr. Jekyll becomes Mr. Hyde on the spot. Suikatsu's posture shifts, the good guy face vanishes, and he reveals his true nature. He officially introduces himself as one of the seven, ready to massacre the same children he was protecting 5 minutes ago. It's a brutal, classic case of split personality, and now Inuyasha has to deal with a doctor-turned-monster. Chaos is in full swing, and the evil Suikatsu starts fighting using new Wolverine-style claws his comrade tossed to him. But the screaming children make his good side try to regain control, leading to an intense internal mental struggle.
Back to the way you once were?
It turns out the nearby sacred mountain, Mount Hakure, creates a purity force field that weakens evil. Realizing the doctor is glitching out because of the sacred aura, the Suicide Squad decides to retreat before their powers are nullified. The problem is that the sacred barrier is also kryptonite for Kikyo, who is technically a walking corpse sustained by souls. She starts to fade, and Kagome, swallowing her jealousy with the maturity of a monk, tells Inuyasha to carry his ex-girlfriend away from there. It's one of those love triangle moments that leaves everyone tense and sad. Kikyo stays behind because she can't enter the sacred zone, and the group decides to climb the mountain. The next day, Inuyasha proves he has the emotional sensitivity of a brick and asks why Kagome is being cold to him. Miroku tries to explain the concept of emotional betrayal, but Inuyasha insists on poking the bear. The result? Kagome's patience explodes and she unleashes a rapid-fire barrage of Syth commands, making Inuyasha kiss the dirt repeatedly until he learns, or at least stops talking nonsense. We have the triumphant return of the mercenary leader, Bankatsu. The guy looks like a generic shonen protagonist and can't read, but he compensates with insane strength and leadership that makes the rest of the group look like puppies. He finds out 2 of his buddies are gone and decides the best way to grieve is to invade a castle and recover his giant sword, Banryu, which is basically Cloudstripe's Buster Sword, but made for slaughtering armies. Meanwhile, Inuyasha's crew is trying to figure out the purifying barrier of Mount Hakure. The place is so holy that Shippo and Kilala almost faint just getting close, and Miroku tries to bail because, let's be honest, purity isn't exactly his thing. They discover the general who killed the mercenaries years ago is in charge of a nearby castle, which means trouble is brewing. And boy does it brew. Bankatsu invades the castle solo, turns the guards into ceiling decor, and recovers his sword, killing the local lord to complete a 1,000 kill tally.
Bounds. Or something like that. 1,000.
The rest of the gang joins the party, and the castle becomes a slasher movie set. Koga, the impatient wolf, arrives looking for a fight, but realizes too late he's outnumbered. Just as Bankatsu is about to finish off the wolf with an aerial strike, Inuyasha appears with the Tetsaiga to block the blow, saving his rival at the last second. The atmosphere turns into a massive Super Smash Bros. Free-for-all. Inuyasha and Koga are forced to team up against the entire band of 7 squad. As blades clash and sparks fly, Renkatsu realizes Kagome is the team's radar and tries to take her out. Koga proves he's the king of hit and run, saving Kagome from the explosions while the rest of the group picks their targets. Far from the chaos, Sesshomaru attempts to scale the sacred mountain, but the purity barrier acts like kryptonite to him. Rin, ignoring danger as usual, follows Kohaku into a cave, forcing the Lord of the Western Lands to play babysitter on the outside. Back at the main brawl, one of Naraku's flesh puppets appears to crash the party. Inuyasha dispatches the monster with a single strike, but it buys enough time for the mercenaries to retreat. Before leaving, Bankatsu gives his sword a sinister upgrade, embedding jewel shards into it like they were infinity stones, leaving the blade red and pulsing. Now they know. Naraku is hiding in the mountain, the barrier is protecting him, and the villain team is more buffed than a final RPG boss. The team follows the scent of flowers and holy water to Hijiri Island, a place that should be sacred but is giving off a weird vibe. There they meet Shintaro, a boy who lost his father and is tending to the local temple. The catch? The island has a barrier similar to the mountains. Bankatsu shows up for a 1v1 duel against Inuyasha. However, a massive nerf is in effect. The sacred barrier nullifies demonic energy, transforming the powerful Tetsaiga into a giant, rusty, powerless slab of iron. Inuyasha has to rely on pure brute force, while Bankatsu, who is human, or a human zombie, is fighting at 100% capacity. While Inuyasha takes a beating trying to stay alive, Miroku and Shintaro rush to the temple to solve the level puzzle. They discover a sacred object. A Dako is generating the force field. Miroku uses his charms and with the boy's help, shatters the item. The sacred Wi-Fi goes down instantly. With the barrier deactivated, Tetsaiga regains its glow, and Inuyasha finally charges up a wind scar, ready to turn the tide. The slugfest on Hijiri Island remains insane. Bankatsu is at full health, and to make matters worse, the local barrier keeps turning Inuyasha's sword into a rusty kitchen knife. The mercenary leader is playing like he has a cheat code. He blocks the wind scar with one hand and mocks Inuyasha for being a one-button spammer. Bankatsu decides to go all out, summoning a Thor-style lightning storm that fries the entire island. Miroku's barrier can't tank the hit, and the whole group is floored. Inuyasha tries to solo the damage, but he's struggling. Just when it looks like game over, a sacred object flies into the fray, releasing a light that heals everyone. The problem? This light purifies the Tetsaiga, stripping it of its demonic powers. Talk about the worst timing in history. As Bankatsu moves in for the finishing blow, Kagome goes full Katniss Everdeen and nails his arm with an arrow, turning the limb into pure bone. Before Inuyasha can finish him off, a light envelops the villain, and he's teleported away by Kana and Kohaku. With the team safe but the enemy gone, the group splits up. Since the mountain has an anti-demon barrier, Sango and Miroku decide to scout ahead, while Inuyasha is stuck at the base, biting his lip in frustration. While Inuyasha stays at the base having an anxiety attack, denying to Shippo that he's worried about his friends, the action cuts to the lone wolf, Koga. He tries to breach the barrier but runs into Ginkatsu and Renkatsu, who are playing in defensive camping mode. Ginkatsu, who is essentially a feudal-era transformer, bombards Koga with cannons and missiles. Koga actually has to use his brain for once. He plays dead to make the enemies drop their guard. The plan works, and he manages to disable the cyborg's cannons. But Ginkatsu is loyal to the end. He triggers a nuclear-level self-destruct to protect his partner Renkatsu and try to take the wolf down with him. Koga survives, but he's left a broken mess. On the other side, we have Miroku and Sango's climb. The monk is suffering, and it's not just from the mountain's purification. With Sango climbing ahead of him, the guy is fighting his own instincts to keep his hands to himself. He blames it on spiritual pressure, but we all know the deal. In the end, Inuyasha and Kagome find Koga in the rubble. And to top off the random encounters, Chikatsu, the most flamboyant mercenary of the bunch, comes face to face with none other than Sesshomaru. Kikyo crosses paths with Bankatsu, Jakatsu and tries to give him the second chance moral speech, but the mercenary is on a total nihilistic GTA-style vibe. He just wants to cause chaos and drink sake, no regrets. Unable to convince the villain to go straight, they go their separate ways. Meanwhile, Sesshomaru and Jakatsu start trading blows. The mercenary gets all giddy discovering he's fighting Inuyasha's brother, acting like a fan meeting a celebrity, but the fight is cut short when Suikatsu appears across a gorge and attacks Rin and Jaken. The bridge they're on is destroyed in a classic action movie trope, and everyone plunges into the abyss. Sesshomaru dives to save his team but only manages to catch Jaken. Rin is swept away by the current and ends up in Suikatsu's hands. Plot twist: the villain reverts to his good doctor personality and takes the girl to a village, treating her kindly. It's a total Jekyll and Hyde situation. The peace is short-lived. Jakatsu shows up at the village to scout, and his evil presence acts as a trigger. Suikatsu snaps. The killer Hulk awakens, and he begins to massacre the villagers. He's about to kill the orphans he once cared for, but Kikyo's spiritual presence arriving on the scene freezes his system at the last second. Inuyasha carries a knocked-out Koga to a cave, treating his rival with the same care one gives to airport luggage. While the group rests, Jakatsu and Suikatsu decide to kidnap Rin to use her as bait for Sesshomaru. Terrible move. Messing with his ward is like signing a death warrant. Sesshomaru waltzes through the sacred barrier like it's nothing and goes straight for Jakatsu. The mercenary tries to use his snake sword, but Sesshomaru dodges with the elegance of someone who isn't even breaking a sweat. The fight is interrupted by Kikyo, who hits Suikatsu with a purifying arrow.
Lord Sesshomaru!
The good doctor persona regains control and begs to die before he turns into a monster again, but Jakatsu, showing zero empathy, simply kills his own partner to steal the jewel shard, acting like a toxic player ninja looting a teammate. Meanwhile, Sango and Miroku are lost in a dark cave until Kohaku appears, glowing like a neon glow stick at a rave, guiding them to the exit without saying a word. The cyborg Renkatsu is back, thirsty for revenge and setting a trap worthy of a Michael Bay film. In the cave, Koga wakes up and immediately complains about the dog smell, meaning Inuyasha. The classic bickering starts but is cut short when the river literally catches fire. Renkatsu bombards the area mercilessly. In a moment of heroism, Inuyasha throws his fireproof red robe over Kagome to protect her and charges at the villain. Everything explodes and Inuyasha vanishes in the flames. Kagome despairs, thinking her crush is dead. Koga, seeing an opening, tries to comfort the girl and score some points, but gets clocked in the head. It's Inuyasha who survived and returned in full jealous boyfriend mode. The romantic tension is back, but it quickly turns back into a fight because these two never change. Elsewhere, Sango and Miroku find Kagura inside the mountain, while Renkatsu hides his stolen shard, proving that this villain group's alliance is thinner than paper. The situation at Mount Hakurei gets as tense as a final video game level. Miroku and Sango face Kagura and a horde of demons. The monk goes hardcore mode, using his wind tunnel even with poisonous insects nearby, risking his life to protect Sango. It's a suicidal romantic gesture, but it only works for so long before he collapses. Outside, Inuyasha makes the risky call to enter the mountain's barrier alone. He thinks that being a half-demon, he can tough it out. Spoiler, he can't. He runs into Renkatsu, who blasts him with cannons. The impact, combined with the barrier's purification, causes Inuyasha to lose his demon powers. He turns completely human, black hair, no claws, leaving him as vulnerable as Superman near kryptonite. He manages to duck into a crevice, but Jakatsu appears immediately after. The mercenary is thrilled to see this civilian version of Inuyasha and starts a cat-and-mouse hunt inside the mountain. At least Sango and Miroku find a safe zone where the poison has no effect. With the situation uglier than a bar fight in a Western movie, Inuyasha is stuck there, totally human and vulnerable. As he tries not to get sliced to ribbons by Jakatsu, who finds our hero's civilian version adorable, things get grim. The mercenary is having a blast, cutting Inuyasha like butter while the half-demon bleeds more than a protagonist in an 80s slasher flick. Elsewhere, Miroku and Sango encounter Saint Hakushin. The guy is literally a holy zombie with a tragic origin story worthy of a DC villain. He was a kind monk who, at the moment of death, faltered, felt fear, and was manipulated by Naraku into becoming a living Buddha, fueled by hatred. Miroku, tired of the talk, turns on his magical vacuum cleaner, the wind tunnel, and manages to break the monk's barrier, but is stopped by Naraku's annoying insects before he can suck up the old man. Miroku's play works. Mount Hakurei's sacred barrier falls. This is the equivalent of Popeye eating spinach. Inuyasha regains his powers instantly, but the joy is short-lived because now all of Naraku's demons can join the party. Jakatsu, Bankatsu, unbothered by the change in scenery, traps Inuyasha with his snake sword and promises the next move will be fatal. The vibe is heavy. Inuyasha catches his second wind and sends Jakotsu flying with a strike from Tetsaiga. The mercenary is buried under rubble, asking to be finished off, but Inuyasha, playing the moral hero, spares him. Bad move to turn your back, because Renkatsu emerges from the shadows. He's not there to help his friend. In a betrayal straight out of Scar from the Lion King, he steals Jakotsu's shard, killing his comrade to grow stronger. Meanwhile, Kikyo decides to play therapist for the zombie Hakushin. She gives him a deep talk, telling him he just wanted to live and that there's no sin in that. The therapy session works so well that Hakushin finds peace and passes on, taking the mountain's purity with him. The result? Mount Hakure turns into Mordor, with demons spawning from the ground. Renkatsu, thinking he's hot stuff with his new powers, tries to ambush his leader, Bankatsu, but the boss isn't stupid. Bankatsu smells the betrayal instantly, gives a lecture on loyalty that would make Dom Toretto proud, and rips the shards from the traitor's neck, killing Renkatsu without mercy. Now Bankatsu is as buffed as Thanos with the gauntlet, the last surviving member of the squad. When Inuyasha arrives screaming for Naraku, he's met by this human tank ready for the final round. Mount Hakure has officially become a nightmare, with miasma and monsters everywhere, like a Black Friday sale in hell. While Sesshomaru and Koga's gang fight their way through with pure violence, Inuyasha has to face the stage boss, Bankatsu, and the guy is a monster, powered up by 7 jewel shards and his massive sword. The fight is brutal. Bankatsu doesn't just hit hard, he dishes out heavy trash talk, trying to get into Inuyasha's head, but Inuyasha takes the hits, serving as a punching bag and getting back up like Rocky Balboa. In another part of the cave, Miroku and Sango stumble upon a sinister hole where they see Naraku's face. Before they can process the horror show, Kagura appears, firing her wind blades and knocking the duo into the abyss in a classic did they just die cliffhanger. Back in the main ring, Inuyasha realizes brute force isn't working. In a risky maneuver, he tosses Tetsaiga aside, confusing Bankatsu, and goes for a melee attack. The suicidal tactic works. Inuyasha digs his claws into the villain's arm and rips out 2 shards with his bare hands. Now it's a street fight, man to man, and neither is willing to back down. Miroku and Sango prove they are tough to kill. Sango uses her giant boomerang in a maneuver worthy of Cliffhanger or Mission Impossible to wedge it into the wall and catch Miroku by his rope, stopping them from becoming pulp at the bottom of the pit. Up top, the main fight stays insane. Bankatsu pins Inuyasha to the wall and starts the classic villain about to win speech. But Inuyasha was playing 4D chess. He let the guy hit him on purpose to get close enough to rip 3 jewel shards straight out of the mercenary's neck. The plot twist leaves Bankatsu in shock. Inuyasha reveals he now has the numbers advantage in shards and warns him that Naraku is just using everyone. Bankatsu, with the arrogance of an immortal, says he doesn't care and will kill Naraku too. To prove his point, Bankatsu starts hacking away at Naraku's demons, who were just spectating. He kills so many that his sword, the Banryu, gets a sinister upgrade and a demonic aura, like when you farm XP in an RPG to get a legendary weapon. But this is a backfire. With the sword emanating a foul aura, Inuyasha can finally use the backlash wave. The blast is devastating, and Bankatsu, who overplayed his hand, is defeated. Ironically, the cave decides it's hungry, and the walls of flesh begin to swallow everyone, dragging Inuyasha, Bankatsu, and even Koga into the mountain's gut. The vibe turns into a full-on biological horror movie. Inuyasha wakes up trapped inside a mass of pulsing flesh and reunites with the gang. Naraku finally shows his face, or rather, shows that the entire mountain is now part of his body. He's looking like a Resident Evil final boss, covered in tentacles and bizarre vertical eyes. Wasting no time, Naraku absorbs Bankatsu's body and takes his last shards, completing his collection and assembling a buffed new body. Inuyasha tries a wind scar, but it's useless. The attack's aura bounces off the flesh walls like a ball in a deadly game of pinball, nearly hitting the group instead. Naraku is at an absurd power level. Seeing that brute force is a no-go, Kagome steps up as the MVP. She spots Koga's shards trapped in Naraku's barrier and lands a precision shot, Hawkeye style. The arrow purifies the barrier and releases Koga, who falls down the mountain. With the structure collapsing, collapsing, Naraku decides to bail, but leaves a clear message. He's going personally to settle the score with his ex, Kikyo. Mount Hakure is collapsing into an apocalyptic wasteland. Inuyasha has to swallow his pride and dive into a lake of poison to save Koga, sparking a forced bromance, where neither wants to admit they care. He gets his rival out, but starts having worrying visions of Kikyo. Outside, the situation is tragic. Naraku corners Kikyo and drops the bombshell. He has discarded Onigumo's human heart. This means he no longer has that sentimental weakness holding him back from hurting her. Mercilessly, he destroys her bow and delivers a fatal blow, casting the priestess into an abyss of miasma. It's a heavy scene, the kind that shifts the entire tone of the series. Inuyasha arrives too late. He finds Sesshomaru, who had just finished testing Naraku's new body in a brief clash. The villain fled laughing, thinking he's immortal. Inuyasha, devastated and guilt-ridden, tries to take his anger out on his older brother, accusing him of letting Kikyo die, but Sesshomaru, with the coldness of an iceberg, drops the truth. It wasn't his fault. It was Inuyasha's for not being fast enough. He walks away, leaving his brother to deal with the grief. Meanwhile, far away, Kagura carries a mysterious talking bundle. Miroku and Sango decide it's time Koga stops being a bystander and they explain Naraku's origin. Basically, they give him the executive summary of how the villain was born from a human's twisted obsession with Kikyo. Koga gets fired up and decides to hunt the enemy even harder. Meanwhile, Inuyasha is in a total bad vibe funk, searching for his dead ex-girlfriend in a river of poison. Kagome tries to comfort the half-demon, but the atmosphere is more awkward than a run-in between exes. They find a random monk who claims to have seen a wounded priestess. Inuyasha, ignoring all common sense or the obvious trap, sprints ahead. Surprise! It was a trap. The rest of the group is captured by samurai and taken to a sinister castle. Inside, Kagura separates Kagome from the others and introduces her to the saga's new nightmare, the infant. The infant tries an Inception-style mind game on Kagome. He uses the fact that Inuyasha ran after Kikyo to fuel her jealousy and sadness, trying to find a crack of darkness to possess her soul. Sango and Miroku raise hell in the courtyard fighting guards. But inside, things are critical. The infant is latched onto Kagome, trying to hack her feelings. The evil infant continues his mental assault on Kagome, insisting Inuyasha will never love her as much as he loved Kikyo. Inuyasha, who finally realized he was played by the fake lead, rushes back to the castle, taking down guards like they're level 1 NPCs. In the emotional climax, Kagura and the infant think they've won, but Kagome pulls an Uno reverse card. She admits she's jealous, yes, but that her love for Inuyasha is bigger than any resentment. This honesty purifies the mind control attempt, repelling the corrupted shard. Basically, the power of love beats the dark side of the Force.
What's going on here? Somehow she repelled the shard.
Inuyasha bursts in through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man. The infant then reveals the big twist. He is the human heart Naraku discarded so he could kill Kikyo without remorse. Inuyasha tries a wind scar, but the infant has an overpowered force field and escapes with Kagura and Kana. Back to safety, we get the most mature relationship talk of the anime. Kagome drops the truth. She knows Inuyasha would run off again if he heard about Kikyo. He tries to deny it, but she knows better. Even so, she chooses to stay by his side. It's a complicated Ross and Rachel dynamic, but at least they've made peace. After so much psychological tension, the anime decides we need a comedy filler episode. Kagome returns to the modern world with a backpack full of dried feudal-era food called hoshimono. Terrible idea to bring souvenirs from a demon-infested era, but whatever. At school, Kagome's life turns into a Disney Channel original movie. Her friends force her into every cultural festival activity, drama, choir, and cooking. In the middle of the chaos, poor Hojo tries to confess his love on the rooftop, but is successfully ignored. This guy has less relevance than a background extra in The Walking Dead. The real problem starts at the Higurashi house. Kagome's grandfather decides to cook the dried food. Turns out the food was actually sealed demon meat that awakens with heat. It's the same rule as Gremlins. Don't heat it, don't get it wet. Inuyasha arrives just in time to smash the steam monster in the kitchen. But Kagome took the rest of the cursed snacks to school. As the cultural festival kicks off and the pots start boiling in Home EC class, we already know the school musical is about to become a B-movie creature feature. Inuyasha is going to have to trade his sword for an apron if he wants to save the school day. The cultural festival chaos continues, with Inuyasha blending perfectly into the crowd because everyone assumes he's wearing a highly detailed anime cosplay. Meanwhile, Kagome tries to stay professional in the school choir, singing a bizarre version of Beethoven's Ode to Joy with lyrics adapted to the Shikon Jewel. Not embarrassing at all. Mid-song, she spots a demon disguised as a flower, and Inuyasha has to go full ninja to eliminate the threat without ruining the show. But the true mayhem happens during the play. Kagome's grandpa and little brother try to help backstage, but they're useless. On stage, Kagome's character is in a sappy romance with Hojo's character, which instantly triggers Inuyasha's jealousy mode. He crashes the scene. The audience thinks it's a brilliant script twist, and then a giant watermelon demon appears to ruin the vibe. Inuyasha has no patience for acting and lets out a real wind scar, blowing a hole in the school ceiling. The crowd gives a standing ovation, thinking they just saw Broadway-level special effects. After turning the final fish demon into festival sashimi, the duo prepares to head back to the feudal era. As they eat, a post-credit scene reveals Naraku has found the location of the final jewel shard, right on the border of the afterlife. Back on the road, the gang is stopped by a guy named Kisuke, desperate because a demon is kidnapping local women. The villain of the week is Chokyukai, a pig demon who looks like a rejected extra from The Lion King, but carries a dangerous golden tiara capable of making anyone fall in love with him. And guess what? After accidentally testing it on Inuyasha and Miroku, he puts it on Kagome, who becomes a love-struck zombie and is whisked away to his castle. The rescue plan is straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon. Shippo has to cross-dress to distract the smitten pig while the rest of the team gets into position. The strategy works just enough to annoy the villain. Kagome, fighting the mind control, combines a sacred arrow with one of Miroku's sutras and sends the pig flying into the air like Team Rocket from Pokemon. When it's time to take the rescued girls back to the village, Miroku tries his classic pickup line, asking them to bear his children. The problem? After being kidnapped by a pig, the girls look at the monk and find him just as gross as the monster. He ends up rejected, humiliated, and questioned if he's a demon too, while Sango just watches with that "I told you so" look. Shippo encounters a group of young fox demons who believe in an absurd piece of fake news, that he is their great leader, and Inuyasha is merely his sidekick. The kid's ego inflates like a party balloon. To keep the lie alive, he tries to learn the wind scar, but he can barely even lift the sword. To make matters worse, he's crushing on a girl named Mizuki and is desperate to impress her. Pressured by his fans to take down a lizard demon terrorizing the area, Shippo sets up a prank to look like a hero. The plan goes horribly wrong. He accidentally knocks his crush into the river, and she tells him she hates him in front of everyone. Shippo's heart breaks faster than a caseless iPhone, but the pain of love becomes his fuel. Driven by the rage of being harshly friend-zoned, he unlocks a new technique called the heart scar, which essentially consists of biting the enemy with all his repressed hatred.
It's even better than the wind scar!
With help from the other foxes and one of Miroku's sutras, the lizard is defeated. The episode ends with Shippo taking out his romantic frustration by biting Inuyasha's arm, proving that rejection hurts more than any punch. Things get intense when the gang stumbles upon a scene straight out of a horror movie. They arrive at a mysterious village inhabited only by women. Rumors swirl about skinned male corpses appearing in the river, in a total The Silence of the Lambs fashion. During the investigation, the interpersonal drama heats up. Sango and Miroku have been acting strange since the adventure at Mount Hakare, and the Demon Slayer starts having fits of jealousy watching the monk interact with the locals. The problem is, her jealousy is justified, though not in a romantic way. The women there are acting like they're in a cult. A man named Shirosuke appears looking for his missing fiancée, and the grotesque truth soon comes to light. A demon living inside an ancient painting is controlling the women using salamander eggs to manipulate their minds and harvest human skin. Sango, trying to investigate on her own out of stubbornness and a broken heart, falls into a trap. She is captured and forced to swallow one of those demonic eggs, ready to become the newest puppet in this bizarre cult. The situation escalates quickly into a chaotic battle in the swamp. Miroku faces the painting demon in the temple, while Inuyasha is outside trying to restrain the possessed women without hurting them. That classic superhero dilemma when dealing with mind-controlled civilians. The main monster, a grotesque giant salamander, reveals itself himself, proving that Naraku has been spreading his malice even there. The most tense moment occurs when Sango, completely dominated by the salamander egg, attacks Miroku. It's a Mr. and Mistress Smith level lover spat, but with lethal weapons. Miroku has to be surgical. He manages to immobilize the Slayer and lands a gut punch to make her vomit up the demon egg. Not exactly romantic, but it saved her life. With the monster defeated, the scene fans have been waiting over 100 episodes for finally happens. Sango, thinking she's been rejected, tries to leave in tears. That's when Miroku finally mans up and makes the strangest marriage proposal in history. He asks if she'll have 10 or 20 children with him if they survive the war against Naraku.
You'll have my children? 10 babies? Or maybe even 20?
Yes. Moroku,
Sango tearfully accepts, while Kagome celebrates from the bushes, shipping the couple. The episode ends with romance in the air, despite Inuyasha betting that this peace won't last a day. The gang decides to take a break at the beach, resulting in that mandatory Sun and Sea anime episode, basically a feudal Baywatch, but the rest is short-lived. On the other side of the map, Sesshoul Maru encounters a woman named Sarah. She is on the verge of death, playing her flute and harboring an obsession for the silver-haired dog boy ever since he saved her father's castle in a past battle. Sarah decides she wants to give a final gift to her platonic crush and makes a sinister pact with demons, very much like Ursula from The Little Mermaid, promising to deliver to Sesshoul Maru what he desires most. Back at the beach, Inuyasha and his friends fall into a bizarre trap. A woman, pretending to be a victim of a water god, lures the group in. Miroku and Sango are instantly turned into stone statues. The woman convinces Inuyasha that to save his friends, he must thrust the Tetsaiga into a sacred rock, like a reverse King Arthur legend. The protagonist naively falls for it and traps his sword. Only Shippo realizes it's a scam, noticing the statues of his friends looked afraid of the woman rather than the sea monster. But by then, the team's primary weapon is neutralized. In a flashback, we see that Sarah's obsession with Sesshoul Maru isn't new. She saw him lose his arm in an old fight, and instead of being horrified, thought he was incredible. Basically, she became his #1 fan/stalker. The problem was her father, a protective feudal lord, didn't like the idea of his daughter being gaga over a demon and tried to attack Sesshoul Maru. The result? Sesshoul Maru didn't even break a sweat, and the lord became so paranoid he set fire to his own castle and killed himself. A total Denethor vibe from the Lord of the Rings. In the present, Inuyasha's team manages to break free from Sarah's spell, but her situation is much worse than it seems. She made a Faustian bargain, surrendering her body and soul to demons just to see her crush one last time. However, the demons have taken total control, transforming Sarah into a shapeless monstrosity that looks like it crawled out of The Thing. Sesshoul Maru himself realizes the real Sarah is trapped in that nightmare and asks for her to be saved. In an ironic twist, Sesshoul Maru borrows the Tetsaiga, the very sword he spent his life trying to steal, and uses the wind scar to disintegrate the demons and free the woman's spirit.
I've been set free again. Lord Sesshoul Maru, thank you for helping me.
Sarah dies in peace, and Sesshoul Maru, maintaining his tough guy persona, simply leaves her flute on her grave and moves on, giving Jockin a chop to the head just for old time's sake. The tension gives way to one of those RPG side quest moments. The raccoon dog Hachi appears in a panic, warning that Master Mushin, the monk who raised Miroku, is on his deathbed. Miroku, who rarely takes anything seriously, goes into a total panic and rushes to the temple, thinking he's about to lose his only father figure. Upon arrival, the old monk confirms his time as come, but before he goes, he has one last wish: to get wasted on a legendary sake. The group, feeling sympathetic, accepts the mission to retrieve the drink from a sacred mountain. The catch? The place is covered in a hallucinogenic mist that gets everyone drunk instantly, looking like a deleted scene from The Hangover. Only Miroku and Inuyasha escape the magical intoxication and manage to suck up the mist with the wind tunnel. After this whole saga to get the booze, they deliver it to the old man, who passes out after drinking. Miroku breaks down crying, thinking his master has died, only for the old guy to wake up with a massive hangover. The big reveal? He thought he was dying because he saw other monks being murdered, and when he spat up blood, he thought it was an omen, but he had actually just choked on a chicken bone. The group is furious at the stupidity, and even Kagura and the creepy infant, who happen to be flying by, decide to ignore them because the second-hand embarrassment was just too much. On another normal day in the feudal era, a village is being terrorized by a thief said to be invisible, emptying the coffers of wealthy families like a ghost. confused. Naturally, it's up to Inuyasha and the gang to solve the mystery Scooby-Doo style. Meanwhile, Shippo, tired of being bullied and hit by Inuyasha, decides he's going to learn an invisibility technique to get even. The little fox spends the night training and thinks he's become Harry Potter with an invisibility cloak, but his magic is a cheap knockoff that only lasts 2 minutes. He tries to confront the thief demon thinking he's invisible, but gets beaten up because, surprise, everyone could see him the whole time. The twist is that the thief wasn't invisible at all. The creature was made of paper, thin, like Paper Mario, and could slide through the cracks and doors. Shippo almost becomes origami at the villain's hands, but the group arrives to save the day. Inuyasha, using his bloodhound-like sense of smell, tracks the invisible demon by its scent and settles things with a punch. The demon promises to return everything and become a law-abiding citizen. In the end, Shippo tries to act like a hero, but only gets mocked by the group for thinking he was invisible all along. Back at school, Kagome is struggling with a history exam, proving that saving the world is easy, but passing your grade is the real challenge. To make matters worse, Hojo shows up all excited about his family tree, acting like he's on an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? He discovers that his ancestor, a man named Akitoki, was married to someone named Kagome. This sends her friends into a panic, thinking her destiny is to marry the feudal version of the class nerd. Meanwhile, in the feudal era, we meet this Akitoki. He's basically Hojo, just an old clothes and constant danger. He's carrying a cursed blade called Ken and being hunted by bandits. Inuyasha and Shippo save his skin, but when the half-demon tries to grab the sword, he becomes possessed, like Frodo with the One Ring.
How ominous. Of course, Inuyasha!
Miroku acts fast to shroud the blade before the protagonist turns into a villain. The goal now is to take this cursed item for purification since Mount Hakure is gone. Kaede points them to a shrine at a sacred waterfall. Kagome returns from the future just in time to join this RPG-style escort mission. But of course, it wouldn't be Inuyasha without an ambush. A group of demon ninjas led by Hoshiyomi wants the sword to recreate a super weapon. In the chaos, the group gets separated, and Kagome ends up falling into a river along with the clumsy Akitoki. With the team split up, the situation turns into chaos. Inuyasha stays behind to tank the boss Hoshiyomi, while the rest of the gang tries to track Kagome, who is floating down the river with Akitoki. The villain Hoshiyomi reveals that his blade isn't just for show. It absorbs energy, making the fight very unfair for our favorite dog boy. Meanwhile, in the forest, Akitoki and Kagome set up a makeshift camp and eat the most traditional dish of the Sengoku era, instant ramen Kagome brought from the future. But the enemy ninjas aren't stupid. They found a photo of Kagome's friends that fell out of her backpack and use magic to create puppets identical to the girls in the photo. It's a classic Scooby-Doo trap, and Kagome falls for it. She eventually realizes they are dolls and destroys the copies, but she gets kidnapped by the real ninjas immediately after. Inuyasha, who is busy getting beaten by Hoshiyomi, rushes to help, but runs into Akitoki on the way. The villain seizes the dramatic moment, flying in with an unconscious Kagome and delivering a standard action movie ultimatum. Hand over the cursed sword or the girl is toast. The mood gets heavy. Hoshiyomi takes flight, holding Kagome as a trophy, and sets a deadline for the trade. Inuyasha tries to attack, but the Tetsaiga decides it's time to malfunction and won't transform. Talk about performance issues in the clutch. With no choice, the group rushes to the sacred waterfall, where the villain plans to fuse the two blades and complete his weapon of mass destruction. Inside the shrine, a philosophical dialogue ensues. Kagome wakes up and questions the villain's motives. Hoshiyomi delivers a tragic monologue, explaining he was betrayed by a human lover, Tsukiyomi. Basically, he's a resentful ex-boyfriend with superpowers who decided humanity is worthless and needs to be extinct. He wants to use Kagome's spiritual power to supercharge the new weapon. Outside, the brawl is in full swing. Miroku finally uses his wind tunnel to suck up the ninja lackeys, clearing the map for Inuyasha. But when they reach the boss, the situation is critical. Hoshiyomi has already fused the swords and is overpowered. Miroku can't use his signature move because he'd suck Kagome in two. With a rusty Tetsaiga and a buffed enemy, Inuyasha will have to rely on willpower and plot armor to save the day, dropping the catchphrase that anything is possible if you want it enough. Hoshiyomi is floating in the sky with Kagome as a hostage, acting like he owns the world with his new weapon. Inuyasha and the gang try to attack, but it's useless. That's when Akitoki, in a moment of bravery or madness, decides it's the perfect time to confess his feelings. He gives a passionate speech worthy of a rom-com, saying that human weakness is what allows for love and compassion. compassion. It's sweet, but the villain couldn't care less and blames humanity for his ex's betrayal. Suddenly, Tsukiyomi's spirit possesses Kagome like something out of a horror movie, but just to clear things up, she reveals she sealed Hoshiyomi to save his life because the weapon was corrupting his soul, just like the One Ring. But the demon ninja refuses the truth, goes into denial, and decides to attack his former beloved. Inuyasha steps in to tank the damage, and the final brawl begins. Kagome and Inuyasha fight in such perfect sync, it's like they're piloting a Jaeger from Pacific Rim. Akitoki tries to help again, but he's only good for getting tossed aside. The poor guy has heart, but zero skill. In the end, with her power restored, Kagome purifies the villain, and Inuyasha finishes him off with the backlash wave. Hoshiyomi dies in peace, admitting he was wrong. The post-credits scene is the cherry on top of the friend zone. Akitoki realizes he'll never have a chance with Kagome and leaves. Years later, he meets his future wife and asks her to legally change her name to Kagome. Yes, he basically trolled Hojo's family tree in the future just to keep his obsession alive. The piece at the temple ends abruptly when Kagura and the infant, Naraku's baby, arrive, slaughtering everyone. The kid, who is already talking and interrogating people despite being a newborn, is hunting for information about the border to the other world. Meanwhile, Inuyasha's crew arrives at a destroyed village and discovers the legend of Entei, a demon horse that was sealed away, essentially a souped-up Mustang from hell. They try to reach the temple of the monk who sealed the beast, but Kagura is faster. The old monk, seeing he's about to die, makes a move like King Solomon. The problem is, that doesn't kill the creature. On the contrary, now we have two problems. Kana takes one half to Naraku, and Kagura keeps the other. With the mess made, Entei's seal breaks, and the beast charges out, breathing fire and causing terror. Inuyasha's group tries to stop the furious stallion, but he's too fast and tramples any attempt at defense.
He's gonna get my personal thanks for that attack. Get ready for my Windstar!
And to make things even more like a horror movie, the half of the baby Kagura starts undergoing an accelerated growth spurt. The bundle of cloth begins to move, and a child-sized hand reaches out. He enters the world with a massive attitude, looking for the horse Entei. When they find the beast, its former owner, a demon named Rengoku-ki, tries to act tough. Terrible idea. Hakudoshi looks at him with god-tier villain contempt, takes the guy's weapon, and slices him in half without any effort. It's basically a feudal Grand Theft Auto. He kills the driver and steals the ride. Entei, seeing the boy's absurd power, accepts his new master instantly. Inuyasha and the gang show up to demand answers, but Hakudoshi is in another league. He explains that as the other half of the original baby, he is also seeking the Shikon jewel at the border of the afterlife. To find this place, he starts a macabre new trend, ripping off demons' heads to see if in their final seconds of life, their eyes reveal the path to the other world. The kid is a total psychopath and now has the fastest mount on the server. Things get grim when the group reaches a village that looks like the set of Sleepy Hollow. A decapitated demon is wreaking havoc, and our heroes save a young otter demon named Kanta. The kid explains that a boy in white riding a demonic horse ripped his father's head off. Meanwhile, Hakudoshi is out there collecting heads like hunting trophies, staring into the eyes of the dying to find the path to the other world. On the other side of the map, Sesshomaru feels the Tenseiga vibrate. He crosses paths with the otter's father, who is barely hanging on, trying to put his head back on. Kagome and Shippo beg for help, and Sesshomaru does his usual playing hard to get routine, pretending to leave, but his sword forces him to be a hero. He revives the demon, who mentions seeing a place with mist and giant bones before coming back. Inuyasha and Sesshomaru immediately put the pieces together. The place the villain is searching for is their father's grave, the giant skeleton that served as the arena in the first season. Now that they know their destination, all they're missing is a ride. The black pearl that usually leads to the border of the afterlife has already been used, so the team heads out on a side quest to find Hosenki, the master artisan who creates these magical gems. On the villain's side, Kagura is dying to betray Hakudoshi, but since the kid can read minds, the workplace vibe is officially worse than a Thanksgiving family reunion. Inuyasha eventually runs into Hakudoshi on a cliffside, but the villain just drops some trash talk and bails on his souped-up demon horse, Entei. When the group finally tracks down Hosenki's place, they learn from his son that the old man has kicked the bucket and the pearl stock is completely empty. Basically, they hit a dead end. But all is not lost. Kagura shows up playing the double agent and spills the tea. Hakudoshi has headed for the gate to the land of fire. She swears she was sent to tell them this, but it's clear she just wants to watch the world burn, literally. Sesshomaru, who never wastes a second, is already hot on Naraku's trail too. The squad reaches the entrance to the land of fire and comes face to face with stone guardians who take their job way too seriously. The rule is simple. Only the dead can pass. Inuyasha isn't exactly in the mood to die just to get in, so so things turn into a total slugfest. Miroku tries to use his wind tunnel, but it's useless against the statues. The solution? Pure brute force. Inuyasha uses the red Tetsaiga to shatter the magical chains and force the gate open, completely ignoring the security warnings. As the gate opens, Kagura tries to hitch a ride and sends in her demons, but the underworld security system turns them all into stone instantly. She retreats before she ends up as a gargoyle herself. Before the gate shuts, Kagome spots the glow of a Shikon jewel shard inside. Back at the base, Kagura tries a sneak attack on Hakudoshi, but Naraku force chokes her heart, Darth Vader via Wi-Fi style, reminding her exactly who's the boss in this mess. The group is debating the final jewel shard when they stumble into a horror movie set, an entire village where everyone has been drained of their blood. It looks like a thirsty vampire went on a rampage, but the reality is way more chaotic. A swarm of demon birds is terrorizing the countryside and eating people. Meanwhile, Naraku shows up to strike a deal with Princess Abi, the leader of this pack of psycho birds. He hands her a weapon made from his own bone. It's like that legendary loot you get from a final boss, except it's coming straight from the main villain. When Inuyasha and the crew arrive at a new village, the sun sets, and a live-action remake of Hitchcock's The Birds begins, but with actual monsters. The brawl kicks off, and Princess Abi shows up with an escort of Naraku's Saimyosho. This is bad news for Miroku, because the insects neutralize his wind tunnel, turning the team's heaviest hitter into dead weight. Inuyasha goes 1v1 against Abi, but she uses her new Naraku tech weapon to create a barrier and escape. Basically, she came, caused some chaos, and dipped before things got too hot for her. Princess Abi and her gang of demon birds are still doing their Hitchcock remake, slaughtering a whole village without mercy. When Team Inuyasha arrives, they only find destruction and survivors talking about a saint who protects people. It's the classic urban legend every RPG has. Inuyasha's group follows the lead on this saint, figuring it's a trap, and of course they're right. Kagura and Hakudoshi show up to stall the team while Abi attacks a sanctuary. Inuyasha charges Hakudoshi with his red Tetsaiga, but the kid's barrier is stronger than the shield of Wakanda. Nothing gets through. Suddenly, a sacred arrow comes out of nowhere and shatters Hakudoshi's defense. The saint has entered the chat. With the barrier down, Inuyasha sees his chance to finish it, but Kagura, who isn't stupid, grabs Hakudoshi's head and flees. Inuyasha vents his rage on the demon horse Entei, sending the beast to the afterlife with a well-placed backlash wave. The team starts an episode of CSI Feudal Era, analyzing the arrow that saved the day. Everyone suspects Kikyo, but Inuyasha, using his bloodhound nose, swears it doesn't smell like her. The mystery of this anonymous saint continues. Nearby, Princess Abi tries to attack another protected village, but the saint appears and decimates her birds with a single arrow. Abi bails faster than Wile E. Coyote, and Inuyasha decides to investigate this mystery sniper. Kaede also notices something weird. The saint's assistants are stealing soil from Kikyo's grave. This smells like necromancy or some heavy-duty sorcery. Inuyasha tells the group to go ahead while he clears out some fodder demons. When he finally corners the saint, he realizes he's been catfished. It's just a puppet, a boring mannequin. Kagura shows up laughing in his face and drops the gossip. Naraku thinks Kikyo is alive and is hunting her down. Meanwhile, Kagome decides to follow some soul collectors and reaches a waterfall. Down there, she finds the real Kikyo, who is in worse shape than an extra from The Walking Dead, badly wounded and in hiding. The situation is critical. Kikyo is dying from Naraku's miasma, and her assistants warn that only Kagome has the spiritual power to save her boyfriend's ex. It's the ultimate moral dilemma. Let the rival go to a better place or play the hero? Since Kagome's heart is purer than a Disney protagonist, she decides to save her. But it's not easy. While trying to purify Kikyo in the water, Kagome has visions of the past, watching the betrayal set up by Naraku years ago in 4K. It's pure psychological torture. Inuyasha, stuck outside the barrier with the others, feels that things are going south and hopes his current girlfriend doesn't let the ex die. In the end, Kagome manages to clear the venom. Kikyo wakes up and, maintaining her Ice Queen persona, tells Kagome she won't thank her because Kagome made a choice. She warns she's going into hiding to recover and vanishes before Inuyasha arrives. When Inuyasha Inuyasha finally finds Kagome, he catches Kikyo's scent and gets all worked up. Kagome, emotionally drained and tired of being the second choice, explodes and drops an "I hate you" that hurt more than any sword strike. Later, they have a relationship talk by the campfire. Inuyasha, realizing he's in the doghouse, decides not to go after Kikyo and tries to make things right with Kagome. For now, at least, he's chosen to stay with the one who saved his ex's skin. The family drama continues. Princess Abi, having a terrible day at the office, talks to her mother about their Naraku problems. The avian matriarch suggests attacking a specific castle. The plot twist: this castle is basically the evil daycare where Kohaku and Kana are protecting the creepy infant. Kagura and Hakudoshi are watching from the front row, and Kagura is sent in to spy like a biological drone. On the other side, Team Inuyasha sees the Hitchcock-style birds heading for the castle, and Sango's big sister Radar picks up Kohaku's presence. While Inuyasha, Miroku, and the gang are beating down birds outside, the vibe inside gets heavy. Naraku activates Kohaku's Winter Soldier mode. The boy tries to resist, but the brainwashing is too strong, and he receives an executive order to eliminate anyone breathing on his way to protect the baby. Sango rushes in to stop a tragedy, but her brother is already on murderous autopilot. Kohaku is taking down the castle guards against his own will. It's a heavy scene. Sango arrives just as he was about to finish off the lady looking after the baby, but the woman flees, straight into Kana's arms. The girl from the mirror shows no mercy, sucks the woman's soul out and bails with the demon child. Outside, Abi realizes the deal has soured and retreats. Kohaku, regaining consciousness and seeing the damage he's done, tries to leap to his death, but Kagura shows up at the last second and saves the kid with a giant feather. The villain is turning into a bit of a rebel fairy godmother. Team Inuyasha connects the dots and realizes that baby isn't a normal kid. It's the incarnation of Hakudoshi's heart, basically a living Horcrux. Sango is devastated, but Miroku surprises everyone. Instead of being a creep, he offers a genuine shoulder to cry on. But the peace is short-lived because in the middle of the night, Inuyasha catches the scent of Kikyo's secretaries and slips away to meet his undead ex. In the middle of the woods, a clandestine meeting takes place. Kikyo is weak, but her mind is still sharp. She gives Inuyasha the reality check. Naraku isn't running. He's setting a snare. The villain wants to lure everyone to the border of the afterlife because he needs Kagome's GPS. Her eyes are the only ones that can find the final jewel shard. Kikyo hands an arrow to Inuyasha and says, "Give this to your girlfriend. She'll know what to do." Inuyasha returns to camp and in a rare moment of honesty tells Kagome everything. She gets a bit jealous obviously, but accepts the mission. The group heads to the demon bird's nest to intercept the villain. Once there, Abi's mother decides it's a great idea to eat Naraku. Huge mistake. In a scene straight out of Alien, Naraku bursts out from inside the old bird, killing her and Princess Abi in the process. With all that blood spilled, he finally opens the portal to the underworld. The path is clear, and things are about to get ugly. The portal to the other world is wide open, spewing a river of blood that makes the elevator scene from The Shining look like child's play. Naraku gives his classic villain laugh, warns that time is running out, and vanishes.
Naraku!
Why are you just standing there? This river of blood won't last, and the pathway will close behind me.
Completely ignoring common sense and Miyoga's desperate pleas, Inuyasha and his team decide to surf this macabre wave and enter the portal. Meanwhile, Seishomaru and his crew find the decapitated demon's body. Kagura shows up to taunt them, acting like a tour guide from hell, pointing out that there's a VIP alternative entrance through the fiery gate. Inuyasha and the gang land at their destination, the giant graveyard inside his father's carcass. Kagome senses the jewel shard, but the nostalgia trip ends fast. They're greeted by Hosenki, an old friend of Inuyasha's father who unfortunately is not in the mood for a chat. The guy starts firing adamant spears, a material tougher than vibranium, at everyone. Hosenki has been corrupted by evil and refuses to hand over the shard. Inuyasha's Tetsaiga is useless against the old man's diamond armor. It's like trying to cut a tank with a butter knife. Kagome tries to use Kikyo's special arrow, but fails. The episode ends with Inuyasha taking a beating and being sent flying into the abyss, proving that diamonds are forever, and they hurt a lot. The situation at the skeletal graveyard goes from bad to worse. Naraku arrives determined to steal the last shard, treating Kagome and her arrows like annoying mosquitoes. Hosenki tries to resist and impales the villain with a diamond arm, but Naraku hits Terminator mode, regenerates instantly, and fully corrupts the old man, ripping out the jewel shard. Inuyasha gets back into the fray and tries everything. Wind Scar, Backlash Wave, nothing works. Naraku's barrier is impenetrable, and the villain uses Hosenki's body to pin Inuyasha to the ground, humbling the protagonist. On the other side, Sesshomaru shows everyone how it's done. He reaches the guardians of the alternate gate and draws Tenseiga. Like magic, or an executive-level keycard, the gates swing open, recognizing the sword from the other world. Back in the battle, Naraku gives his victory speech and unleashes his poisonous insects on Miroku. Just when all seems lost, a blue energy blast hits the villain's barrier. It's Sesshomaru arriving in style. He completely ignores Naraku, walks up to Inuyasha, and punches his brother in the face for embarrassing himself with their father's sword. With Hosenki freed from possession, the scene turns into a Mexican standoff. Naraku versus the two dog brothers. The final brawl begins. Sesshomaru launches energy attacks, but Naraku's barrier holds firm, though it's shaking like jello. Hosenki, regaining his sanity, gives Inuyasha an RPG-style quest. Kill me so your sword can gain XP and level up. Inuyasha, being the stubborn hero he is, refuses to kill an ally. Naraku plays dirty and spreads toxic miasma across the arena. Sesshomaru, with the empathy of a brick wall, says he doesn't care if the humans suffocate and keeps attacking. But Inuyasha chooses to protect his friends and uses the wind scar to disperse the poison. And then the script magic happens. Because he chose to protect others instead of seeking greedy power, the Tenseiga absorbs the power of adamant on its own. Inuyasha unlocks Adamant Barrage, basically a crystal shotgun, and shatters Naraku's barrier into tiny pieces. The villain is in shock, looking like a noob who just ran into a hacker. Sesshomaru takes the chance to slice Naraku up, and Kagome fires Kikyo's arrow, but Naraku is the master of the escape. He uses a mystical Wi-Fi connection with Hakudoshi to teleport back to the land of the living at the very last millisecond, cheating death. With the villain on the run, Hosenki warns, "The party's over. Time to move before the portal closes and locks everyone in the afterlife." Naraku and Hakudoshi are doing that classic villain talk, trying to figure out how to delete Kikyo from the server, since she's the only player with high enough stats to pierce their defense. Meanwhile, Kohaku is still playing Among Us in real life, pretending to be loyal while planning to betray the boss, but deciding to wait for the perfect moment for the kill. On the other side, Kagome is furious with Inuyasha and drops a basic sit, proving the dog still hasn't learned all his tricks. But the relationship drama is interrupted when Hakudoshi unleashes an army of demon rats, creating a scene straight out of a plague tale. It's a mess, an absurd amount of low-level mobs that only exist to cause lag in the world. Miroku solves the problem by turning his wind tunnel into a Dyson industrial vacuum, clearing the area. But they realize this is all a trap to lure out Kikyo. Sure enough, the priestess plants a magical tree that acts like a rat magnet, hacking Naraku's plan. The team splits up like a teen horror movie. Inuyasha, Shippo, and Kagome go to see what Kikyo is up to, while Sango and Miroku go after the source of the rats, not knowing they're about to run into Sango's family drama. Kohaku grabs the rat shrine and runs like he's playing Capture the Flag on hardcore mode. Miroku tries to help, but the rats ignore him completely, focused on Kikyo's magical tree. And that's where things sour. Hakudoshi shows up and melts the tree with acid slugs, ruining the whole scheme. Inuyasha arrives for the fight and lets out a wind scar, but Hakudoshi uses a regeneration cheat and dips, leaving behind a generic villain warning. The real drama happens with Sango and Kohaku. The boy gets swarmed by rats, and Sango, acting on pure big sister instinct, throws herself in to save him. Kilala tries to help, but everyone ends up buried under a pile of rodents. Luckily, Inuyasha is the player who arrives at the last second. With a sniper assist from Kikyo that breaks the barrier, he destroys the shrine and the rats vanish. Kikyo checks the work and slips away. When they wake up, Kohaku gives an Oscar-worthy performance. In front of Hakudoshi, he pretends he has no idea who Sango is, keeping his loyal soldier disguise intact. The kid is cold and calculated, while Sango is left behind, dealing with a broken heart. After all that tension, the anime turns into a Disney Channel teen sitcom. Kagome returns to the modern world to enjoy some AC and complain about her love triangle. Inuyasha, who has zero respect for personal space, follows her and immediately wrecks the girl's new bicycle. He tries to fix it, but has the finesse of the Incredible Hulk doing origami, turning the bike into a piece of twisted modern art. To make matters worse, he has to pay for the damage and tries to help Kagome's grandfather. The result? He knocks over a shelf of antiques, causing damage that would make any Antiques Roadshow appraiser cry in a fetal position. The highlight is when Kagome's school friends show up. Kagome panics, thinking they'll find out her boyfriend is a feudal half-demon, but the girls react like fans meeting a member of BTS. They find his rough and destructive destructive attitude cute and rebellious. Inuyasha, confused by all the female attention, answers everything with total innocence. In the end, he comes off as the perfect boyfriend in the friend's eyes, and Kagome, seeing the net gain, forgives the bike and the broken relics. Love is blind, and apparently very expensive. The group continues their journey, and Miroku, maintaining his reputation as a predator who would give any HR department nightmares, uses a flimsy excuse to test Sango's patience and her anatomy. But karma comes at a gallop. Upon arriving at a village, a local confronts the monk about a marriage proposal made years ago. Apparently, past Miroku was basically the Tinder swindler of feudal Japan. He cured a girl named Shima, charged a fortune in herbs, and according to her, asked her to have his child. Sango is livid, and the tension is heavier than Thor's hammer. But the real trouble involves the Master of the Lake, a demon who decided Shima would be his bride. The girl, desperate to get out of the arranged marriage with the monster, lies and says she's no longer a virgin because she slept with Miroku. This breaks Sango's heart. She believes the lie and basically ends the relationship that hadn't even officially started. The Master of the Lake appears, and ironically, he's a giant catfish. Literally, an MTV catfish. The creature is offended by the girl's supposed impurity and attacks. Miroku, trying to clear his name, goes into action hero mode to save Shima, but makes it clear his heart belongs to Sango. After draining the lake with his wind tunnel and beating up the catfish, the truth comes out. Shima lied about sleeping with the monk just to scare off the fishman. The group moves on, with Miroku narrowly escaping being cancelled, but still sweating under Sango's death stare. Sesshomaru is wandering about, decimating a group of bandits with the casual ease of someone swatting flies. His power catches the eye of a group of monks led by Ungai, a guy who's basically a cross between a Child Protective Services agent and a Grand Inquisitor. Ungai loathes demons with every fiber of his being and decides he must save Rin, whether she wants it or not. Meanwhile, it's the night of the new moon, which means Inuyasha has turned human and is as vulnerable as a level 1 NPC, a flute-playing demon named Angokuki, looking like he crawled straight out of a creepy urban legend, starts kidnapping children Pied Piper style, and ends up taking Rin. Ungai manages to rescue the kids, but he's shell-shocked when Rin tells him she'd 1,000 times rather stay with Sesshomaru than return to human society. To her, humans are far worse than any yokai. Things heat up when Sesshomaru arrives to retrieve his ward. The monks throw everything they have at him: force fields, prayer beads, sacred sutras, basically their entire Ghostbusters arsenal. Ungai even lands a direct hit, but Sesshomaru doesn't even bother transforming or drawing his sword. He uses pure psychic energy to shatter the monk's gear, proving he's in a completely different league. Rin runs back to him in pure bliss, leaving Ungai standing there looking foolish and questioning his entire belief system. Sesshomaru, with his usual icy demeanor, ignores the monk's existential crisis and moves on, proving that family is who you choose, even if that family happens to be a murderous demon lord. We take a break from the frantic action for a more introspective Homeward Bound style moment. Kalala, the two-tailed cat, goes off on a solo stroll and starts having flashbacks to when Sango and Kohaku were little. It's one of those nostalgic moments that tugs at the heartstrings. While exploring the woods, she's attacked by demons, but reinforcements arrive quickly. Kohaku shows up to save the day. The boy is living his own version of a spy thriller, feigning loyalty to Naraku while plotting to stab him in the back. Kohaku and Kilala share a moment of silence and some grilled fish, where the kid vents to the pet because, let's face it, it's safer than talking to any human there. He even shows her a field of lilies he found, thinking his sister would love them. Sango goes out searching for her feline companion and bumps into Kagura, but the encounter leads nowhere. The emotional peak of the drama happens when Kilala leads Sango to the lily field. Sango, being the emotional detective she is, realizes Kohaku was there and that his humanity is still intact. No fights, no explosions, just Sango crying amidst the flowers, realizing her assassin little brother still remembers her. It's sad, it's beautiful, and it serves as a reminder that Kohaku isn't quite a total evil robot yet. Naraku enters the scene giving off major RPG villain vibes, raiding a cave in the middle of a blizzard to steal a sinister jewel called the Fuyoheki. While he cackles alone with his new toy, the mess falls on Inuyasha's lap. The group is dealing with an infestation of fox parasites, and guess who the perfect target is? Little Shippo. The kid gets possessed by one of these parasites and turns into a full-blown gremlin after midnight. He goes on a rampage, pulling sadistic pranks and trapping everyone with sticky rice that looks like Spider-Man's webbing. The situation gets so chaotic that Sango, in a moment of desperation, prepares poisoned dumplings to paralyze her friend. As they say, desperate times call for measures that might leave your friend drooling on the floor. Fortunately, Sango's questionable cooking gives Inuyasha the opening to play surgeon and cut the parasite out without slicing Shippo in the process. Miroku finishes the job by using his wind tunnel like an industrial industrial Dyson vacuum, sucking up the whole plague.
Wind tunnel!
Kikyo also makes a brief appearance doing some pest control, but the real highlight is Naraku, who keeps laughing it up with his new stone, plotting something that's bound to be a headache for everyone. The group discovers that local rumors about a missing mountain were true. Literally, the mountain went for a walk. They find Gakusanjin, a giant mountain demon, who explains that Naraku stole the Fuyoheki from inside him. This stone basically acts like Harry Potter's invisibility cloak, but for demonic auras, allowing the villain to hide from any tracking. To make amends, the mountain hands over some crystals that act like a radar for the stone. Meanwhile, Kohaku is following orders to eliminate Kikyo, but the priestess is in trouble. Because of the stealth stone, she can't sense Naraku's presence and ends up trapped in a cage of bones. Inuyasha and the gang arrive at the last second to stop Kohaku from getting his hands dirty again. On the other hand, Hakudoshi is playing Dr. Frankenstein and creates a monster called Moriomaru. When Inuyasha attacks with the Tetsaiga, Hakudoshi does something bizarre. He throws himself in front of the blow to protect his creation, being torn apart in the process. He steals the tracking crystals and takes the new monster to Kana. It turns out that Golem isn't just a soldier, it's the new armored cradle for the baby, Naraku's heart. The gang arrives too late, only to find that the talking mountain, Gakusanjin, has been murdered. Following the trail, Inuyasha and company find a group of kids fighting demons like their miniature versions of the Ghostbusters. These kids lead everyone to a temple led by a monk named Goryomaru. This monk is anything but conventional. He has a demonic arm that fires energy blasts like Mega Man's Buster or something out of the Winter Soldier's kit. The guy takes the group in, but peace is short-lived. Kagura shows up leading an army of undead demons, basically bringing the background cast of The Walking Dead to the party. She's convinced the baby is hidden right there in the temple. Miroku tries to use his wind tunnel, but the usual poison insects show up to ruin the strategy. While Inuyasha goes to have a chat with Kagura, Goryomaru shows he's not quite a saint and grabs Kagome with his weird arm. It's left up in the air whether he's a very strange ally or just another problem on Inuyasha's massive to-do list. Meanwhile, Naraku reveals that keeping Kagura alive is just a bait strategy, proving he's the worst boss in history. On the other side, Inuyasha's group arrives late to a temple full of dead demons and finds the monk Goryomaru and the brat Hakudoshi in a violent internal feud. Hakudoshi, tired of playing games, decides to eliminate the monk and take the baby, which is, literally, Naraku's heart. The chase leads everyone inside a giant stone demon, kind of like a macabre version of Pinocchio's whale, only filled with acid. The situation turns critical when Inuyasha, trying to save everyone's skin, starts being consumed by the demonic side of the jewel, turning into an uncontrollable version of the Hulk. Kagome, being the MVP of the episode, ignores the acid burning her feet and hugs the Hanyu to calm him down in a scene worthy of a Hollywood romance. The power of love and purification works. Inuyasha regains his sanity and tears the demon apart from the inside out. In the end, there's that sweet "I'm glad you're here" moment, making it clear the ship is sailing strong. Kana is spouting some depressing poetry, while Naraku continues to manipulate everyone with the coldness of a pro chess player. Kagura discovers that Hakudoshi is planning a coup against Naraku, wanting to use her and Kohaku for it. Speaking of Kohaku, the boy keeps pretending he's under mind control, Winter Soldier style, while planning his silent revenge. Kagome pops back to the modern world to take an exam and, surprise, she knows nothing. Life as a student in feudal Japan doesn't exactly offer extra credit. Back in the action, Koga, the wolf demon speedster, faces off against Moriomaru, who is now powered up and regenerating faster than Wolverine. The highlight is the final showdown with Hakudoshi. The arrogant brat thinks he's untouchable, but Kagura rebels and helps the group. When Naraku's barrier abandons Hakudoshi, he realizes too late that he's been fired from existence. Miroku finally makes his wind tunnel useful and hoovers the villain up like an industrial vacuum cleaning up trash. Kagura, now boss-free, turns down the invitation to join the good guys and flies off, making it clear she's going solo. Kagura continues her flight, trying to stay off her toxic ex-boss's radar. Meanwhile, Koga decides he needs an inventory upgrade and goes after the Goraishi, a legendary weapon of the Wolf Clan. The trial to get the weapon is like a high-difficulty RPG quest. He has to protect his useless friends instead of just seeking power. Koga passes the character test and gets some new Wolverine-style lightning claws. Tragedy, however, is reserved for Kagura. Naraku appears and in a gesture that looks like kindness, returns her heart. But of course it's a trap. He attacks her instantly, injecting her with miasma and leaving her to die. It's the definition of an abusive relationship taken to the extreme. Kagura lands lands in a field of flowers, feeling her life slip away. Sesshomaru finds her, following the scent of blood. He tries to use the Tenseiga to save her, but realizes it's too late. She cannot be rescued from death. In one of the saddest and most beautiful moments of the series, Kagura smiles at seeing Sesshomaru one last time and dissolves into petals and wind. She dies free, as she always wanted. Inuyasha and the gang arrive shortly after, and Sesshomaru, dry as ever, simply says she passed away smiling. The episode ends with an emotional weight that even the best HBO dramas can't deliver. Sesshomaru is standing on the edge of a cliff, playing the lone wolf and brooding over Kagura's death. That's when Totosai, the group's blacksmith, shows up with a deep analysis. Sesshomaru's frozen heart has finally learned compassion and grief. Basically, the Tenseiga decided its master had graduated. The sword, which was previously just a team cleric healing tool, is now being reforged to deal real damage. The goal? A move called the Meido Zangetsuha, which opens a portal directly to the underworld. Meanwhile, the vibe shifts completely to a comedic filler. Shippo becomes the target of three little foxes who are taking the Fox Demon promotion exam. They try to trick Inuyasha's group, and of course, Miroku falls for the beautiful women illusion, because old habits die hard. The joke stops being funny when Shippo meets a girl named Mujina. She cries a sob story, tricks the little fox, and uses a magic sword to steal Inuyasha's wind scar. Our protagonist gets pissed and takes a beating from his own technique. But the plot twist comes fast. The girl is actually an old tanuki in disguise. Inuyasha breaks the imposter's sword with brute force. Back to the serious plot, Sesshomaru tests his tuned-up Tenseiga and dispatches an ogre straight to hell, proving he's no longer just a healer. He's here to delete enemies from the map. Sesshomaru keeps testing his new toy, but notices the portal comes out as a crescent moon, meaning his skill level isn't maxed out yet. Inuyasha, meanwhile, goes to complain to Totosai about energy-absorbing swords and learns about the Daki, a dragon-scale sword created by a mad blacksmith named Toshu. This guy has Disney villain levels of ambition and ends up possessed by his own creation, turning into a power-obsessed monster. In the meantime, Koga and a wolf boy named Kai try to save the kid's little brother from the clutches of Moriomaru, that golem serving as a safe for Naraku's heart. Inuyasha arrives to face the possessed Toshu. The battle is intense, with the Tenseiga cracking under the pressure. But in the end, the villain's sword can't take the strain, breaks, and, plot convenience activated, the Tenseiga absorbs its properties. Now with the dragon-scaled Tenseiga, Inuyasha thinks he's Thor and charges at Moriomaru. The problem is, the new sword is like an untamable sports car. It absorbs so much demonic energy that the engine explodes in the driver's face. Inuyasha lands the blow, drains the villain's energy, but suffers a brutal kickback that burns his hands and knocks him out. Moriomaru escapes, and our half-demon realizes he's gained a power-up he can't handle without hurting himself yet. The mood gets heavy with the tragic story of Ginka and Kinka, two Siamese twin demons who look like they stepped out of a weird Nickelodeon cartoon. They spend their lives trying to kill each other, but in the end, Moriomaru solves the problem by devouring both to absorb the energy of their union. It's one of those moments where the anime reminds you it can be cruel. Meanwhile, Sesshomaru crosses paths with Moriomaru and gives the golem a scare. It flees with its tail between its legs after seeing the power of the Meido Zangetsuha. On the other side, Inuyasha's hands are fried because of the new Tenseiga. Totosai, helpful as always in his own way, tells the boy to train with the holy demon spirit. You'd expect a Master Yoda, but the reality is an old man who looks like a floor rag living in a shack falling to pieces. The training is a psychedelic trip. Inuyasha is thrown into a village full of illusions, and to make matters worse, his sword is chained up so he can't use brute force. The lesson here is to stop being a barbarian button masher and start playing with strategy. The spirit teaches Inuyasha to see the demonic vortex, basically the weak point where energy flows. Instead of absorbing everything and exploding, Inuyasha needs to cut that flow. He finally understands the mechanics, vaporizes the test enemies, and mostly masters the dragon-scaled Tenseiga, ready for the next round with Naraku. We have one of those classic B-movie horror situations, a demonic tree named Yomeiju that loves devouring people. It seemed like a local problem, something out of Little Shop of Horrors, until Naraku shows up. You'd expect an epic fight, but the villain simply decides to absorb the carnivorous plant. Only, the tree tries to eat Naraku, and in the middle of this dietary mess, Naraku flees. Meanwhile, Koga is hunting Moriomaru, but Kikyo shows up instead, warning him that he needs to drop the jewel shards if he wants to survive, because Midoriko's soul is locking his legs up. Koga, stubborn as always, ignores her. Shortly after, we have the clash of titans, Moriomaru versus Naraku. And check the plot twist, Moriomaru, the Frankenstein golem, apparently wins, shatters Naraku, and absorbs his creator, the baby, Naraku's heart. Thinks he's finally pulled off a corporate coup and become the new CEO of evil. The party is short-lived. When Inuyasha and Koga try to crack the golem's shell, Moriomaru tries to absorb the wolf. That's when Naraku reveals he's like one of those infernal Russian nesting dolls. He wasn't eaten. He let himself be absorbed to take control from the inside out. Moriomaru's coup was part of Naraku's plan all along. He resurfaces, blowing up the golem and capturing the baby and Koga in one go. Miroku tries to play Hiro and uses the wind tunnel, but sucks in so much miasma, he looks like he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes at once. Naraku escapes with his heart back, and Miroku is left on the brink of death, with venom scars that would make any doctor on house panic. The atmosphere is heavy. Kikyo decides to save Miroku's life by absorbing his miasma, which is basically long-term suicide since she's made of clay and souls. Meanwhile, Naraku spreads giant spiderwebs across the sky that only those with spiritual powers can see. He wants to contaminate Kikyo and Kagome with negative thoughts. Kagome ends up falling into a mental trap where she sees Kikyo and Inuyasha's tragic past. A clear attempt by the villain to create some Mean Girls-style drama. To make things worse, Kikyo's bow needs urgent repair, and the only available string is on Mount Azusa. The mission falls into Kagome's lap, obviously. While Koga tries to escort her, Inuyasha stays behind to tend to his ex. On Mount Azusa, Kagome faces a psychological test worthy of a reality show. The mountain spirit takes Kikyo's form and starts taunting her, acting with the arrogance of a spiritual Regina George. She says she'll let Kagome fall into the abyss if she doesn't hand over the bow. Kagome has to deal with all the jealousy and insecurity of being the second choice, and in an impressive moment of maturity, decides to save Kikyo anyway. The spirit reveals the weight of the bow was just the doubt in Kagome's heart. Meanwhile, in a quick subplot, Seishomaru shows up just to save the day and stop Sango's brother from being poisoned, maintaining his "I don't care about anything, but I'll save everyone" stance. Kagome returns from Mount Azusa ready for combat, but Naraku already has Kikyo in his clutches, delivering that monotonous villain speech where he thinks he's already won. Koga, who never learns, tries to attack and ends up being absorbed by Naraku, but hold on, the shards in his legs purify the villain momentarily, which would be great if Naraku wasn't a master of regeneration. The situation calls for desperate measures. Kikyo, trapped and weak, begs Kagome to shoot her. Yes, the strategy is to shoot the ally. Kagome fires, and the arrow channels Kikyo's purifying power directly into Naraku's heart through the jewel. The villain screams, melts, and looks like he's finally going down, but manages to expel the purity at the last second, escaping once more, though he leaves Koga behind. At least the wolf survived. The ending, however, is heartbreaking. Kikyo's energy is spent, the sun sets, and we have one of the saddest scenes in the series. Inuyasha carries Kikyo in his arms, Titanic style, but on dry land. They have a final goodbye, remembering the promise to live as humans that never came to pass. Kikyo finally says her soul has been saved and dies in her first love's arms, turning into light and ascending to the heavens. It's the end of an era. Kagome cries, Inuyasha cries, and even those who don't like the character have to admit she went out with style. Now the focus is entirely on finishing Naraku, who has definitely overstayed his welcome on Earth. In the coldest and most stylish corner of the anime, Seishomaru and his crew decide to pay a family visit. They go to meet Seishomaru's mother, who lives in a castle in the clouds and gives off untouchable prom queen vibes, treating humans like appetizers. The goal here is to upgrade the Tenseiga, but his mom decides to turn it into a Saw-level survival test. She throws Rin and Kohaku straight into the underworld via a hellhound, forcing her son to go after them. Meanwhile, in the land of the living, things are grim. Koga, the wolf who lost his jewel shards and is now more useless than Hawkeye in the battle against Thanos, decides to leave the group. He tries to provoke Inuyasha, but the protagonist is so depressed over Kikyo's death, he doesn't even react. He's basically emo Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3, just without the cringy dancing. Koga manages to slap some sense back into Inuyasha and leaves with style, clearing the way for the main couple. Back in hell, things go south. Rin dies, again, and this time the Tenseiga doesn't work because apparently you can't can't cheat death twice. Seishomaru enters a silent despair, realizes that no sword or power is worth the girl's life, and starts purifying the dead around him in a massive light show. His mother, seeing her son has finally learned compassion, basically the Grinch when his heart grows 3 sizes, uses a special stone to bring Rim back. Seishomaru comes out of this with a stronger sword and, surprisingly, a working heart. Kana, the embodiment of nothingness, is in a melancholy mood visiting the site where Kagura died, proving that even Naraku's robots have feelings. But there's no time for tears, as she gets orders to attack. Meanwhile, Inuyasha and the gang fall into the most obvious trap in history, a flower-filled village that looks like the set of Midsummer. The villain of the week is the Prince of Flowers, a type who feeds on sadness and suffering. And guess what? Inuyasha is a full-course meal, since he's carrying more emotional baggage than Batman. The protagonist falls into an illusion where Kikyo calls him to the afterlife, and he almost goes willingly, but Kagome's voice, and a punch to the villain's face, brings him back to reality. They defeat the Flower Prince in a quick battle, proving that therapy solves more than swordplay. But peace is brief, as Kana appears with her souped-up magic mirror. The mirror transforms into a monster that copies abilities, like Marvel's Taskmaster, or a buffed-up Ditto. It steals all of Tetsaiga's moves, leaving Inuyasha totally useless and forcing the group to retreat. The emotionless girl is now a real threat, and she's hunting them through the forest with the coldness of a Terminator. The situation in the cave is tense. Kana's mirror demon is using Inuyasha's own moves against the group, and the Tetsaiga is completely drained. With no other choice, Inuyasha flips the Savage Hulk switch, fully transforming into a demon.
That was Tetsaiga. Its protective barrier must have kicked in. And that means Tetsaiga's much more than just an empty shell.
He's ready to tear everything apart, but there's a catch. Every bit of damage he deals to the monster is transferred directly to Kana. It's basically a giant voodoo doll. Even in Berserker mode, Inuyasha realizes Naraku's dirty play. He wants the good guys to kill Kana so they carry the guilt. The half-demon pup shows some restraint and focuses on destroying the weapon, not the girl. He manages to shatter the Tetsaiga copy, but Naraku, being the most toxic boss in anime history, decides that if Kana isn't useful for killing, she's useful for, literally, exploding. He triggers Kana's self-destruct. In a final moment of silent rebellion, she tries to pass a message to Kagome, but shatters into thousands of glass shards before she can escape. It's a brutal end for the character. However, a fragment gets into Kagome's eye and reveals the $1 million secret. There's a tiny light inside the Shikon jewel that is the key to destroying Naraku. Kana is gone, but she left the map to the Death Star in the hero's hands. Things are looking grim for Miroku and Sango. They're facing a bone demon that looks like it crawled straight out of a Tim Burton nightmare, and this thing isn't playing around. It snaps Sango's giant boomerang, the Hiraikatsu, like a dry cracker. To make matters worse, Miroku inhales a miasma that wreaks havoc on his body, already ravaged by Naraku's wind tunnel wounds. Basically, the RPG party's HP is in the red and their gear is broken. Miyoga, ever the convenient coward, leads the gang to a potions master. They're expecting a Gandalf-type sage, but the reality is a drunk old man living in a waterfall of sake, pure Jackie Chan in drunken master style. The old man claims that to fix Sango's weapon, she must enter a jar filled with venom and undergo a spiritual trip. It's bizarre shock therapy. Inside, Sango meets the demon spirits that form her weapon. They're pissed, demanding she abandon Miroku to save her own skin. Outside, the monk makes a risky move. He takes a medicine from the old man that numbs all pain but heals nothing. It's basically magical morphine, so he can keep fighting without passing out. The emotional bond between him and Sango is so strong it purifies the venom inside the jar, restoring the Hiraikatsu. The weapon comes back whole, but the old man warns, it now has a mysterious upgrade. Sango emerges ready for round 2, and while Miroku pretends he's fine, we all know he's just quietly tanking the damage. Seishomaru is wandering around with his signature I hate everyone face until a new enemy appears. Shishinki, a demon missing half his face. He drops a bombshell. Seishomaru's sword, the Tenseiga, is nothing more than a discarded scrap of the Tetsaiga. It's like their father gave Inuyasha the PS5 and handed Seishomaru the Broken Player 2 controller. Shishinki even rubs it in, showing off a perfect Meido Zangetsuha, Dark Path Wave, a complete circle that sends anything to hell, while Seishomaru's is just a jagged crescent. This hits Seishomaru's ego and daddy issues right where it hurts. Inuyasha and the gang arrive, and the younger brother tries to help, which only makes Seishomaru more livid. He hates needing help, especially from Inuyasha. However, in the heat of the battle, The swords react to one another. The Tetsaiga's presence provides the boost the Tenseiga was missing. Forcing himself to swallow his pride, Seishomaru fires a massive Meido that swallows Shishinki's attacks and the villain himself. The strike finally forms a perfect circle. Shishinki is deleted from existence, but not before revealing the truth. Their father's plan was always for Seishomaru to perfect the technique just so, well, it's left hanging. Seishomaru leaves the scene saltier than when he arrived, realizing even his victories depend on his brother's inheritance. Family rivalry has never been this toxic. Seishomaru corners the swordsmith Totosai to get the story straight. He's figured out the play. His father intended for him to master the Meido Zangetsuha, only to eventually pass the skill back to Inuyasha's Tetsaiga. Essentially, he was used as a tutorial to level up his brother's account. Totosai tries to give him some zen talk about letting go of hatred, but Seishomaru isn't in the mood for a sermon. Meanwhile, Naraku, who clearly never takes a day off, appears to try and snatch the shard from Kohaku's back. The villain is confident, but the moment he touches the boy, he takes massive holy damage, courtesy of Kikyo's light lingering in the shard. It's like throwing holy water on a vampire. Sango arrives on Kilala to save her brother and debuts her tuned-up Hirai Kotsu. The boomerang is now coated in mystical venom, and when it hits Naraku, it disables his regeneration. The villain is shocked to see his infinite health cheats have been deactivated. Inuyasha joins the fray with an adamant barrage, forcing Naraku to flee with his tail, or tentacles, between his legs. The group is relieved, but worried about Miroku, who is acting like he's in top shape thanks to the pain-numbing potion, hiding the fact that the venom is eating him alive from the inside. The episode ends with Naraku plotting to use Seishomaru against the group, proving once again he's the king of toxic manipulation. The episode starts with Inuyasha engaging in some recreational bullying of Jaken, stretching the poor creature like a rubber band. The fun ends when Kagome drops the classic Syth and the half-demon faceplants, flattening Seishomaru's servant.
Cut it out, Inuyasha! Sit, boy!
I can't feel my leg!
But the comedy takes a turn when Byakuya of the Illusions, the origami master of evil, shows up. He hands Seishomaru a fragment of the mirror demon and, tired of the audience, teleports the two brothers to a parallel dimension that looks like a video game bonus level, full of moons and purple water. Inside, it's the rematch of the century. Seishomaru wants to test if Inuyasha is truly worthy of the Tetsaiga, giving off major tough big brother vibes. While the two trade sword strikes and devastating powers, outside, Totosai turns his cow's eyes into a cinema projector, providing an exclusive live stream of the fight for the gang. Seishomaru launches a full Meido Zangetsuha, and Inuyasha, in a stroke of madness or genius, cuts through his own demonic energy vortex to escape. Naraku, who loves watching from the front row, tries to interfere by controlling the Tenseiga, but Seishomaru isn't stupid. He realizes it's time to let go of his father's legacy. In a move that would make any drama screenwriter proud, Seishomaru breaks the Tenseiga against the Tetsaiga, transferring the Meido Zangetsuha technique to his brother. Basically, he performed the most aggressive tutorial in history to teach Inuyasha how to play. They escape the black hole, Inuyasha gets the ultimate upgrade, and Seishomaru recovers the broken blade, which returns to being a tool for healing only. He plays it cool, keeping his too cool for school posture as he leaves. But everyone knows he just saved the day. We flash back 15 years to meet Hitomiko, a priestess Naraku marked for death in true slasher movie style. In the present, the villain, who's a big fan of necromancy, uses his webs to control her body like a macabre puppet. He traps Kagome in a barrier with the zombie priestess and sets a Saw-style challenge. Either Kagome kills Hitomiko and corrupts her own soul, or she dies burned alive inside. The psychological pressure is intense. Zombie Hitomiko is trying to strangle Kagome, but a revealing flashback about the protagonist's name triggers an epiphany. Kagome remembers children teasing her with a folk song, but realizes the true meaning of her name is linked to a starlight and the ability to know who is behind her. It's almost like awakening a sixth sense. Realizing Naraku is hiding behind the priestess's body, Kagome switches to elite sniper mode. Instead of falling for the mortal trap, she calls upon the bow of Mount Azusa. The arrow follows a magical curve, passes through a portal of light behind Hitomiko, and hits Naraku dead on without harming the priestess's soul. It was a spiritual headshot worthy of an esports championship. Hitomiko finally rests in peace, free from Naraku's web, webs, but leaves a mystery behind. Kagome's true spiritual powers are being sealed by something much greater, and suspicion falls on the dark side of the jewel. Naraku decides he needs more muscle and goes straight to the source, the Shikon jewel. From it, he gives birth to Magatsuhi, essentially the personification of all the evil within the jewel, looking like a final RPG boss. This guy is pure trouble and immediately targets Seishomaru's group. He's so toxic that not even Kohaku is safe. His shard is instantly polluted. Seishomaru tries to handle it with brute force, transforming into his giant hound form. Jakin, in a moment of suicidal honesty, thinks his master loses his wits in this form. He might be right, as Magatsuhi beats down the big dog and swallows him in a scene reminiscent of 80s trash monster movies. Inuyasha's group arrives, and everyone panics, thinking Seishomaru has become Demon Chao. But never underestimate Lord Seishomaru. From inside the beast, a burst of light explodes. Not only does he break free, but he regenerates the left arm he lost at the very beginning of the series, giving off Deadpool vibes, but much more elegant. Best of all, along with the new arm, a sword of his own is born, the Bakusaiga. His dependence on his father's legacy is officially over. With a single strike of this new weapon, he decimates Magatsuhi's body, preventing the monster from regenerating. The villain flees with his tail between his legs, and Seishomaru proves he's finally surpassed his obsession and become an overpowered independent player. Meanwhile, Kagome wakes up from her faint, but the damage to Kohaku's shard keeps the tension high. Kagome discovers that her greatest villain isn't Naraku, but her high school entrance exams. She wakes up from a nightmare thinking she failed, but the real problem is different. Magatsuhi's sinister gaze didn't just knock her out, it completely blocked her spiritual powers. It's like she took a massive nerf right before the final boss battle. While Seishomaru heads out to hunt the villain and a grumpy Inuyasha plays bodyguard, Kagome decides high school is the priority and returns to the modern world. Back home, we get a classic slice of life episode. Kagome tries to study, but she's missing her half-demon badly. And wouldn't you know it? Inuyasha pops up in her bedroom. The mood gets heavy, leading to a near-kiss moment straight out of a Hollywood rom-com. But her younger brother ruins the timing at the worst possible second. This family's timing is impeccable. On the day of the exam, the tension returns. Inuyasha, who understands nothing about modern society, follows Kagome to the subway and causes chaos, thinking the train is a monster. People just assume he's a very dedicated cosplayer.
Cosplayer?
Huh? Why is he barefoot? Hey, what are you three looking at?
Definitely cosplay.
After a lot of running, sick commands, and a desperate search for her exam ticket, Kagome manages to get into the classroom while Inuyasha waits outside, hiding his ears to avoid drawing attention. The girl has to save the feudal world, but first, she's gotta get that diploma. Kagome passes her exams and decides to celebrate by cooking, but her culinary skills leave much to be desired. Inuyasha steps in to help, and in a brilliant attempt to kill a cockroach, unleashes a wind scar inside the kitchen. Meanwhile, in the feudal era, all hell is breaking loose. Seishomaru thinks he's fighting Magatsuhi, but he's just hitting an illusion created by Byakuya, total genjutsu style. The real Magatsuhi has gone to Kaide's village and possessed Kohaku's body. The villain is using the boy as a puppet to attack Sango and Miroku, giving off major demonic possession movie vibes. Miroku, risking his own life, uses the wind tunnel to suck in the villain's spiritual form, swallowing a lethal dose of miasma in the process. But Magatsuhi is stubborn and continues to control Kohaku. The boy, in a moment of lucidity amidst the nightmare, realizes he's hurting the ones he loves. He decides to play the tragic hero and throws himself off a cliff to stop the villain from using his body. Peak drama, with Sango watching her brother fall to his sacrifice. Kohaku is in freefall, but before he becomes a pancake, Kikyo's light expels Magatsuhi from his body. Inuyasha and Sango attempt an aerial rescue, but Naraku's giant tentacles surge up to interfere. Just when all seems lost, Seishomaru arrives with the Tenseiga and slices the physical Magatsuhi in half, proving he's the MVP of this final arc. But Naraku doesn't play fair. He captures Kagome and reveals he's using Moriyama Ru's shell as a shield, meaning his defense is maxed out. The villain finally achieves what he's wanted since episode 1. He rips the shard out of Kohaku, the boy falls dead, and Sango spirals into total despair. Naraku assembles all the pieces and completes the Shikon jewel, essentially becoming Thanos with a finished gauntlet. The end of days is here. But wait, there's a plot twist. Kohaku's body begins to glow. Kikyo's light chose to stay within the boy instead of fighting Naraku, bringing him back to life. Total Harry Potter vibes. The boy lives, but Naraku has supreme power and escapes. To make matters worse, we discover Magatsuhi isn't dead. He's hitched a ride inside Miroku and has now kidnapped Rin, fleeing into the distance. Seishomaru flies off after her with blood in his eyes. The final stage is set. Naraku is in full emo goth mode in his cave, remembering he's basically a collage of monsters created to fulfill the bandit Onagumo's desires. But his current plan is far more ambitious. He's filled the Shikon Jewel with so much malice that it's become a 5-star hotel for chaos. In the present, Kagome finally graduates high school. It's a high school musical moment minus the singing, as her friends take the opportunity to mock her bad grades. Her eccentric grandfather gives her some bizarre parting gifts, like a dried dragon's tail. Kagome says her goodbyes and jumps into the well, ready for the final boss. Back in the feudal era, Naraku decides his human form is obsolete and turns into a giant spider that looks like a Death Star made of meat. He swallows Rin and ascends to the heavens, creating a toxic storm. The heroes charge in with Inuyasha giving Shippo a tough love slap to keep him safe on the ground. Spoiler, it doesn't work. The little fox follows anyway. Sesshomaru arrives with the posture of someone who owns the game and flies straight into Naraku's mouth to save Rin. Inuyasha and the gang follow suit. Inside, it's a horror show. Walls of flesh, miasma, and bizarre Naraku clones sprouting from the floor. The villain separates the group, dropping Inuyasha and Kagome into a pit. The problem is the corrupted jewel is nearby, and it triggers Inuyasha's full demon form, total uncontrolled Hulk style. He attacks Kagome while Naraku watches from the sidelines, hoping for a tragic repeat of history. The atmosphere inside is suffocating. Sango and Miroku fall into a psychological trap worthy of Saw. Naraku creates an illusion of Miroku's father being swallowed by the wind tunnel, just to remind the monk that his fate is the same. To protect Sango, Miroku decides to be the lone hero and runs off to sacrifice himself away from her. Pure drama. Meanwhile, Kagome wakes up next to Sesshomaru, who is busy clearing the area. Inuyasha, still in berserker mode, has flashbacks of Kikyo and starts to regain consciousness, but then Magatsuhi, that annoying evil spirit, decides to possess him. Now we have a possessed Inuyasha versus Sesshomaru. Outside, Team B enters the belly of the beast. In the main fight, Kagome lunges to grab the Tetsaiga. The scent of her blood snaps the real Inuyasha awake, and he retakes control. Magatsuhi tries to jump into Kagome's body, but Inuyasha pins the spirit down with his demonic aura and his dragon-scaled Tetsaiga. He serves the spirit up on a silver platter for Sesshomaru, who uses the Tenseiga to slice Magatsuhi in two. A satisfying hit kill to send that pest to the afterlife.
It's over, Magatsuhi.
With Magatsuhi deleted from the server, Kagome's spiritual powers return in full force, purifying Inuyasha. But Naraku, being the ultimate troll, uses the light that returned to the jewel to create a new trap. He scatters mirrors throughout his body to confuse everyone. Miroku is on the verge of opening his wind tunnel against an illusion, thinking it's the real Naraku. Sango is thrown into a cruel dilemma. A fake Naraku tells her that to save her husband, she must throw her Hiraikatsu and kill Rin. In a Sophie's Choice moment, she chooses to save Miroku and attacks. Luckily, the real Inuyasha arrives just in time to stop the monk from committing suicide, and Kagome uses her spiritual aimbot to snipe the real Naraku through the walls, shattering the illusions. Kohaku saves Rin from the fall at the last second. Sango apologizes to Sesshomaru for almost killing his ward, saying he can kill her after Naraku falls. Sesshomaru, with his usual coldness, basically agrees with a "we'll see about that later." The group gathers for the final assault, but Inuyasha misses his strike. Then comes the plot twist. Byakuya, the henchman who is just observing, uses his sword to absorb the power of the Meido Zangetsuha. Naraku resorts to his maximum miasma, turning the area into a Chernobyl-level toxic wasteland. Inside Naraku, the situation is more toxic than a Twitter comment section. The miasma is rampant, and Sango makes a drastic move. She gives her protective mask to Rin and decides to go all in. She finds Miroku, and the two share a scene worthy of the Notebook, deciding that if they can't live together, they'll go out together via the wind tunnel. But Naraku, a fan of drama, uses this sorrow to feed the Shikon Jewel and assumes his final armored form. Inuyasha tries to attack, but the villain has his invincibility cheat code activated. Naraku delivers the classic villain monologue about hating friendship and love, but Kagome calls him out. He's just salty because no one ever loved him back, and Inuyasha seizes the moment to unleash an insane Tetsaiga upgrade. The Meido Zangetsuha evolves, now firing blades that cut through reality itself, slicing Naraku into ribbons like a game of Fruit Ninja. Outside, Sesshomaru realizes things are getting dire and stops holding back. He joins the battle battle with his Bakusaiga, his new sword that deals continuous damage, and starts destroying Naraku's body from the outside in. The entire group converges on the villain's core for an Avengers Endgame moment, where everyone jumps the final boss at once. Even Shippo shows up for moral support. With the whole gang together, Naraku realizes he's cornered, but he lets out a laugh that says he still has an ace up his sleeve. The party's over. Everyone Naraku ever wronged is there beating the hell out of him. The villain, seeing the writing on the wall and realizing his regeneration can't tank Seishomaru's damage, makes a kamikaze move. He aims his massive body straight for Kaide's village, intending to cause an extinction-level event like the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. While the gang tries to stop the fall and clear the miasma, Inuyasha continues slicing the villain with his dimensional blades. In the end, Naraku's soul realizes the painful truth. His true wish was never absolute power. He just wanted Kikyo's heart. Basically, he destroyed the world because he got friend-zoned. With the villain finally defeated, the Shikon Jewel makes its final play. A black hole opens and swallows Kagome, making the bone-eating well vanish from existence. Inuyasha, without a second thought, dives into the darkness after her, proving dimensional boundaries are nothing to him. Meanwhile, Kagome wakes up in a bizarre alternative reality. She's in a version of an American teen movie high school. Her friends are talking about sneakers and crushes, and no one remembers feudal Japan. It's total The Truman Show meets The Matrix, where everything is too perfect to be true. But Kagome notices the glitch in the simulation when she sees the well is gone and people start ignoring her existence. The jewel tries to convince her that this peaceful life is what she wants, trapping the girl in eternal darkness. Inuyasha is in John Wick mode inside the jewel's dimension, fighting off hordes of demons to get to Kagome. The jewel tries to manipulate the girl into making a selfish wish, which would trap them both there forever in an infinite loop of battle. But Kagome pauses and remembers her grandfather, the series' underrated MVP, saying the only correct wish is to wish for the artifact to vanish. Inuyasha locates her in the darkness, and they share the kiss the fandom waited hundreds of episodes for. With their love recharged, Kagome wishes for the jewel to cease to exist forever. Boom. Game over for the curse. Cut to 3 years later. Everyone is living their happily ever after. Miroku and Sango have opened a daycare at home because they've had so many kids. Shippo is leveling up at Fox School. In the present, Kagome graduates high school but feels a void in her chest. She goes to the well and, in a tear-jerking scene, the portal opens one last time. She says goodbye to her mother, dives in, and is pulled through by Inuyasha. The reunion is sweet. The series closes showing how life went on. Kagome is now training to be a priestess and lives in feudal Japan. And the best part, she sees Seishomaru flying by and yells, "Hey big brother!" The look of pure disgust and secondhand embarrassment on Lord Seishomaru's face is priceless, proving that defeating demons is easy, but dealing with family is the true final challenge.